A neighbor's wife had borrowed my bathroom for a shower. The moment she stepped out, her foot slipped and she started falling sideways. I instinctively caught her before she could hit the floor. Instead of thanking me, Li Ru somehow blamed me for the fall. Then a savage pain tore through my skull, as if an electric drill had been driven straight into my brain and was churning everything inside into mush. My eyes snapped open. Li Ru. I remembered her clearly. 3 months after the Ice Age apocalypse began, her husband had sold her without warning for 3 packs of instant noodles. 5 men came for her that night. Unable to endure what was about to happen, she found an opening and threw herself from the 23rd floor. But now, she was standing right in front of me. Had I died too? Was this heaven? I looked around the room and froze. Everything was exactly as it had been before the apocalypse. The furniture I had once burned piece by piece just to stay warm was still perfectly intact. My eyes landed on the calendar hanging on the wall. The 1st of May 2024. My whole body trembled. I had been reborn. For several seconds, disbelief locked me in place. Then a fierce joy exploded in my eyes. Good. This time, I would never play the saint again. I would show no mercy to those animals. I wanted every last one of them to die in agony 100 times worse than what I had suffered. I clenched my teeth and swore it in my heart. Since fate had given me another chance, I would never waste kindness on people who did not deserve it. Even now, the faces I saw before dying in my previous life remained painfully clear. Shu Ruin, the woman I had simped over for 2.5 years. And those vicious neighbors who had turned into monsters the moment civilization collapsed. I still remembered lying on the floor with a cold dagger buried deep in my chest. As my life faded, I watched Su Rian greedily seize the supplies that should have been mine. I'm the one who killed him. I get first pick of the food. That woman had let me chase after her for 2.5 years, without even allowing me to hold her hand. Then she tricked me into opening the door and got me killed. Fine, fine. You contributed the most. You pick first. Don't waste the rest of him either. That's meat. In weather this cold, a pot of meat soup would be perfect. Bearded neighbors carrying axes had rushed into my home wearing smiles that no civilized human should ever have. By then, whatever humanity they once possessed had long since vanished. They raised their axes toward me. Are you okay? Li Ru's worried voice dragged me back to the present. She had clearly been frightened by my expression and was holding a hand over her chest. I slowly exhaled, forced myself to calm down, and gave her a faint smile. I'm fine, just had a nightmare. Now I had time. Time to prepare my revenge. Time to stockpile supplies. And most importantly, time to turn my home into an indestructible doomsday fortress. Until the apocalypse arrived, I had to be careful. I could not let anyone notice anything unusual. Li Ru had never directly participated in my murder, but I knew exactly how the others had learned that I still had food. Her husband had once forced her to come to my home and borrow supplies. She promised she would keep quiet, but the information still leaked. Later, her husband sold her, and she died. That was tragic, but a promise was still a promise. Actions had consequences. I calmly took out my phone, opened my photo album, and showed her the screen. The photo had been taken at the worst possible moment. Her eyes closed, her bath towel fallen to the floor. Anyone who saw it could easily misunderstand what had happened between us. Li Ru's face turned crimson. A moment later, she fled in embarrassment so quickly that she even forgot the clothes she had left in the bathroom. My gaze fell on a pair of black stockings sitting on top of the washing machine. I reached out. Whoosh, they vanished. A strange spatial ability had awakened in me. With a thought, my consciousness entered an endless white space. I could not see its boundaries. It was so vast that, for a ridiculous moment, I felt as if I could fit the entire Earth inside. Of course, that was probably wishful thinking. After a few experiments, I discovered 2 basic restrictions. First, I could only store objects I physically touched. Second, the object had to be separate and independent. A coffee table could go in, a television could go in, but I could not simply absorb an entire apartment building by touching the wall. Even so, I could not stop the grin spreading across my face. What a ridiculous starting advantage. Then my stomach growled. After surviving nearly a year in the Ice Age apocalypse on dry bread and frozen crackers, the thing I wanted most right now was simple. A hot meal. Outside, sunlight filled the streets. Cars moved through traffic. Shops and food stalls released waves of mouth-watering aromas. People wandered leisurely between them, buying food, drinks, clothes, and whatever else caught their eye. In 1 month, all of this would be gone. I hailed a taxi and headed downtown. My destination was the most luxurious state banquet-level hotel in the city, a place grand enough to host foreign dignitaries. The hotel had a minimum spending requirement of 100,000 yuan, which meant ordinary people could not simply walk in and order a meal. In my previous life, I never would have spent money so recklessly, but now, money would become worthless in a month. I intended to enjoy everything I had denied myself before there was nowhere left to enjoy it. After getting out of the taxi, I stopped by the roadside. The 5-star hotel stood directly across from me, but what caught my attention first was the lottery center. A memory surfaced. In my previous life, I had seen a video about someone winning 1 million yuan on a scratch-off ticket from this exact place. And if I remember correctly, the winning date was today. I might be willing to burn 100,000 yuan on lunch, but that did not mean my wallet was bottomless. Aside from the upscale apartment my parents had left me, currently worth several million yuan, I only had around 300,000 yuan in cash. Originally, I had possessed more than 500,000. Unfortunately, I had wasted over 200,000 of it on Shu Ruyan, taking her and her girlfriends out to expensive meals, buying designer bags, luxury cosmetics, and all kinds of useless gifts. Thinking about it now made my heart ache. 200,000 yuan. Do you know how much food that could buy? How many life-saving supplies? Hell, even if I burned the money for warmth during the apocalypse, that would have been more useful than spending it on her. I really must have had water in my brain. The worst part was that after simping for her for so long, I had not even held her hand. If I had spent that amount on some small-time streamer, she probably would have flown across the country to meet me herself. At the moment, however, I still did not have enough money. Stockpiling on the scale I wanted would require several million yuan just for startup capital. Hiring the best security company in the country to build a top-tier safe house would cost tens of millions at minimum. So, I walked straight into the lottery center. I would take the million first. I could worry about the rest after lunch. A short while later, I walked out casually. My account balance had increased by 1 million yuan. I did not know which exact scratch card was the winner, but I remembered the date from the video and what the winner had been wearing. A moment earlier, I had spotted the lucky guy holding 2 tickets. Hesitating over which one to buy, I simply stepped in and purchased the one that would have changed his life. A flashing ambulance suddenly screeched to a halt outside the lottery center. What happened to the patient? I heard he fainted while buying lottery tickets. Did he win big? No. Apparently someone bought the jackpot ticket right before he did. The paramedics carried out an unconscious young man on a stretcher and loaded him into the ambulance. I watched him for a second. Rest easy, brother. I'll make sure your 1 million yuan gets put to good use. Then I turned and crossed the street toward the 5-star hotel. In my hands, this money could actually save a life. In 1 month, it would be worth less than toilet paper. Good afternoon, sir. How many guests? A beautiful hostess in a fitted chipao greeted me at the entrance. I have a reservation. Luo. Her expression immediately became more respectful. Mr. Luo, right this way, please. I was led into a quiet, luxurious private dining room. Several waitresses in elegant qipaos began carrying dishes to the table one after another. Sir, this is the 3 blossoms in spring garden, and this is our imperial nourishing soup. Every dish looked like a work of art. The portions, however, were tiny. Luckily, I had ordered a lot more. Braised sea cucumber and abalone sauce, pan-seared goose, pearl king crab, cod rolls, 9-turn braised intestine. Dish after dish arrived. The attentive service alone taught me what people meant by a feast for the eyes. Once everything was served, I stopped pretending to be elegant and started eating like a starving animal. At these prices, the food really did taste different. After nearly a year of surviving on miserable apocalypse rations, eating a hot, luxurious meal again nearly brought tears to my eyes. I demolished the table. The 2 waitresses standing nearby stared at each other in disbelief. Their expressions practically screamed. Is this guy the reincarnation of a starving ghost? I did not care. When the world ends, manners and dignity are worthless. An hour later, I finally leaned back and rubbed my round stomach in satisfaction. After leaving under the warm smiles of the staff, I headed toward a large supermarket. It was time for my first real stockpile. Part of the reason was to test my spatial storage and become more familiar with its limits, but I was thinking much bigger. Before the apocalypse, I wanted to empty a Walmart distribution warehouse and an entire port. At the hotel, I had overheard several American businessmen discussing a massive shipment scheduled to leave the nearby harbor at the end of the month. A giant cargo ship would carry goods worth over 10 billion yuan to the United States, imported and exported grain, daily necessities, hundreds of tons of bottled water, dozens upon dozens of shipping containers. I had to take it. It was practically tailor-made for my spatial ability. Those supplies were supposed to be shipped overseas before the apocalypse and would later save countless Americans. If I took them first, I would feel absolutely no guilt. If anything, I would enjoy it. More importantly, the day before the apocalypse, a massive solar flare would knock out electronics across the globe for nearly 24 hours. Even satellites would go offline. That would be my perfect window. No cameras, no tracking systems, no functioning surveillance network. I could quietly empty tens of millions of tons of supplies from the port without anyone knowing how it happened. And while I was at it, I could not forget the Walmart super warehouse. Well, if it isn't Luo Tian. A deliberately sweet voice interrupted my thoughts. My expression went cold. Shu Ruyan, the green tea woman who had used my trust to kill me in my previous life. Not only had she opened the way for those monsters to murder me, she had even talked about cutting up my body and cooking it. For one dangerous second, killing intent surged through me so violently that I almost acted on instinct. Luo Tian, you're scary when you look at me like that. Shu Ruyan put on a pitiful expression. If I had treated her this coldly in the past, she would have exploded on the spot. But today was different. She had apparently just realized that the guy who had been chasing after her all this time might secretly be rich. Otherwise, how could I casually eat at a hotel normally reserved for diplomats and elites? I forced the killing intent back down. Not yet. Killing her now would be too merciful. I wanted Shu Ruyan to experience the full cruelty of the Ice Age apocalypse. I wanted her to suffer. I had spatial storage, preparation time, and soon an impregnable fortress. When the apocalypse came, I could take my revenge however I pleased. Shu Ruyan quickly ignored my cold attitude. Now that she thought I was rich, the only thing on her mind was figuring out how to make me spend money on her willingly. Luo Tian, I saw you eating in there. She pointed at the hotel entrance, eyes shining with expectation. I almost laughed. So that was it. She had seen me spend 100,000 yuan on a meal and immediately started calculating how much she could squeeze out of me. Dream on. You will never get another cent. Luo Tian, I've been waiting outside for ages. My legs are sore. She pouted and rubbed her pale legs as if putting on a performance. Shouldn't a gentleman at least buy me some milk tea? On the surface, she sounded playful and slightly aggrieved. Inside, she was probably already planning to make me spend at least another 100,000 before letting me leave. Unfortunately for her, I was no longer the idiot she remembered. She used to tell me she had never dated anyone. Only before my death did I learn how many boyfriends she had actually cycled through. One of the rich second-generation men who broke into my home had even mocked me for it. Xu Ruyan had apparently worked as a high-end escort in their social circle, available for only a few thousand yuan a night. To everyone else, she was cheap. To me, she pretended to be an untouchable white lotus. Disgusting. I'm busy lately, I said calmly. Maybe next time. I would never become her ATM again, but I did not mind leaving her with a little hope. Okay, next time then. She nearly jumped with excitement. In her imagination, she was probably already shopping through luxury malls and stuffing herself with state banquet dishes at five-star hotels. What she did not know was that 1 month from now, the extreme cold apocalypse would arrive. Whether she could even stay alive would become the real question. I left her behind and walked into the nearest supermarket. I grabbed a shopping cart and smiled. Until I had food stockpiled, I would never truly feel secure. 10 large boxes of military-style compressed biscuits, canned meat, half a cart of sausages, instant noodles, self-heating hot pots, anything durable, calorie-dense, and easy to prepare went straight into the carts. One cart quickly became a mountain. Then I filled 2 more. Other customers stared at me. Even a spoiled kid walking with his parents stopped in the middle of the aisle and forgot to move. Eventually, several female employees came over and started helping me push carts and load food. Sir, our supermarket offers free delivery. The manager personally came over to help with checkout and loading. I was buying enough that the staff would earn a nice commission, so everyone was enthusiastic. I gave them the address of a basement storage room in my residential complex. After the goods arrived, quite a few residents noticed the mountains of supplies being unloaded. I ignored them. I did not care if word spread that I was stocking food. Before the apocalypse began, my safe house would already be complete. Once I locked myself inside, nobody was getting through unless I opened the door myself. The memory of my neighbors breaking into my home and hacking me apart with axes still burned in my heart. If they came knocking again this time, even better. It would save me the trouble of hunting them down. Put everything here. The workers moved quickly. Because my order was huge, they were all in excellent spirits. Then an old woman walked over with her hands clasped behind her back. Luo Tian, you bought quite a lot. I recognized her immediately. Wang Shufang, one of the neighborhood committee busybodies. She was nosy, shameless about taking advantage of people, and constantly used her tiny bit of authority to order others around. During the apocalypse in my previous life, she had cried poverty and manipulated me into giving her food. Later, when the others broke down my door, she stood behind them cheering. Ma'am, please don't touch other people's things. One of the supermarket employees caught Wang Shufang quietly lifting a large bag of snacks from the truck. The bag was worth at least 1,000 yuan. Stealing. Who said I'm stealing? I'm borrowing. The moment she was exposed, she started making a scene. You young people have no respect for the elderly anymore. I'm old, my legs are bad, and there's barely anything to eat at home. What's wrong with borrowing some food in an emergency? I can pay later. Are you trying to starve an old woman to death? Classic. She instantly cast herself as the helpless victim and climbed onto the moral high ground. The young employee had probably never encountered such shamelessness before. He actually backed away several steps, terrified she might throw herself onto the ground and blame him for an injury. I was already annoyed by the noise. Put it down. I walked over and snatched the bag back. Her cries immediately turned into anger. Fine, fine, Luo Tian, remember this. Don't let yourself need anything from me in the future. She was probably thinking that because she worked for the neighborhood committee, she could make my life miserable whenever I needed paperwork or local assistance. I stared at her coldly. If you don't leave, I'll call the police and report you for theft. There were security cameras all around the storage room. Her little move had definitely been recorded. Maybe the police would not arrest her over it, but a public lecture and humiliation were almost guaranteed. For someone like Wang Shufang, who loved acting important in front of the entire neighborhood, that would be torture. Sure enough, she glanced at the cameras, cursed under her breath, and walked away. In my previous life, my food had helped her survive. This time, without me, I doubted she would last long once the apocalypse came. After the workers left, I shut the storage room door and started testing my spatial ability seriously. The results were even better than expected. The space truly seemed limitless. Storage and retrieval were effortless. I could even absorb an entire shelving unit full of food at once. Most importantly, time inside the space was frozen. I placed a freshly heated bowl of self-heating rice inside. No matter how long I waited, before pulling it back out, it remained exactly as it had been at the moment of storage. Same temperature, same freshness. That meant I could store tons of fresh fruit and vegetables without worrying about expiration. It also meant I could order barbecue, hamburgers, banquet dishes, and all kinds of cooked meals in advance. During the apocalypse, I could eat steaming hot food every single day. The only downside was that living creatures could not enter. Still, if I stockpiled enough supplies, I was confident I could live 1,000 times better than everyone else after the world froze. After storing everything from the supermarket, I headed home. By coincidence, I ran into Li Ru while waiting for the elevator. She had probably just gotten off work. She wore a fitted skirt, black stockings, and high heels. The incident that morning had clearly embarrassed her because she immediately lowered her head and avoided eye contact. The elevator filled quickly. With so many people packed inside, Li Ru was pushed right up against me. She flushed. "Don't move," she whispered through gritted teeth. There was nowhere for either of us to go. In my previous life, I knew that not long after Li Ru married, her husband had developed health problems. Being pressed so close to another man clearly made her deeply uncomfortable. I only smiled faintly. Once the apocalypse began, her family would run out of food quickly. Her husband, Yulin, would send her to beg from me. Last time, she successfully borrowed quite a bit. This time would be different. My food problem was now partially solved. Next came security. I remembered a top-tier security company that specialized in protective facilities and custom safe houses. Their premium shelters used special alloy materials strong enough that ordinary artillery shells could not easily breach them. Short of a nuclear strike, they were almost impossible to destroy. And because I was preparing for an Ice Age apocalypse, insulation mattered just as much as armor. I would need a custom fireplace, reinforced thermal layers, improved insulation, ventilation systems, and probably a heated floor or Kang-style heating platform. Then there were medical supplies. Nobody knew how long the extreme cold would last. I needed to prepare for everything. The quantity I wanted could not be purchased through ordinary channels. I would have to use the black market. If you had enough money, the black market could find almost any medicine, even restricted weapons. Bows were legal, but crossbows were much more tightly controlled. A bow required strength, practice, and skill. A crossbow was different. Once cocked, even a child could pull the trigger and deliver essentially the same mechanical force as an adult. Against ordinary people or even large animals, it could be deadly. Weapons were absolutely essential in the apocalypse. Food without the ability to defend it only made you someone else's warehouse. A strong shelter without weapons meant enemies could attack you over and over while you remained permanently passive. I needed enough firepower to make anyone, thinking about robbing me, stop and consider the consequences. What I really wanted, of course, was the ultimate equalizer, a gun. But firearms were extremely difficult to obtain domestically, even through the black market. Still, I had time. I would find a way. The next morning, I woke early and began calling hotels. "Hello, this is Hong de Grand Hotel. How may we assist you? I want to order 1,000 banquet tables. Delivery within 2 days." There was a long silence. "Yes, sir. Did you say 1,000 tables?" "Yes." 1,000 banquet tables would require enormous manpower and cost several million yuan. Eventually, the manager came on the line. I transferred a 400,000 yuan deposit on the spot before they finally believed I was serious. They promised to complete the order within 2 days. After the call, I checked my account. Barely over 800,000 yuan remained. Not enough. I sighed. The banquet alone was eating up most of the lottery winnings. I still needed medicine, weapons, and a top-tier safe house. 800,000 yuan was nowhere near enough, so I downloaded a pile of loan apps. I borrowed from every platform willing to lend me money. Another million yuan soon landed in my account. Every repayment date was set 2 months later. I almost wanted to laugh at the sky. Free money was amazing. The apocalypse would arrive in a month. There would never be a repayment date. Then I turned my attention to the apartment my parents had left me. It was inside the second ring road. They had purchased it for a little over 3 million yuan, but rising property values had pushed its current market price to roughly 6 million. Why not mortgage it? I grabbed the property deed and headed to the bank. As I left the complex, I once again saw Li Ru in black stockings on her way to work. The moment she noticed me, her face turned red and she hurried away. I did not care. At the bank, the loan officer was extremely enthusiastic. Because my apartment was in an excellent location and had appreciated significantly, they approved a 5 million yuan mortgage with little difficulty. The money arrived quickly. Then shouting erupted in the lobby. Everybody shut the hell up. Hands where I can see them. Bang, bang. 2 gunshots rang out. I stared. What the hell? A bank robbery? A memory surfaced. In my previous life, there had indeed been a robbery in the city around this time. The television stations never covered it, and online reports were suppressed quickly, so I had never known the exact day or location. Apparently, it was today. And apparently, it was this bank. My apocalypse-hardened instincts activated immediately. While everyone else froze in shock, I quietly moved toward the back of the crowd. 2 armed robbers dragged a balding middle-aged man out of the VIP room. I recognized him, a famous local real estate tycoon. From what I remembered, he had been involved in serious financial crimes and was preparing to move money overseas before fleeing the country. Unfortunately for him, someone close to him leaked the information, leading to this carefully planned robbery. Police spent more than half a month solving the case. The tycoon was unharmed. All the robbers were eventually arrested. One of them turned out to be a bodyguard the tycoon had employed for years, and the stolen goods were recovered from an abandoned factory. One muscular robber carried 2 heavy black cases, excitement written all over his face. In their minds, the cases were packed with foreign currency worth millions. After one job, they could flee overseas and live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Move. Their leader gave the order, and the group fled. Only after they were gone did someone shout, "Call the police." The bank manager rushed forward to calm everyone. He was probably more terrified about the bank's reputation than anything else. I had no intention of staying around to give a statement, so I slipped out and hailed a taxi. "Where to, boss?" the driver asked in a thick local accent. Originally, I planned to go straight to the best security company in the country to discuss my fortress. Then another thought struck me. 5 million yuan was enough for a deposit, but not enough for the absolute best configuration. That was unacceptable. For me, security came first. I never wanted to experience being hacked apart again. Dongli Park. The driver smiled. "Sure thing. Buckle up." Dongli Park was far from downtown and surrounded by abandoned factories. That was exactly why traffic was light, and exactly why I was going there. The robbers' stolen property. Very little of the case had become public in my previous life, but after the police solved it, I had heard the details from gossiping residents in my neighborhood. One old woman had a relative connected to the investigation and loved bragging about knowing insider information. According to her, the robbers had not carried the stolen goods far. They hid the cases in an abandoned factory near Dongli Park, then immediately separated to create alibis. They planned to return once the heat died down. They were arrested before that happened, but there was an even more important detail. Everyone thought both suitcases contained cash. When the police finally recovered them, they discovered that one case was actually packed with gold bars. Even the robbers had not known. The cases were specially made and weighed almost the same. Only the tycoon knew the truth. Because the amount involved in his own crimes was enormous, he was eventually sentenced to life in prison. When the apocalypse arrived, he froze to death behind bars. That gave me room to operate. If I took only the gold and left the cash untouched, there would be almost nothing connecting me to the robbery. The banknotes could be traced by serial number. Unmarked gold bars were much harder to follow. And since everyone except the tycoon believed the thieves had stolen only money, nobody would even think to connect a sudden batch of gold on the market to this robbery. The tycoon himself would never admit to the existence of undeclared gold, because it would only worsen his own legal situation. The only uncertainty was when the robbers might return to check the stash. But I knew they would not come back on the same day, so I had to move fast. Once I had the gold, I could sell it through the black market and solve my funding problem immediately. It was risky, but as the saying went, the bold feast while the timid starve. After arriving at the park, I spent an hour scouting the surroundings. The area was so remote there were not even surveillance cameras. Perfect. There were a few people walking in the park itself, so my presence did not look suspicious. Once I confirmed nobody was following me, I slipped down a side path toward the abandoned factory. The building was empty. Based on what I remembered, I found a concealed room without much difficulty. Inside sat 2 heavy suitcases. Beside them was a large black plastic bag. My breathing quickened. I opened one of the cases. Rows of gold bars gleamed back at me. Damn. This had to be worth 30 or 40 million yuan. At current prices, a gram of gold was around 600 yuan. I swallowed. I had never seen this much wealth in my life. A bank balance on a phone screen could not compare to the feeling of staring at an actual case packed with gold. Best of all, the bars had no visible serial markings. Smooth, anonymous, convenient for the tycoon, even more convenient for me. If the apocalypse were not coming, this one case alone could give me financial freedom for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, in 1 month, gold and cash would both be worth less than a pack of instant noodles. I touched the case. It vanished into my spatial storage. This was why spatial storage was absurd. Anyone else would struggle to secretly move over 100 jin of gold. For me, it took one thought. Even if the police searched me, they would never find a single bar. I left the second case, the one filled with American dollars, untouched. Bank cash could be traced, and foreign currency was inconvenient to spend anyway. Compared with tens of millions in gold, several million in cash was not worth the risk. Then I opened the black plastic bag. My eyes widened. 3 handguns, black metal, cold and heavy. They lay silently inside like sleeping predators. The robbers had dumped their guns here too. An unexpected bonus. Perfect. I picked one up. The moment the cold grip settled into my hand, an intense sense of security washed over me. I had come for the gold. Instead, I had found the thing I wanted most: firearms. With these handguns, my security after the apocalypse would rise to another level. They were far more practical than bows or crossbows. One bullet could end a person's life in an instant, and the psychological deterrent against other survivors was incomparable. These guns would become one of my biggest trump cards. I checked the bag again. 30 magazines, roughly 450 rounds. Not bad at all. I swept everything into my spatial storage, then immediately started cleaning up. Every layer of plastic I had wrapped around my hands and shoes disappeared into the space. To avoid leaving hair or DNA, I had even covered my head. There were no cameras in this wasteland. Nobody would ever know I had been here. 10 minutes later, I was already sitting inside a taxi as if nothing had happened. With my funding problem and firearm problem suddenly half solved, I felt fantastic. The apocalypse was still more than 20 days away. The safe house had to become my next priority. Ideally, construction would begin tomorrow and finish within 20 days. Any money left over could go toward more food, barbecue, hamburgers. Hot pot base, cooked meals. I wanted everything. Welcome. A staff member bowed politely as I walked into the Black Swan bar. On the surface, Black Swan was an elegant luxury bar. In reality, it was one of the city's underground black market trading hubs. The owner had serious connections. If you had enough money, you could buy things here that ordinary markets would never sell. Nobody asked whether the goods were clean. Nobody cared why you wanted restricted items. They simply provided a platform for buyers and sellers. The market had a decent reputation, so outright robbery between clients was rare. Of course, the real reason I felt comfortable coming here was the cold weight of a handgun hidden at my waist. "What can I get you?" the bartender asked with a smile. I suddenly said, "When will the bright moon appear?" His expression became serious. "Raise your head and look for yourself." I continued, "Withered vines, old trees, evening crows." He replied, "Put on your long underwear and go home." I almost burst out laughing. What kind of genius had invented this idiot-level password? Even elementary school kids could come up with something less embarrassing. If I had not personally heard the phrase in my previous life, I never would have believed it was real. "This way, sir." The bartender's attitude became noticeably more respectful. He led me into a concealed private room with excellent soundproofing. The noise from the dance floor vanished completely. A slick-haired man sat near a cabinet displaying several rare collectibles. Two expressionless bodyguards waited in the corners. The man took a drag from his cigar. New face. First time here, he was the broker responsible for most major transactions in this black market. "I'm selling." I did not answer his question. Instead, I placed the heavy suitcase on the table with a thud. The calm, cold aura I carried made him glance at me twice. "What is it?" "If it's cheap junk, don't waste my time." He lazily flicked ash from his cigar. Most of what passed through this room existed outside the law. Deals worth several million were nothing unusual. I opened the case. Golden light reflected across the room. The broker gave it one casual glance. Then his entire body stiffened. His chair nearly tipped backward. He could not remember the last time a deal had made him this excited. Not even when someone brought in an authentic painting by a famous master. "Did you rob a bank vault?" His cigar burned his fingers, but he barely noticed. An entire suitcase of gold bars, high-purity gold. The estimated value was well over 30 million yuan. The black market had handled gold before, even deals worth several million at a time, but a single seller bringing in this much? That was rare. For a moment, greed flashed through the broker's eyes. He clearly considered taking the gold by force. Then he suppressed the thought. Someone capable of casually appearing here with an entire case of gold bars was unlikely to be harmless. "Don't ask where it came from." I calmly shut the case again. The less said, the better. Nobody came to a black market because their goods had perfect paperwork. "Ha! Looks like I underestimated you." The broker finally became serious. He called over 2 assistants and brought out professional testing equipment. If he could absorb this deal, the profit would be enormous. After a while, he tapped the table. Purity is approximately 99.6%. Total weight puts the market value at roughly 40 million yuan. He watched my face carefully. I remained expressionless. That made him even less certain about me. From his experience, I did not look like an old black market trader. But there was something else. A faint killing aura. The kind of presence he usually felt around desperate criminals who had genuinely lived through violence. That made him cautious. If I had looked like an ordinary rich kid, I suspected I might already have been dragged into a back room. "Name your price," I said. He smiled. "I can give you 30 million. Immediate transfer." "Too low. Add 5 million. I shook my head. The gold was worth around 40 million. At 30 million, they would be making 10 million before even considering resale appreciation. Yes, I had technically obtained the gold for free, but that did not mean I wanted to donate 10 million yuan to this guy. "I've been doing business for years, and you're the first person to raise the price by 5 million right in my own room." The broker narrowed his eyes like a snake. He was probably wondering whether I was reckless or genuinely dangerous. This was his territory. Most people would not dare bargain so aggressively. The 2 bodyguards in the corners began rolling their shoulders and moving closer. Their eyes looked at me like I was a sheep already on the butcher's table. "If the deal doesn't work, forget it." I acted as though I had not even noticed them. Then, almost casually, I lifted the edge of my jacket. A section of black metal showed at my waist. The broker's expression changed instantly. "Ha ha ha, brother, I was only joking." "Why so serious?" He jumped up and shoved his confused bodyguards backward. Then he put on the warmest smile imaginable. "I don't want to take advantage of you. How about we meet in the middle, 32.5 million. That was much more reasonable. They would still make money, but at least they were no longer trying to skin me alive. "Deal." I nodded. 32.5 million. I want the money immediately. The broker arranged it without hesitation. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated. The transfer had arrived. My account balance jumped to over 34 million yuan. I had to actively control my face to keep from grinning. After confirming the money, I pushed the gold over. Then I remembered something else I needed. I also want 3 compound bows, 3 crossbows, and 1,000 bolts. The broker, now happily handling his gold, waved his hand. "Take them as a gift." Compared with a deal worth tens of millions, a few weapons worth around 100,000 yuan were nothing. Better to establish a relationship with a client who might bring another fortune next time. I left a delivery address and walked out. Once I was gone, one of the bodyguards frowned. "Brother Nan, why didn't we just take him? He walked in with 40 million worth of gold." Brother Nan slapped him across the back of the head. Take him, take your mother, he cursed. Did you not see what he had at his waist? A handgun. You think that kind of man is someone you can casually rob? I keep telling you idiots to use your eyes. If I hadn't reacted quickly, you might already be on your way to meet the king of hell. Cold sweat appeared on both bodyguards' backs. They were suddenly very grateful they had not rushed me. By then, I had already arrived at the headquarters of SHIELD Security Group. SHIELD was one of the top security corporations in the country. If anyone could build the kind of apocalypse fortress I wanted, it was them. Mr. Luo, a pleasure to meet you. I'm Zhao Xiao, the person in charge here. A muscular man in sunglasses greeted me the moment I entered. I had called ahead from the taxi. Normally, private consultations required appointments, but a client talking about a project worth hundreds of millions naturally received special treatment. Company procedures suddenly became very flexible when enough money was involved. Mr. Luo, Zhao Xiao said with a bright smile, I heard you want to build an extremely secure doomsday safe house. That's right, my requirements are a little unusual. I explained that I wanted them to completely transform my apartment inside the residential complex. Most wealthy clients built independent villas or underground bunkers. I wanted to remain exactly where I lived. After all, if I was going to take revenge on the animals who had betrayed me, I wanted front row seats while they suffered. As long as the safe house was strong enough, I would be perfectly secure. I had already thought about one possible weakness. What if, after the apocalypse, the others realized they could not break through my door or walls and decided to attack the building's load-bearing structure from below? In practice, it was not much of a threat. There would be 4 or 5 meters of snow outside. Temperatures could drop to minus 70 degrees Celsius. Under those conditions, large-scale demolition work would be nearly impossible. A healthy person might swing a sledgehammer dozens of times today. Starving and freezing in minus 70, they would be exhausted after a few strikes. Ordinary residents also had no access to serious explosives. And the load-bearing walls of a building over 20 stories tall were not exactly made of paper. Zhao Xiao clearly found my request strange. Most of his wealthy customers wanted separate fortified compounds or deep underground shelters. This was the first time he had heard of someone converting a high-rise apartment into a fortress. Still, he did not argue. Mr. Luo, these are the services we can provide. He tapped an enormous display in his office. A detailed catalog appeared, complete with pricing. SHIELD Security lived up to its reputation. They even offered deep underground nuclear survival shelters located 80 meters below ground. Unfortunately, I had less than a month. Anything that could not be completed in time was useless. I filtered the options. First, replace and reinforce the apartment door, walls, floor, and ceiling. Second, install a custom fireplace. Third, upgrade the thermal insulation and ventilation systems. Then I added another extreme safeguard. If the building's structural integrity somehow failed, I wanted a small internal room, containing one of the world's newest top-tier emergency survival capsules. By the time I finished selecting options, the projected total was terrifying. 245.3 million yuan. I did not care. I only needed to pay 10% upfront. The remaining balance was due within 3 months. By then, the world would already be frozen. Who would care whether I paid the balance? With these upgrades, my ordinary apartment would be transformed into an almost indestructible doomsday fortress. I was about to finalize the order when another item caught my eye. A super AI security system jointly developed by SHIELD and one of the country's most advanced artificial intelligence companies. It could monitor the entire interior 24 hours a day. The system worked with specialized electronic wristbands and leg restraints. If the AI detected that another person inside the home posed a threat to the owner, it could activate the wearable's protective mechanism and deliver a high-voltage electrical shock, temporarily paralyzing the wearer. Poisoning, hidden blades, sudden attacks. The cameras and sensors constantly analyzed behavior. The moment a credible threat appeared, the system intervened. The wearables used long-distance wireless charging, so battery life was not a concern. They also could not be forcibly removed by the wearer. The technology was newly developed, but SHIELD claimed it had already passed hundreds of thousands of internal safety tests. I immediately became interested. This thing might as well have been designed specifically for me. In my previous life, Su Ruian had killed me from inside my own home. A system like this would eliminate that kind of betrayal. Once the extreme cold apocalypse arrived, outside enemies would have trouble reaching me. But danger from inside the safe house was harder to watch every second, and spending the end of the world completely alone would be boring. If I invited a few beautiful companions into the shelter, I wanted absolute control over my personal safety. I want to see it work, I said, tapping the table. I'm not paying just because a brochure says it's reliable. Zhao Xiao understood. He clapped his hands. A female secretary in heels entered. He took out a simplified demonstration set and secured the wearables around her wrist and thigh. This demo version has fewer functions, he explained, but the core safety system is identical. He designated me as the protected individual. At his instruction, the secretary stepped behind me and lifted a heavy vase. On the nearby display, my threat level remained at 0. Hers climbed rapidly. Before she could swing the vase, the AI activated. A powerful electrical pulse shot through the wearable. Her muscles locked. The vase slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. The secretary collapsed forward into my arms. After she recovered slightly, Zhao Xiao ran more demonstrations. Attempted poisoning, hidden weapon, sudden strike. The AI caught everything. By the end, the poor secretary was sprawled weakly on the floor, and Zhao Xiao had already reduced the output power by half. At full power, repeated testing like that would have been dangerous. I did not hesitate. Add it. With this system, life after the apocalypse would become much easier. Someone still had to clean the house, cook, and handle domestic work. And if a few maids lived with me, I would not have to sleep with one eye open. The normal price of each compatible wearable is 100,000 yuan, Zhao Xiao said. But you're our first customer for the full system, so I'll include some for free. How many do you want? He opened a secure cabinet. Most customers would only need a few. Human energy was limited after all. I thought for a moment. 10. Zhao Xiao nearly smashed his head into the cabinet. Are you planning to throw parties in there? I smiled. More people meant more convenience. Security would no longer be a concern. I also mentioned that I needed a large quantity of medicine. Conveniently, Zhao Xiao handed me a business card. If you have enough money, this man can source most pharmaceuticals. Tell him I referred you. I glanced at the card. A deputy director at Central Hospital, one of the best hospitals in the city. That was a serious connection. Satisfied, I put the card away. Then we signed the safe house contract. I paid a 26 million yuan deposit. Shield Security promised to complete the entire transformation within 20 days. The remaining balance would be settled within 3 months. I barely looked at the fine print before signing. In 1 month, the contract would be worthless paper. There was almost no chance anyone would ever collect the rest. At my insistence, construction would begin the next day. After leaving Shield, I called the hospital deputy director. Hello. Who is this? An older voice asked. Boss Zhao referred me. I want to buy a batch of specialized medicine from Director Shi. He paused. How much? 3 million yuan. I did not intend to spend everything. I still wanted money for food and other preparations. The line went quiet for several seconds. Then I heard a woman's soft voice in the background. Director, why did you stop? Keep going. Get lost. Don't interrupt my business. There was some shuffling. Then Director Shi returned to the call and we discussed details. For 3 million yuan, I purchased 10 large cases of specialized medicine, plus huge quantities of bandages, disinfectant, and general medical supplies. With that, food, medicine, shelter, and at least some weapons were all taking shape. I whistled on my way home and ordered takeout to celebrate. The food never arrived first. The police did. Hello, we're from the Qinshui City Public Security Bureau. We'd like to ask you a few questions. A male officer showed me his badge. Beside him stood a tall, striking policewoman. The moment I saw them, cold sweat almost appeared on my back. Then I realized why they were here. The bank robbery? They were probably interviewing witnesses. I calmed down immediately. You're Luo Tian, correct? The policewoman cut in sharply. Where were you around 9:30 this morning, and what were you doing? I frowned. Watch your tone. I'm not a suspect. I knew this woman, Yan Shu. She was famous inside the police system and had plenty of wealthy, well-connected admirers. Her family in the capital was powerful. More importantly, she was a national-level police combat champion. During one major case, she had taken down 5 knife-wielding drug criminals by herself. 10 ordinary men probably could not get close to her. Unfortunately, she had used excessive force during that operation and 1 suspect died. Her family used its connections to protect her from worse consequences. But she was transferred from criminal investigations to ordinary police work. After the apocalypse, Yan Shu would become trapped in our residential complex while helping care for a colleague's child. Eventually, food shortages weakened her. A gang of criminals surrounded her apartment. Rather than be taken, she jumped from the building. Sorry, the male officer said quickly. Her temper is just like that. He looked exhausted by his partner. It's fine. Come in. I did not want unnecessary trouble. As expected, they were only conducting witness interviews about the bank robbery. I was one of many people present, so the conversation did not last long. If you remember anything else, contact us. The male officer shook my hand and stood to leave. Yan Shu, meanwhile, yawned impatiently and stretched on the sofa. Her posture briefly became distracting. Before I could even look away, my collar was suddenly yanked upward. Where are your eyes looking? She snapped. She clearly hated men she considered lecherous. Her fist clenched. If that punch landed, an ordinary person could easily end up with a concussion. Stop, stop. Her partner nearly jumped between us. He knew exactly how dangerous Yan Shu was. An average civilian could not casually take one of her punches. And an officer assaulting a civilian would create a serious problem. Her fist stopped, barely a centimeter from my cheek. I did not even blink. Officer, attacking a civilian can get you fired. I calmly pulled her hand away from my collar and straightened my clothes. Behave yourself. I'll remember you. Yan Shu glared at me. Her partner apologized several more times before dragging her away. Outside, he groaned. Sister Yan, please control your temper. How can you almost punch an innocent civilian? If that hit landed, both of us would be disciplined. Innocent civilian, Yan Shu sneered. That man has nothing to do with those words. Having worked criminal cases against killers and drug traffickers, she was sensitive to the difference between ordinary people and people who had seen blood. Even though I tried to hide it, the calm killing intent buried in my demeanor had not escaped her. A butcher who slaughtered animals for 10 years carried a different air. So, did a desperate criminal who had killed people. She even suspected I might somehow be connected to the bank robbery. Her partner did not believe her. He probably thought she was simply irritable. Back inside, I rubbed my sore neck. Damn, that woman is strong, I muttered darkly. Yen Shu, after the apocalypse, you better not end up in my hands. I'm definitely saving one leg restraint for you. That evening, I headed to the city's night market street with a little over 3 million yuan left. If I was going to spend years watching the world freeze from inside a warm fortress, I refused to survive on compressed biscuits alone. My first stop was a barbecue shop, 1,000 portions of everything on the menu. The owner's smile vanished. He clearly thought I was a lunatic until my phone announced the first 10,000 yuan payment. His expression changed so fast it was almost supernatural. Dad, I was wrong. He dragged over a chair, wiped it with his sleeve, and immediately called his family out to help. One shop could never fill an order that large, so I moved down the street and repeated the process. Before long, nearly every barbecue shop in the area was cooking for me. Ordinary customers kept walking into stores that were technically open, only to hear the same answer. Sorry, sold out. That was when I remembered hot pot. I drove to Haidilao and ordered 10,000 packs of hot pot base. After the payment cleared, the manager stopped wondering whether I was joking and started emptying the warehouse. Whenever nobody was looking, entire boxes disappeared into my spatial storage. Then I went to the city's largest agricultural market and pushed the scale even further. Pork, chicken, beef, fish, vegetables, fruit. I placed enormous wholesale orders with deposits large enough to make suppliers call one another in the middle of the night. Soon half the market was working overtime because of me. I rented a refrigerated warehouse outside the city as the public delivery point. Once the trucks arrived, everything would quietly move into my storage space, where time stood still and fresh food never spoiled. By the time I returned to the barbecue street, the first batches were ready. I sat down beneath the lights and ate while office workers wandered from shop to shop, wondering why every grill in the district had somehow run out of food at the same time. Several people offered to buy skewers from me. I refused. In 1 month, money would be useless. Tonight's inconvenience would be forgotten. The food inside my space could keep me comfortable for years. By midnight, the final insulated containers were packed. I made a few visible trips for appearances, then transferred everything into storage whenever no one was watching. I had just bought a drink from a vending machine when someone called my name. Luo Tian? I turned. Li Ro. She looked exhausted, as if she had been working overtime until midnight. Even tired, she still attracted plenty of attention. Her long legs and heels looked like they had walked far enough that she was struggling. Beside her was a man pushing an electric scooter, Yu Lin, her husband. The moment Yu Lin saw me, the anger already building inside him exploded. So you're the little bastard trying to seduce my wife. Although we were neighbors, Yu Lin and I rarely spoke. He had always looked down on me as some inexperienced young punk. Even when we passed each other, he usually did not bother greeting me. Li Ru and I were the ones who occasionally talked. What are you talking about? I frowned and looked at Li Ru. Had she said something? Honey, stop. Nothing happened between us. Li Ru hurried to restrain him. She was clearly mortified. Yu Lin was unreasonable whenever he became angry. The real source of the problem was obvious. That elevator incident. Several male residents had seen Li Ru pressed against me in the crowded elevator. The same men, who could barely keep their eyes off her, had apparently transformed into moral saints afterward and spread rumors everywhere. It was late, but the night market was crowded. Yu Lin's shout immediately attracted spectators. What happened? I heard somebody got caught with another man's wife. Seriously? This should be good. Shame the barbecue is sold out. Watching this with skewers would be perfect. Damn, the woman's gorgeous. I'd lose 10 years of my life for one chance. The whispers made Li Ru's face burn red. I quickly understood the entire situation. We had been forced close together in the elevator. Someone embellished the story. Eventually, Yu Lin heard it. I laughed dismissively. Yu Lin was no better than the others. In my previous life, when he was too embarrassed to beg for food himself, he sent his wife to my door. Later, instead of being grateful, he joined the mob that broke into my home and stole everything. He even insisted that, as my neighbor, he deserved one of my arms. And when food became scarce enough, he sold Li Ru for 3 packs of noodles. She eventually jumped to her death. Why would I show a man like that any respect? If you don't have evidence, don't make accusations, I said coldly. You might cause yourself trouble. I ignored the crowd. Wait, which one is the victim husband? The handsome one. No, idiot. That's clearly the male lead. The balding one beside the woman is the husband. No wonder. If I were her, I'd cheat too. The crowd was having the time of their lives. Some people even pulled out phones to record. You dare threaten me? Yu Lin's face twisted as he realized the crowd's opinion of him was far worse than its opinion of me. You little bastard, believe it or not, I'll beat you. He raised a fist despite Li Ru trying to stop him. Get lost. I looked at him once. Yu Lin's breathing caught. When had this kid become so intimidating? In front of everyone, his legs actually weakened. He dropped onto the ground. The crowd exploded with laughter. One look and he folded. He wanted to throw a punch, but his legs surrendered first. Li Ru looked ready to disappear into a crack in the pavement. She had never imagined her husband could embarrass her this badly. Then I smiled. For a man with a physical disability who can't even perform properly as a husband, I do feel some sympathy. Yu Lin's face changed. But Li Ru and I have nothing going on. Still, if you ever need help in the future, you're welcome to send her to my apartment. I deliberately tore open the deepest wound in his heart. He was impotent, no longer capable of living like a normal husband. The crowd erupted again. Everyone stared at him with pity. Yulin staggered to his feet, eyes full of hatred. He wanted to tear me apart, but he did not dare move. Luo Tian, if I ever get the chance, I'll kill you. His fists clenched. I had no interest in wasting more time. I got into the Porsche and drove away. The next morning, Zhao Xiao's phone call woke me early. 2 large shield security trucks had already arrived at my residential complex. Design experts and the construction team were present, but everyone had been stopped at the entrance. The old security guard had originally opened the gate. Then a neighborhood committee auntie appeared from nowhere and refused to let them enter because I was not personally present. I washed up quickly and went downstairs. I already told you. Unless Luo Tian comes down himself, I cannot confirm your identity. For the safety of the residents, you're not entering. Wang Shufang stood at the gate with hands on her hips. The poor security guard beside her looked exhausted. Zhao Xiao stood outside with an awkward expression. I walked over. Auntie Wang, when did the neighborhood committee become so powerful that construction crews need your personal approval to enter? I sneered. I knew exactly what she was doing. She had not forgotten our argument over the stolen food. This was pure revenge. I'm only thinking about everyone else in the neighborhood. Auntie Wang said the moment she saw me. These people really are yours? Fine, then let them in. Since I had appeared in person, she stopped making trouble and stepped aside with a smug look. Her expression practically said, you offended me once. If I get another chance, I'll make your life miserable again. I could not be bothered arguing with that kind of petty person. I waved the shield convoy into the complex. At almost the same moment, the hotel catering trucks arrived too. The enormous line of delivery vehicles immediately drew a crowd of residents. Who orders this much food? He spent over $1 million on banquet dishes. That's insane. Cha. Young people these days don't know how to respect food, Auntie Wang muttered. Several people agreed with her. Clearly, everyone assumed the hundreds upon hundreds of banquet dishes would eventually spoil and be thrown away. What they did not know was that once the apocalypse arrived, those same dishes would become delicacies they could only dream about. I had no interest in explaining myself. The hotel workers carried the food into my underground storage room batch after batch. The warehouse was large enough to hold it, and I had ordered only premium dishes. Abalone, lobster, caviar, black truffles, high-end meats and seafood. Nothing cheap. The hotel manager who supervised the delivery gave me his personal number and a VIP card. If you ever need another large catering order, Mr. Luo, contact me directly. He was not exaggerating when he called it a major order. Even large corporations holding annual banquets rarely bought this much food at once. After the hotel employees left, I quietly entered the storage room and absorbed every neatly stacked banquet tray into my spatial storage. Since Shield Security was tearing apart my apartment for renovations, I temporarily had nowhere to live. I told Zhao Xiao to supervise the construction and make sure nobody cut corners. Then I booked a presidential suite at a 5-star hotel for 20 days. The female manager was delighted by such a long booking. She handed me a card with her private number and hinted that if I needed anything at night, I could call. I glanced at her and silently compared her with Li Ru. Not even close. The card went straight into the trash. For the next part of my preparation, I found a professional archery club. I paid several thousand yuan for one of their most expensive private coaches, a beautiful woman who was supposed to teach me how to use a compound bow. Originally, I wanted firearm training. Unfortunately, there was no convenient civilian shooting range nearby, so archery was the next best thing. My logic had been simple. More expensive instructor, better instruction. I was wrong. The woman spent more time flirting than teaching. Whenever she corrected my posture, her hands seemed to wander somewhere unnecessary. Halfway through a lesson, she would suddenly complain that it was hot and start taking off layers. 2 whole days passed. I still could not even draw the compound bow properly. This was ridiculous. I had come here to learn archery, not to attend some bizarre seduction class. So I fired her. Under her resentful gaze, I replaced her with a young male instructor who actually knew what he was doing. For the remainder of my time before the apocalypse, I lived a simple routine. Presidential suite at night, training club during the day. With persistent practice, I eventually reached the point where I could hit a target consistently within 10 meters. I also spent a day preparing entertainment. Once the apocalypse began, the internet would eventually collapse. So I bought gaming laptops, consoles, massive storage drives, and every piece of offline entertainment equipment I could think of. Games, anime, movies, shows, documentaries, anything worth keeping. I filled hundreds of terabytes of drives. Even adult entertainment got its own archive. There was no point pretending otherwise. If civilization was ending, boredom would be a real enemy too. Time passed quickly. Before I knew it, the day arrived to inspect my completed safe house. Zhao Xiao called from my apartment. Mr. Luo, everything is finished. You can come inspect it. I drove the Porsche back to the complex. The moment I stepped inside the renovated apartment, my eyes lit up. The quality was excellent. The entire interior had been rebuilt. Military-grade alloy plates had been embedded inside the walls. Yet somehow, the home looked more luxurious than before. My old television had been replaced by an enormous screen over 100 inches wide, linked directly to the world-class AI system Shield had installed. A beautiful custom fireplace occupied the living room. Zhao Xiao patiently walked me through each upgrade. The new ventilation system could refresh indoor air while filtering harmful gases. The insulation had been rebuilt from the ground up. Combined with the fireplace, the house could retain heat extremely efficiently and remain comfortable around the clock. Then came the system I cared about most, the AI. This is the plus configuration, Zhao Xiao explained. You need to activate the primary administrator function by voice. My interest immediately rose. I can say anything. Yes. AI system, activate. The huge display instantly lit up. A progress bar appeared. Then a clear, artificial voice filled the room. Welcome, Master. The AI Central Intelligence System is now online. Following Zhao Xiao's instructions, I ordered it to display the surveillance network. The giant screen split into more than 90 individual camera feeds. Almost 100 miniature cameras had been hidden throughout the building. Hallways, elevators, entrances, blind corners, every important area. You'll be able to monitor almost everything happening outside your apartment, Zhao Xiao said quietly. These camera systems use long-range wireless charging. They can receive power through multiple layers of reinforced concrete from within 200 meters. For a project approaching 300 million yuan, at least some absurd high-end technology was expected. I nodded repeatedly. Worth it. The result exceeded my expectations. I walked to the balcony. The old floor-to-ceiling windows had been completely replaced. The glass is bullet-resistant and blast-resistant, Zhao Xiao explained. Its overall structural strength is even higher than the 300mm titanium alloy reinforcement plates inside the walls. At the same time, it remains optically clear enough for observation. Then he led me into a small server room. This houses the AI's hardware. The processing capacity was comparable to some of the best commercial computing systems in the world. It also had an enormous amount of storage, well over 100,000 terabytes. I almost slapped my forehead. If I had known this earlier, I would not have bought so many external drives. I could simply tell the AI to download everything I wanted. Movies, shows, games, reference databases, entire offline libraries. This renovation was worth every cent. The AI could monitor my personal safety 24 hours a day. Its massive database could also answer questions, organize information, manage power, and analyze threats. The apartment itself had effectively become a military-grade bunker. An ordinary armed private team would not be able to break through from outside. Even if the entire building were partially demolished, my reinforced unit would have a good chance of surviving. And if something catastrophic happened, there was still the internal emergency survival room. Your company really is impressive, I said. I'm very satisfied. Zhao Xiao smiled broadly. Then he pulled out a document. If everything meets your expectations, please sign the final acceptance form. The remaining balance is due within 3 months. Of course. Absolutely. I signed without hesitation. Inside, I almost laughed. There would be no 3-month payment. The apocalypse would arrive first. I had paid a little over 20 million yuan up front for a fortress worth nearly 300 million. Perfect. Once Zhao Xiao left, I dropped onto the sofa and looked around the house. The giant screen sat silently in standby mode. Butler, I said, download and save offline maps of the entire world. Also monitor all online information about temperature changes. The AI immediately began executing the command. Once the snow reached 4 or 5 meters deep, streets and landmarks would disappear beneath white ice. If I ever needed to go outside, offline maps and identifiable structures could still help me navigate. Tomorrow was the apocalypse, and if my memory was correct, the massive solar disturbance would begin this afternoon. Its electromagnetic effects would cripple communications and satellites overnight. That was my final opportunity. I had been thinking about 2 targets for weeks: the massive Walmart warehouse covering more than 1 million square meters, and the port that handled goods worth hundreds of billions every day. The solar disturbance would also create an eclipse-like phenomenon that turned daytime into darkness. Perfect cover. As I walked out of the building, several residents noticed me. Isn't that Luo Tian? Haven't seen him in a while. That kid's been acting weird lately. First he ordered mountains of banquet food. Then he reinforced his apartment like a bunker. Maybe he thinks the world is ending. They laughed after I walked past. Then the sky suddenly darkened. Not like sunset. It was as if somebody had switched day into night. What the hell? Why is it dark? Residents looked up. Holy crap, the sun disappeared. A moment later, they corrected themselves. No, this must be an eclipse. But the news never said there would be a total solar eclipse today. People pulled out their phones, then confusion spread. No signal. Every device showed 0 bars. Videos recorded on the phones were filled with static and interference. The electromagnetic disturbance had already begun. Children continued running and laughing through the courtyard. They had no idea they were playing beneath the opening curtain of the worst disaster in human history. I had just turned the corner outside the complex when someone crashed directly into my chest. Ow! Li Ru rubbed her forehead. She had almost been knocked backward. When she looked up and realized it was me, the anger that had flashed across her face disappeared. Color rose into her cheeks instead. Why did accidents keep happening between us? First the bathroom, then the elevator. Now, the sky suddenly went dark while she was walking and she ran straight into me. At least it was me, rather than some random stranger. For a fleeting second, she even found herself thinking that was somehow fortunate. Then she noticed I was barely paying attention to her. My eyes were fixed on the sky. Even in the darkness, the intensity in my gaze was obvious. The sign had appeared. The extreme cold apocalypse was real. My hands slowly clenched. I had lived through it once. And yet I still felt nervous. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. Last time, when the solar disturbance happened, I had been just as ignorant as everyone else. I thought it was a strange, natural phenomenon. I prepared nothing. This time, I had infinite storage. If I emptied the Walmart warehouse and the port before the storm arrived, I would never need to worry about supplies again. I got into the Porsche and drove away. Liru remained standing behind me, completely ignored. She stared after the car in disbelief. Then she glanced down at herself, almost offended by my lack of reaction. 20 minutes later, I reached the Walmart warehouse. I pulled down my cap and walked through the entrance. A muscular blonde security guard in uniform rushed out of the booth toward me. This warehouse was operated by the American retailer's local branch and was important enough that much of the security staff consisted of foreign personnel. I sighed. Why chase me? Couldn't you pretend you saw nothing? People who insisted on interfering with everything tended to die early. The guard never reached me. A gunshot struck him at close range. He collapsed in terror, unable to understand how an ordinary civilian had produced a firearm. At this distance, missing was nearly impossible. The apocalypse would begin tomorrow. I no longer had any interest in pretending to be a good person. Efficiency mattered now. Anyone who blocked my path became an obstacle. The gun had a suppressor, so the shot did not immediately alert the others. I entered the warehouse. Under the industrial lighting, the interior looked almost like daylight. I started in the food section. The scale was unbelievable. Rows of shelving, 6 or 7 meters high, were completely packed. Mountain after mountain of packaged food stretched into the distance. Tens of thousands of tons at minimum. Fortunately, I did not need to move things one box at a time. I simply touched an entire shelving unit. Whoosh! The entire rack and everything on it vanished into my space, one row after another. By the time I finished walking through the section, an area of roughly 100,000 square meters had become eerily empty. Next came beverages. I took everything. Water, soft drinks, juices, energy drinks, alcohol. The shelves disappeared with the goods. Then came general supplies. I found huge quantities of fuel and emergency materials, barrels of gasoline, smokeless fuel, solid alcohol, enough for one person to use for centuries. I left nothing behind. Inside my spatial storage, I kept everything organized. Food in one sector, beverages in another, fuel and general supplies somewhere else. That way, retrieving things later would be easy. As I continued through the warehouse, I found more useful stock, cooking spices, fitness equipment, men's and women's clothing, tools, camping gear, and then something that truly surprised me, a batch of next-generation professional polar survival clothing, supposedly capable of protecting people in temperatures approaching -100 degrees Celsius. It appeared to be equipment purchased for a scientific expedition. Now it belonged to me. In the future Ice Age, this would be among the best cold weather equipment in existence. I stored every suit, the tents, sleeping bags, everything. I even discovered a shipment of snowmobiles. Those disappeared too. Looking at the enormous empty warehouse, I felt an almost childish sense of accomplishment. Now, no matter how brutal the cold became, I had enough equipment to live comfortably. I was about to leave when voices drifted out of one of the staff rooms. Foreign accents. English. Fortunately, mine was good enough to understand. One man was bragging about sexually assaulting a barely adult student the previous night while her boyfriend was unable to stop him. The others laughed and encouraged him. Their tone was revolting. I stopped walking. These animals were enjoying themselves quite a bit. I kicked the door open. Before they could properly react, I raised the handgun. Several suppressed shots followed. The room went silent. The men collapsed. I looked at them coldly. Lucky you. Less than 10 hours remained before the apocalypse. Dying now was almost a mercy compared with what was coming. I left the Walmart warehouse and immediately drove toward the port. The air felt colder. Compared with when I had arrived, the wind coming through the car's ventilation system now carried a noticeable chill. The sky had turned gray. By tomorrow morning, people would discover that the warm sun they knew was gone behind a world of storm clouds. At the port, I stepped out and looked over an endless field of shipping containers. Red, blue, green. Stacked in orderly rows as far as I could see. Inside them were millions of tons of grain, packaged food, snacks, drinks, imported luxury cars, industrial products, household goods. I did not discriminate. If I could touch a container, I took it. One after another vanished into my spatial storage. The port contained so much cargo that the process took 4 or 5 hours. I even stored several nearby cargo ships with capacities approaching 100,000 tons. By the end, the scale of what I possessed was absurd. The port alone contained enough supplies for me to live hundreds of lifetimes. Even if the Ice Age lasted decades, I would never run out. Combined with my fortress, I was ready. Then I exhaled. White vapor appeared in front of my face. In summer, the temperature was falling frighteningly fast. Snow would begin soon. It was already after midnight. Most ordinary people were asleep. Only night owls would notice the sudden cold. I could not stay outside any longer. Survival came first. I slammed the accelerator. The Porsche shot forward. The icy night wind raised goosebumps across my arms. A drive that normally took half an hour took me less than 15 minutes. Back home, I shut the heavy security door. It was comparable to the entrance of a bank vault. 3 locks. Then the massive alloy crossbar. Only after everything was secured did I finally relax. I collapsed onto the sofa. I had made it home before the real storm. "Welcome home, Master," the AI said. Global temperatures have dropped rapidly over the past 5 hours. Current outdoor temperature, 2 degrees Celsius. Indoor temperature, 26 degrees Celsius. A graph appeared on the giant screen. The temperature curve had fallen like a cliff. Time to prepare. I checked every window and door. Then I took a long, hot shower and changed into comfortable pajamas. The fireplace was already burning. Warm air filled the room. Looking around my fortress, I felt genuine peace. At 3 in the morning, I was still awake. There was no way I could sleep while the catastrophe that would reshape the planet was about to begin. Warning, the AI suddenly announced. Severe atmospheric disturbance detected. It's here. I dropped the game controller and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the night was silent. A few snowflakes drifted lazily through the darkness. Then the sky seemed to convulse. The snowfall thickened. The flakes became violent. Wind howled between buildings. Within moments, snow poured from the heavens in dense sheets, swallowing the entire city in white. Visibility collapsed. Everything outside vanished behind the blizzard. I tightened my fist. This was nature. Against a disaster of this scale, human beings were no more important than ants. I returned to the living room, pulled a chair in front of the fireplace, and watched the flames crackle. My tension gradually eased. What's the temperature? Then I realized calling it AI Central Intelligence System every time sounded ridiculous. From now on, your name is Butler. Understood, Master, the AI replied. Current outdoor temperature, minus 35 degrees Celsius. Indoor temperature, 29 degrees Celsius. I stared at the numbers. In less than half an hour, the outside world had plunged below minus 30, and it was still falling. My confidence in the safe house rose another level. Outside the window, snow had already buried the balcony in a thick layer. My phone's signal had partially recovered. I opened the internet. The sudden cold and massive snowfall had instantly become the #1 trending topic. People were complaining everywhere. What the hell? Winter came early this year. Isn't it June? It's already minus 20 or minus 30 outside. This is insane. Many people in southern regions had no proper winter clothing at all. Their closets held short sleeves and light jackets. Others were celebrating. No work tomorrow. School's definitely canceled. Gaming all night. Some people even ran outside in the middle of the night to roll around in the snow for social media videos. I shook my head. The final carnival of an ignorant world. I closed the phone. Day 1 of the apocalypse. I lay comfortably on my sofa. Residents in the neighborhood group chat complained about the cold. Meanwhile, I could start sweating after walking around my living room. Then Auntie Wang tagged me. She wanted me to go downstairs and shovel snow. I almost laughed. The accumulation outside was probably already over a meter deep. An adult walking through it would barely have more than their head visible, and it was still snowing. Even if we cleared a path, it would be buried again within hours. I refused immediately. Snow is still falling this hard. Anyone going down there to shovel right now has water in their brain. Several residents who had been afraid to speak openly sent messages agreeing with me. Auntie Wang clearly had not expected her little revenge plan to collapse so quickly. Her smugness turned to anger. Why is everyone listening to Luo Tian? I'm the neighborhood committee representative, not him. Then she turned her fire back on me. Luo Tian, I'm asking you to shovel snow for everyone's benefit. This concerns the entire building. Can you stop being so selfish? I almost admired the move. She had turned her personal grudge into a community interest. If I refused, even residents who knew she was targeting me might still resent me. That was human nature. If someone refused to contribute, people could label them selfish. But I had no intention of stepping into her trap. I tagged her directly. Auntie Wang, as a neighborhood committee representative, shouldn't you set an example? You should be the first one downstairs with a shovel. Without a respected leader like you organizing everyone, how could the rest of us possibly work efficiently? You want to weaponize labels? So could I. I was an ordinary resident. She was the supposed public servant. Who should lead the community effort? The group chat went silent. Everyone waited for her answer. Auntie Wang was probably close to smashing her phone. She had planned to send me outside into deadly weather for hours, and hoped I would end up sick. Instead, I had turned her official status against her. Unable to find a response, she finally wrote, At Luo Tian, as a representative of the neighborhood committee, I am ordering you to take your tools and go downstairs immediately. Refusing an organizational order will have consequences after this snow disaster ends. Don't make me say it twice. Now she was pretending she had governmental authority. Because the snow had only begun. Social order had not fully collapsed yet. Most people still believed the disaster would end soon. So many residents were reluctant to offend anyone associated with neighborhood administration. There was another reason. Auntie Wang's son, Wang Fu, was a street thug who spent his time around bars, KTV clubs, and local gangsters. Rumors said he knew a serious underworld figure with blood on his hands. Most residents in this complex were office workers or business people. They had no desire to provoke street criminals. One by one, the people Auntie Wang had tagged stopped talking. Secretly, they were probably hoping I would keep confronting her so none of them had to go outside. I laughed aloud. This old woman really had started believing her own performance. You're taking this role-playing thing seriously, Auntie Wang. When did the neighborhood committee become powerful enough to issue criminal orders? Call the police right now if you think I'm breaking the law. I added, I'm not shoveling anything today. Deal with it. The mockery was merciless. Several residents privately sent laughing emojis. For several minutes, the group stayed silent. Then a new message exploded onto the screen. Luo Tian, you want to die? Get on video and kneel to apologize to my mother right now, or I'll come upstairs and chop you apart. Wang Fu, Auntie Wang's son. The chat froze. Everybody knew his reputation, no legitimate job, criminal friends, violent temper. People who normally complained about Auntie Wang suddenly disappeared. I was not worried. I was sitting inside a fortress strong enough to withstand explosives. My spatial storage contained handguns, crossbows, and thousands of bolts. What exactly was Wang Fu going to do? I replied with a stream of insults. Then I leaned back, feeling strangely refreshed. This was what it meant to have strength. No need to swallow humiliation, no need to bow. On the other side of the building, Wang Fu smashed his phone onto the bed. That bastard thinks he's tough now? I'll go up there and kill him. He stormed into the kitchen and grabbed a large cleaver. His mother panicked. Just beat him, don't actually kill him. If you stab him, you'll go to prison. I know what I'm doing. Wang Fu slammed the door. The moment he entered the hallway, the freezing air hit him. His murderous posture collapsed immediately. He shivered so hard, the cleaver nearly slipped from his hand. He tightened his coat and hurried into the elevator. It was only the second day of the extreme cold apocalypse. Power and water still worked. The elevator still ran. A resident soon posted in the group chat. Did anyone else see Wang Fu? I just looked through my peephole. He got into the elevator carrying a cleaver. Seriously. Luo Tian's finished. I heard Wang Fu is vicious. Several people advised me to apologize before he reached my floor. Just record a video, kneel, and say sorry. People like Wang Fu are dangerous. Others were openly delighted. Xu Ruyan, seeing the messages, actually laughed. In her mind, I had finally encountered trouble for refusing to shower her with food and attention. She was probably already imagining herself comforting me afterward and manipulating me into giving her supplies. Li Ru had the opposite reaction. She sat curled on her sofa, anxious. Why is he bringing a knife? This won't end with someone dead, will it? She wanted to help, but she was only one woman. Even emergency calls were beginning to fail, and I had not responded to the group. Butler, show me Wang Fu. The enormous screen immediately switched to surveillance footage. Shield security had hidden cameras throughout the building, including inside the elevator. Target currently inside elevator near floor 20, Butler reported. He is carrying a bladed weapon. Threat level high. Estimated arrival in 30 seconds. Recommendation, do not open the door. I smiled. As if I needed the reminder. Why step outside and fight hand-to-hand when I had an armored fortress? I opened my spatial storage and pulled out a hunting crossbow. I slowly loaded a bolt. Even a wild boar could be dropped by this weapon. A human body was far more fragile. After more than half a month of practice, I was comfortable with it. I opened the small firing port Shield had built near the top of the security door. Then I placed a stool beneath it and waited. The elevator doors opened. Wang Fu stormed out holding his cleaver. Luo Tian, get the hell out here. He reached my door and hacked down. Clang. Ordinary security doors had thin outer steel. Mine did not. This one was built like a bank vault. A small explosive charge would struggle to breach it. A kitchen cleaver was a joke. Wang Fu stared at the chunk missing from his blade. What the hell is this door made of? He kicked it. Boom. The door did not move. Pain shot through his foot. Damn it. He cursed and hacked at the door again. You coward. Hiding in your house. Come out. He had no idea that a crossbow was already aimed at him from above. I watched his furious face through the firing port. Then my aim shifted downward. In my previous life, Wang Fu had been one of the first men through my door when the mob attacked. He had swung an axe at me. For someone like him, immediate death felt too easy. I wanted consequences. And I remembered something else. Auntie Wang had always complained that she still had no grandson. I smiled coldly. Fine. I could solve that problem permanently. The crossbow released with a soft snap. Wang Fu did not understand what happened until a bolt struck him between the legs. His face went blank for half a second. Then came the pain. His scream tore through the hallway. He collapsed, clutching himself and rolling on the frozen floor. In temperatures already plunging toward -70, an injury like that without proper treatment was catastrophic. Only then did Wang Fu finally realize he had picked a fight with someone far more dangerous than the usual people he bullied. Men like him survived by numbers and intimidation. Most of their victims were ordinary people, too frightened to resist. I was not one of those people. Looking at the blood on the floor, Wang Fu's face went pale. He clearly feared I might fire a second bolt. So, despite the agony, he staggered toward the elevator as fast as he could. I did not stop him. I was not such a cruel person. After all, why kill him immediately when he could live long enough to bring this lovely surprise home to his mother? I only regretted that I would not get to see Auntie Wang's face when he arrived. Meanwhile, the residents' group chat was buzzing. It's been a while. Why hasn't anything happened? What do you mean? Luo Tian is probably getting beaten half to death right now. Yeah. He looks fit, but Wang Fu is a street thug. Fighting is basically his profession. Most of the residents assumed I had lost. Several people were openly enjoying the spectacle. To them, what chance did an ordinary resident have against a gangster carrying a knife? Auntie Wang was especially pleased. Dafu may not have many good qualities, she posted smugly, but he's filial. He'll teach that kid a lesson. Just leave him enough breath to live. In her mind, her son was probably forcing me to kneel and beg right now. Then pounding suddenly came from her apartment door. Mom, help me. The voice outside was her son's, but it did not sound triumphant. It sounded like somebody dying. Auntie Wang's face changed. Had her son gone too far and killed me? Why else would he sound this terrified? She hurried to open the door, then she saw the blood. Wang Fu stood hunched in the hallway, both hands pressed between his legs. A red trail stretched from the elevator all the way to the apartment. Get bandages. Anything. Sew it up. He was barely coherent. Only then did Auntie Wang realize that her precious son was the injured one. Dafu, what happened? Why are you bleeding so much? She dragged him inside, face turning green. The injury was so severe that parts of his body were already numb from cold and blood loss. Auntie Wang panicked. My ancestor, I still haven't held a grandson. How did you injure yourself there? She tore through cabinets searching for medical supplies. So frantic she could not remember where anything was. Finally, Wang Fu's wife, Yunana, came out and found the first aid kit in a living room drawer. Neither woman was a doctor, but in temperatures around -70, the situation was desperate. If they could not slow the bleeding, Wang Fu might not survive long enough for professional help. Even if professional help existed, his body shook violently from cold and pain. Ice crystals were already forming around the edges of the wound. Auntie Wang at least had years of sewing experience. With no proper surgical equipment, she did what she could using ordinary needle and thread. The result was grim. The crossbow bolt had caused catastrophic damage. Even someone with little medical knowledge could tell that his reproductive function was almost certainly gone. Mom, Wang Fu whimpered, refusing to look down. How bad is it? That bastard had a crossbow. He ambushed me. Auntie Wang trembled with rage and horror. It was over. Even if she could somehow bring him to the best hospital in the country with a world-class surgical team waiting, the damage was beyond what she understood how to fix. Son, tears rolled down her face. You may never be a normal man again. The words struck him harder than the bolt. Never? For a gangster who constantly bragged about women and masculinity, the revelation was unbearable. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Dafu. Auntie Wang shook him frantically. While all this happened, the neighborhood chat continued speculating about my fate. Most still assumed I was the one lying injured somewhere. Yunana silently closed the group chat. Once Auntie Wang finished her crude emergency treatment, Yunana picked up a mop and began cleaning the frozen blood from the floor. A strange thought entered her mind. Maybe I should find another man. She had never loved Wang Fu that deeply anyway. Their relationship had begun because she was tired of working around KTV clubs and wanted a man with a decent apartment to settle with. Auntie Wang seemed to sense her thoughts. Yunana, don't even think about it. Even if my son is injured, you are his wife for life. Don't get any ideas. Yunana forced a smile. I'm only worried about Dafu's condition, Mom. You're misunderstanding me. Auntie Wang snorted and turned her hatred toward me. She wanted to tear me apart. But now that she knew I had a crossbow, she did not dare come to my door. So she did the only thing she could. She opened the neighborhood group and started attacking me with words. At Luotian, do you have any conscience? Dafu only wanted to teach you a small lesson, yet you used such a vicious method. Are you even human? The group exploded. Wait, are you saying Luo Tian beat Wang Fu? That gangster lost? Residents were shocked. Li Ru, in the apartment next door, was not. She had heard Wang Fu's scream. She did not know exactly how I had done it, but an inexplicable sense of security rose inside her. Sitting on her sofa wrapped in blankets, she sighed softly. Luo Tian really is capable. Without meaning to, she compared me with her husband. The comparison was brutal. Shu Ruyan, on the other hand, was disappointed. She had already prepared a message pretending to comfort me after I got beaten, hoping I would be grateful and give her food. Now the entire plan was useless. Her imaginary feast disappeared with it. After Auntie Wang ranted for a while, the group gradually quieted down. 2 more days passed. It was now the 5th day of the extreme cold apocalypse. Inside my safe house, I had spent several peaceful days doing almost nothing. I played games I had always wanted to play. When I was thirsty, I drank ice-cold soda. When I was hungry, I ate premium Wagyu steak and French foie gras. I ignored the clock. Sleep whenever I wanted. Eat whenever I wanted. Game whenever I wanted. Exercise occasionally. The lazy life I had dreamed about for years had somehow become reality only after the world ended. Wearing silk pajamas and holding a steaming drink, I strolled to the huge window. Outside, 7 or 8 residents were desperately shoveling snow. They were probably trying to clear a path out of the complex. It was hopeless. The snow was already deeper than a person. After who knew how long, the residents had only cleared a tiny patch. Even wrapped in heavy down jackets and thick gloves, they shook violently in the -70 cold. Some could barely hold their shovels. Waste of effort. Human strength could not defeat this environment. The accumulation was already several meters deep. Snow continued falling. Even if they cleared a route now, it would be buried again. And what would they find outside? Closed stores, frozen streets, even deeper snow. I lost interest and returned to the sofa. I picked up a controller. When I became bored with games, I told Butler to pull a highly rated movie from the server. Having a super AI companion made the silence less oppressive. Unlike my previous life, I no longer felt completely alone. The situation next door was very different. Li Ru's home had run out of food. She searched every kitchen cabinet and drawer with growing disbelief. She clearly remembered leaving 1 bundle of noodles. If rationed carefully, it should have lasted through today. She had been so afraid of running out that she skipped dinner the previous night. She only cooked a small portion for Yu Lin. But while she had been starving herself to conserve food, her husband continued eating without restraint. Nearly 2/3 of their stored food had gone into his stomach. This morning, Li Ru woke up so hungry she could barely think. She went to cook the noodles. they were gone. Then she saw the empty packaging in the trash. A dirty bowl sat in the sink, leftovers frozen solid against it. "You Lin." She stormed into his room and threw the empty package onto the floor. "You knew I went hungry to save that. You cooked the entire thing for yourself? There is literally no rice left in this house. The roads are buried. We can't buy anything. What are we supposed to do now? Starve?" Yu Lin barely looked away from his offline game. "What are you yelling for? Can't you see I'm busy?" His fingers hammered the keyboard. The game flashed with explosions and combat effects. He did not even look at his wife. Li Ru stood there shaking. She was done. This man played games all day, or went out drinking, or came home drunk and angry. He was selfish and completely indifferent to her feelings. "What are you so mad about?" Yu Lin said casually. "Haven't you always been close with that kid across the hall? Go borrow food from him." "We're normal neighbors," Li Ru snapped. "And everyone is trapped by the blizzard. What if he doesn't have much food either?" Yu Lin finally turned and looked at her with contempt. "With what you look like, use your brain, tempt him a little. Worst case, make a tiny sacrifice and trick him into giving you everything." His mouth curled. "Then I'll make Luo Tian come crawling to me for food afterward. I'll humiliate him properly." He still had not forgotten how embarrassed he felt at the night market. Li Ru stared at him as if seeing a stranger. "Are you insane? What kind of husband encouraged his own wife to seduce another man so he could steal food? What did he think she was?" "Go already," Yu Lin said impatiently, putting on his headphones. "I don't care, just don't actually go too far with him. And hurry up, I'm hungry." Then he returned to the game. Li Ru actually laughed from anger. After years of marriage, she finally felt she was seeing his true face. When Yu Lin lost his job and refused to find another, she paid the bills. She did the housework. She endured his drinking. She tolerated his temper. She rarely complained. But now he had casually pushed her toward another man like she was a bargaining chip. That trampled the last line she still respected. Of course, Li Ru did not know that 2 months later, in the previous timeline, Yu Lin had literally sold her for 3 packs of instant noodles. She closed the bedroom door and leaned against it. Whatever hesitation had remained inside her disappeared. "Fine. If you want to use me to get revenge on him, then fine." A while later, Li Ru stood in the freezing hallway and tightened her coat. She took a breath, then knocked on my door. Around noon, my stomach was growling. My mind entered the storage space. What should I eat? The food section stretched beyond sight. Steaks, grilled fish, barbecue, lobster, abalone, luxury dishes piled like mountains. After browsing for a while, I made a decision. Charcoal grilled lamb chops and vegetable salad. With a thought, a plate of golden lamb chops glistening with fat appeared on the dining table. Beside it came a fresh salad with herbs and cheese. Meat and vegetables. Balanced enough. To keep myself entertained and informed, I told Butler to open the official television news channel. After several days of blizzards and extreme cold, almost every private channel had stopped broadcasting. Most online platforms had been shut down too. Perhaps the authorities wanted to prevent panic and stop people from spreading end-of-the-world claims. On television, a presenter bundled in a heavy winter coat spoke passionately. "Citizens, please remain calm. Government rescue operations are being organized in an orderly manner. All departments are working actively. This snow disaster will be overcome. Please trust the authorities. No citizen will be abandoned." I stared at the screen. If I had not lived through this once already, I might have believed it. In my previous life, officials said almost the same thing. At first, everyone became excited. People genuinely believed help was coming. Then weeks passed, then months. No rescue. Most households exhausted their food. To survive, people started stealing, then robbing, then breaking down doors. If someone resisted, they were killed. A few months later, food became so scarce that desperate people began looking at frozen corpses differently. At temperatures this low, the entire city had become a giant freezer. My phone buzzed. Auntie Wang was talking again in the neighborhood group. At everyone. "Did you see what the official channel said? The government will not abandon the people. This snow disaster will pass. Everyone must believe in the authorities." Then came the real point. Some households are running low on food. Those who stored more should help the others. Once the snow disaster ends, hoarding too much food will only be wasteful. We all live in the same building. We should behave like one big family instead of scheming against one another. Anyone who harms others during a crisis will be despised. Once the disaster is over, justice will come. On the surface, she was preaching unity. In reality, she was trying to isolate me and pressure anyone with food into handing it over. Almost nobody responded. It was already day 5. No rescue had appeared. Food stores inside most apartments were visibly shrinking. People were becoming nervous. I closed the group chat. Her son was basically ruined. If she did not find somewhere to vent her rage, she would probably explode. "Butler," I said. Before I could finish, the AI interrupted. "Master, the woman from the apartment across the hall is knocking." The security display opened automatically. Li Ru stood outside, wrapped in a thick down coat. Her face was buried halfway inside the collar. She was shaking. Judging by her condition, she had probably been knocking for quite a while. My security door was so well insulated that I had heard nothing. So it's time. In my previous life, it had been around this point that Yu Lin sent her over to ask me for food. Back then, I gave her plenty without hesitation. Her family survived comfortably for quite some time, and soon afterward, news that I possessed a large food reserve spread. That information eventually drew Shu Ruyan and the murderous neighbors to my home. "Li Ru, time to repay that debt." Her soft voice came through the intercom. Luo Tian, can you let me inside first? It's freezing out here. Even with the hallway windows closed, cold air slipped through the building like knives. If she stayed there much longer, she could genuinely suffer frostbite. You can come in, I said, but I have one condition. I opened the small secure transfer hatch and passed an electronic wristband through. If you want inside, put this on first. Even for Li Ru, I would not simply unlock the door. Who knew whether someone desperate for food might hide a knife under a coat? I had already died once because I trusted the wrong person inside my own home. I would never repeat that mistake. The AI monitored the wearable 24 hours a day. If the wearer attacked me, the restraint could instantly neutralize them. Only then would I feel safe. I was willing to consider Li Ru because I knew her well and did not see her as a serious threat. Almost anyone else would never be given the chance. Li Ru looked at the futuristic bracelet uncertainly. Wearing a wristband did not sound unreasonable. Yet, something about it felt strange. Why did my need for reassurance require something locked onto her body? Another gust of freezing air swept through the hallway. That ended the debate. She quickly fastened it around her wrist. Click. The band locked itself in place. Butler immediately confirmed the connection on the living room display. Without my authorization, she could not remove it herself. The device included location tracking, audio monitoring, video functions, and biometric monitoring. It could receive power wirelessly through walls from almost 200 meters away. From that moment on, Butler could monitor every second of its wearer's behavior. A brief pulse of electricity made Li Ru flinch. The system had run a quick hardware check. Once everything was ready, I removed the heavy alloy crossbar. Then came the 3 locks: facial recognition, fingerprint verification, password. The huge door slowly opened. My fortress welcomed its first guest. Come in. Li Ru stared past me. Her eyes widened. Warm air rolled into the corridor. Inside, the apartment was bright, luxurious, and comfortable. A fireplace burned in the wall. On the table sat golden roasted lamb chops still shining with butter, a colorful vegetable salad, an old bottle of wine. The smell alone reached the doorway. Compared with the freezing apartments around us, this place looked like heaven. Li Ru had only one thought: if I could live here. She started forward. I raised a hand. Wait. Panic immediately appeared in her eyes. Had I changed my mind? Another blast of cold air rushed over me. Damn. I stepped backward into the warm room. Staying inside the safe house had almost made me forget how terrifying the outside temperature had become. One more thing, I said. Before you come fully inside, I need to make sure you aren't hiding a weapon. Li Ru nodded quickly. Fine, I agree. After the security scan confirmed she carried nothing dangerous, I let her enter. Then I shut and relocked the fortress door. 3 layers. Crossbar. Done. Li Ru stood motionless in the living room. For her, it felt as if she had stepped out of an icy hell into spring. So warm. She almost looked dizzy with relief. The house was so comfortable she actually began feeling hot beneath her heavy coat. Good. No weapons. In reality, the frame around the entrance had already scanned her the instant she crossed the threshold. There was virtually no chance she could bring a blade inside unnoticed. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. Tell me why you came, I said. I returned to the sofa, picked up my knife and fork, and continued eating the steaming lamb as though nothing unusual had happened. Li Ru bit her lip. I wanted to borrow some food. Food. I chewed slowly. You know what the world is like outside. I don't need to explain how valuable food has become. I know. I can pay, she said quickly. I won't take it for free. I laughed. She still assumed the blizzard would eventually pass and money would regain meaning. You see this shelter? I swirled the wine in my glass. Do you know how much the renovation cost? She shook her head. Almost 300 million yuan. Her eyes widened. Do you really think money is what I need? Li Ru fell silent. If not money, what could she possibly offer? The next hour changed the nature of our relationship. The next hour quietly changed the nature of our relationship. Neither of us needed to put the arrangement into words. Afterward, the living room became quiet again, except for the crackle of the fireplace. Li Ru rested exhausted on the sofa. I stood by the enormous window watching snow whip past outside. Compared with my previous life, this was almost absurdly comfortable. Last time, I had spent the apocalypse shivering in a freezing apartment, surviving on cold biscuits and water. In the end, I was murdered and my body was not even left intact. Now, a warm fireplace, endless food, a fortified home. I had already told Li Ru about the severity of the apocalypse and the supplies I had stored. Living together would make hiding the truth difficult anyway. And with Butler and the security restraint watching her, I did not fear betrayal. If I died, my spatial storage disappeared with me. That alone made harming me irrational. I'm hungry, Li Ru said softly. Of course she was. She had barely eaten for days. I almost laughed at myself. Right, I forgot you came here for food. I was about to pull out a fresh meal when she shook her head. No, I'll eat what you didn't finish. She carefully sat at the table, brought her legs together, and picked up the knife and fork. Even starving, she ate the leftover lamb slowly and neatly. I watched with interest. Her manners were almost absurdly elegant, considering how desperate she had been when she arrived. Then my phone buzzed. The neighborhood groups were exploding. My apartment lost power. Mine too. The kitchen tap stopped working. What's happening? It's freezing and now we have no electricity. My heater is dead. The city had reached the next stage. I checked the time. I had been so distracted that I almost forgot. On the afternoon of day 5 in my previous life, the local power grid collapsed. Without electricity, pumping stations soon stopped working too. Water disappeared from apartment buildings. At the beginning of the snow disaster, authorities had desperately tried to maintain infrastructure. But each day made the situation worse. Maintenance crews could not safely travel. Power stations failed in the extreme cold. Fuel deliveries stopped. Grid components froze. One facility after another shut down. Perhaps a few nuclear plants could continue operating. But whatever power remained would naturally be prioritized for government departments and critical infrastructure. Ordinary residents were out of luck. No power? Li Ru murmured while chewing. She had seen the messages. Worry crossed her face. Without electricity or food, people in this temperature would freeze and starve on a massive scale. Then she looked around my warm living room. The armored walls, the fireplace, the lights, the man beside her with endless storage and enormous reserves. The worry in her eyes eased. For the first time in days, she seemed genuinely convinced she had made the correct choice. The neighborhood group grew more agitated. People began questioning Auntie Wang. Didn't you say this snow disaster would pass quickly? Because of you, some of us didn't go buy extra food. You told us this morning to trust the rescue effort. Now we've lost water and electricity too. When is help coming? Privately, Auntie Wang was terrified. As a neighborhood committee member, she had access to more internal messages than ordinary residents. Not long before, the committee's own group chat had exploded with alarming information. The disaster was not limited to Qinshui City. The entire country was suffering. The entire world was suffering. Some internal reports were describing the event as a potential civilization-ending catastrophe comparable to prehistoric mass extinction events. The apocalypse from novels and movies might actually have become reality. If people wanted to survive, they needed food and energy immediately. Auntie Wang sat stunned. What happened, Mom? Yunana asked. Instead of answering in the living room, Auntie Wang pulled her into Wang Fu's bedroom. She told both of them what she had learned. Then she ordered them to cooperate. They would use her neighborhood committee status to go door to door, collect supplies for redistribution, and keep as much as possible for themselves. Isn't that illegal? Yunana asked nervously. Illegal. People are dying. Who cares about that now? Auntie Wang glared at her. If we don't collect more food, what we have won't last. Wang Fu needed even more protein and calories because of his injury. I support Mom, he said bitterly. Before the idiots realize what's happening, we take whatever we can. Why should he care if the other residents lived or died? If possible, he would have loved to take everything I owned. Soon Auntie Wang posted in the group again. At everyone, please remain calm. The power and water outages are temporary. Repair teams are already working. The authorities have issued new instructions requiring neighborhood committees to organize residents during this special period. All supplies should be collected for centralized distribution. Please cooperate with the committee. Anyone who obstructs official emergency work will be dealt with by the police after order is restored. I ignored her. Instead, I walked into the utility room. A high-output silent generator had already been installed. I activated it and connected it to the large fuel tank beside it. I had more than enough gasoline. The generator was built by a major industrial manufacturer and highly efficient. Even this local fuel supply alone should keep it running for a month. Luo Tian, Li Ru looked at me with open admiration. You prepared all of this in advance. Did you already know the disaster was coming? Think about it. A near 300 million yuan fortress. An impossible storage ability. Mountains of supplies purchased before anyone else panicked. The answer was obvious. Of course. Then, she hesitated. When I asked you earlier, why didn't you warn me? I looked at her as if she had asked whether the sun was hot. If you had stockpiled everything yourself, would you be here asking me for help now? Li Ru lowered her head. Still, compared with starving and freezing next door, she was more than satisfied with her current situation. Back in the living room, I opened the resident chat again. Some people were clearly unhappy with Auntie Wang's demand to surrender their food, but the situation remained uncertain, and she kept invoking official orders. Most residents were ordinary people. They feared being labeled disobedient or getting into legal trouble once the crisis ended, so almost nobody openly opposed her. I did not bother exposing the lie. In my previous life, Auntie Wang had used exactly the same trick. Threats, deception, moral pressure. She extracted food from many households. Some residents who already had almost nothing handed over their final supplies and later starved. She indirectly caused plenty of deaths. But what did that have to do with me? Most of these neighbors had treated me no better than she had. I had no obligation to save them. Li Ru curled up on the sofa, looking thoughtful. If there's no electricity and no water, how are everyone else going to survive? I already knew the answer. Poorly. Li Ru hesitated, then asked, if it's this cold outside, how can the authorities still generate electricity? Nuclear power. I crossed one leg over the other. Once most ordinary power infrastructure failed, the few large nuclear plants that could still operate became the only reliable large-scale source. But there were nowhere near enough of them to supply the whole country continuously. Without electricity, residents could not even melt snow for drinking water. So, in my previous life, the authorities eventually adopted a ration system. Half an hour of electricity in the morning. Half an hour at night. Not much, but enough to boil a couple of kettles and charge a phone. Knock, knock, knock. Outside my security door, Yu Lin stood wrapped in layers of clothing. He frowned at the reinforced entrance. When the hell did he replace this door? This thing's ridiculously thick. He waited in the freezing hallway for a long time. Nobody opened. His nose began running from the cold. That bastard Luo Tian is actually ignoring me. Anger replaced discomfort. Yu Lin grabbed a stool and started smashing it against the door. It was completely useless. This was a door that could withstand explosive force. A wooden stool accomplished nothing. I watched him from the surveillance feed. Pathetic. Li Ru glanced once at the monitor, bit her lip, and looked away. Whatever affection she still had for him was disappearing fast. I had seen enough of his future already. Do you know that in at most 2 months, he would have sold you for 3 packs of instant noodles? I did not care whether she believed me. Li Ru remained quiet for several seconds, then she gave a cold laugh. So that's all I was worth to him. 3 packs of noodles. Maybe leaving him now was the smartest decision she had ever made. Butler interrupted us. Master, Yu Lin left his home at 8:15. At 8:17 he entered apartment 1802. He remained inside for 15 minutes before leaving. 2 surveillance clips appeared on the screen. I had specifically told Butler to watch him. In my previous life, when the neighbors broke into my apartment and killed me, Yu Lin had been among them. And if I remembered correctly, Li Ru had been sold to the man living in apartment 1802. History really did love repeating itself. I took a sip of tea and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window. Li Ru had changed into white sleepwear. She looked at the screen curiously. What would Yu Lin be doing on the 18th floor? What else? Looking for someone with enough muscle to take revenge for him. I was not surprised at all. The only difference was that my interference had moved the timeline forward. Li Ru frowned. The man in 1802 isn't easy to deal with. She knew who lived there. Deng Tu. A real estate boss with more than a dozen violent enforcers under him. People in the complex whispered that some of his men had handled serious crimes for him. Nobody liked crossing paths with him. Even residents who saw him in the hallway usually lowered their heads and stepped aside. If Yu Lin went to him now, what if Deng Tu comes after us? Let him. I barely reacted. With this fortress, Deng Tu could exhaust every method he knew, and still fail to get through. If he wanted to test me, Wang Fu's condition would serve as a preview. No matter how notorious a gangster was, he was not immune to crossbow bolts and bullets. The next morning, my phone showed a new private message. So soon. The sender was Deng Tu. Luo Tian, I hear you think you're pretty tough. You stole another man's wife? You have 10 minutes to send her back and hand over half your food. Do that, and I'll pretend none of this happened. If you play tricks, I'll kill you. Don't think a reinforced door makes you untouchable. Classic gangster intimidation. Deng Tu was used to people submitting before he had to do anything. The man had lived for years without meaningful consequences. An ordinary resident receiving that message might have started apologizing immediately. I typed back without hesitation. Who the hell do you think you are? In my eyes, you're nothing but a piece of criminal trash. Stop barking. I sent the message. What real estate mogul? What underworld boss? None of it mattered. If he came to my door, I had more than enough ways to make him regret it. The sheer freedom of answering trash with trash felt wonderful. Deng Tu clearly could not believe anyone had dared speak to him that way. The last man who insulted him like that probably had not died peacefully. Luo Tian, you bastard, you're tired of living. Wait for me. Now he genuinely wanted to kill me. Originally, he probably planned to take Li Ru, steal my food, and beat me badly enough to make an example. My response turned it personal. Outside, roads were buried. Police and civil institutions were barely functioning. If he murdered someone now, he probably believed nobody would investigate. Snow made an excellent grave. I insulted him one more time, then blocked him. Few things were more infuriating than being cursed out and then losing the ability to reply. I leaned back, imagining him raging at his phone. Butler, show me floor 18. The surveillance system switched views. Sure enough, apartment 1802 opened soon after. Deng Tu emerged in a thick coat carrying a heavy hammer. The instant he entered the hallway, he visibly stiffened. Even with the coat, the cold stabbed straight through him. He hurried toward the elevator. Apparently he believed he could simply smash my door open. He was about to be disappointed. Then he pressed the elevator button. Nothing. Damn it. No power. In frustration, he hammered the elevator door hard enough to dent it. Public property clearly meant nothing to him. Fortunately, emergency lights still worked in the stairwell, so he began climbing. 5 floors was not normally much, but in temperatures dozens of degrees below zero, even a short climb became exhausting. By the time he reached floor 23, he had burned through most of his strength, so Yu Lin got dragged out of his apartment to do the work. Yu Lin gripped the hammer with resentment. He swung at my security door as though he were striking me personally. Clang. The rebound numbed his arms. The door did not even show a scratch. Are you a woman? Deng Tu cursed. Hit it harder. I haven't eaten all day, brother too. I've got no strength. Yu Lin forced out 2 more swings. The hammer nearly slipped and hit Deng Tu instead. Useless. Deng Tu slapped the back of his head and took the hammer. Then he used everything he had. Boom. The door did not care. The shock almost split the skin between his thumb and index finger. He stared at the entrance in disbelief. What the hell is this? A bank vault door? Anger replaced confusion. Luo Tian. Stop hiding like a turtle. Come out and I'll kill you. Yu Lin joined in. You stole my wife. Open the damn door. Neither man noticed the tiny firing slit high above them. I stood on a stool behind it with my crossbow already loaded. Where should I hit him? Head? Too quick. I preferred consistency. Why treat one arrogant thug differently from another? I shifted the crosshair lower. Not lethal. Painful. The bolt flew. Deng Tu's scream shook the hallway. Human flesh offered almost no resistance. The bolt punched cleanly through his thigh. Yu Lin saw what happened and reacted instantly. He dropped everything and sprinted back into his own apartment. He did not even help Deng Tu. In this temperature, without antibiotics or proper medical care, an open wound could easily become fatal. Deng Tu finally understood that Yu Lin had seriously misrepresented me. This was not some harmless young neighbor. Still, Deng Tu had more grit than Wang Fu. He abandoned the hammer, gritted his teeth, and dragged himself toward the stairwell. No elevator, dozens of degrees below zero, blood pouring down one leg. By the time he reached his apartment, his pants were soaked red, and parts of the blood had frozen into crusted ice. The cold dulled his pain, but that was hardly good news. He knew that without treatment, he might lose the leg before morning. An infection could kill him. Fortunately for him, being a real estate boss with criminal connections came with resources. He had loyal men living nearby. He also maintained a private doctor for injuries that were better kept away from hospitals. He opened his group chat. Everybody grab your gear and get over here now. Doctor, bring surgical tools. Move. My leg is going to be ruined. Across the snowy night, more than a dozen of Deng Tu's men pushed through the deep snow toward our building. The group chat lit up almost immediately. Residents who had watched Wang Fu fail were suddenly convinced that numbers would make the difference this time. Wang Fu celebrated from bed. Auntie Wang announced that I was finally finished. Xu Ruian watched nervously not because she cared whether I lived, but because she still imagined my food would somehow become hers. On the 20th floor, a nationally famous actress and singer named Baya saw my name flood the chat again. She had only recently bought an apartment in the complex and barely knew the neighbors, but even she had learned one thing. People kept going after Luo Tian, and Luo Tian kept surviving. Meanwhile, Deng Tu's private doctor removed the bolt from his leg. The wound had already turned dark from the cold, and the procedure nearly made him pass out. The moment it was finished, Deng Tu ordered his men upstairs with hammers, blades, makeshift shields, and instructions to break through my door. His doctor offered one useful piece of advice: watch the firing port. Deng Tu added the motivation that mattered more to his crew once the door fell. My food, supplies, and everything else inside would belong to them. When butlers showed me more than a dozen armed men climbing toward the top floor, I smiled and pulled out something I had never expected to use as a weapon. A high-pressure water gun. In summer, it would have been a toy. At nearly minus 70 degrees, it was terrifying. The moment the group entered range, I fired through the protected opening. Water swept across the corridor and soaked coats, trousers, gloves, and shoes. Within seconds, the attackers' clothing began stiffening in the cold. Faces turned purple. Men screamed and scrambled backward. The mob broke without ever touching my door. With the elevator dead, they had to flee down the stairs, while wet fabric froze around their bodies. By the time they stumbled back to Deng Tu, they were fighting over blankets and dry clothing instead of talking about revenge. Deng Tu's face darkened. More than a dozen armed men had failed against a man who had barely needed to leave his living room. He ordered everyone to watch for the day I finally came outside. In his mind, my food and water would eventually run out. That assumption was almost funny. Back in my apartment, Li Ru looked at me with open admiration. Enough staring. Go shower. Her face turned red. That night, the distance between Li Ru and me disappeared a little further. The next day, around noon, I woke in an excellent mood. A new message appeared in the neighborhood chat. At everyone, the neighborhood committee has received the latest official notice. The snow disaster will continue for some time. To help residents who have exhausted their supplies, the authorities require us to collect food from every household and redistribute it equally. Auntie Wang had escalated from moral pressure to outright deception. I laughed. Her scam was not sophisticated, but circumstances made people vulnerable. Residents had already been trapped for nearly a week. Fear made gullible people even easier to manipulate. Some immediately argued. Others supported her. Soon, the chat split into two factions. Li Ru read the messages. She's lying, right? Because I had already explained much of the situation to her, she spotted the holes immediately. Why would the government authorize a minor neighborhood committee member to confiscate and redistribute every resident's private food supply? I sneered. She's barely even part of the official bureaucracy, yet she acts like a minister. This was why people said good. People died young while shameless people could survive forever. Auntie Wang had used the same method in my previous life. I originally only intended to watch. Then she privately messaged me. Residents with little food had begun winning the group argument. They were furious at households with supplies. Under social pressure, several food-rich residents agreed to surrender some. Auntie Wang grew confident. Then she remembered how much food I had bought before the storm. Luo Tian, she wrote, you've seen the group. The residents are angry at people like you who hoard food while everyone else suffers. I'm representing the collective opinion now. If you know what's good for you, hand over some of the supplies you bought from the supermarket. Otherwise, I only need to say a few words in the group. Everyone will turn against you. She believed public criticism would frighten me. I laughed. What they think has nothing to do with me. Even if the Jade Emperor himself comes down, nobody is taking a single pack of noodles from me. She became furious. You're too arrogant. So what? I replied. If you want my food, come get it yourself. Her hands probably shook while reading. She started typing a long public message attacking me. Before she sent it, I added another line. Auntie Wang, you think I don't know what you're doing? You're using the name of the authorities to scare residents into handing over food so you can keep it for yourself. Her face went pale. Cold sweat covered her body despite the freezing apartment. That information had only circulated internally within the neighborhood committee. How did I know? She would never guess the real answer. I remembered because I had already lived through it. In my previous life, I had surrendered part of my supplies because I was soft-hearted and believed the snow would not last. The greedy neighbors were not satisfied. Instead, they concluded I must be hiding even more. Eventually, they joined together and killed me. This time, I knew exactly how Auntie Wang operated, and I had no intention of saving anyone from being deceived. The neighbors and Auntie Wang were all people I hated. Let them tear each other apart. Auntie Wang deleted the message she had been preparing. If people began suspecting that her official collection was fake, her plan would collapse. So she swallowed her anger. Food mattered more than insulting me. She returned to the group and pretended to thank the residents who were willing to contribute. She promised that after the disaster, the authorities would award them banners and bonuses. The tone of the chat shifted from arguing to praising selfless contributors. I laughed. There really were not many clever people in this building. I could already imagine what would happen. Auntie Wang would spend the next few days going door to door, threatening frightened residents into handing over food. Then once people discovered the truth, every kilogram she took would come back to haunt her. 2 more days passed. Her strategy worked surprisingly well at first. She spread false official notices in the public group while privately pressuring households one by one. A number of frightened residents surrendered food. Some were cautious enough to hide part of their stock. Others simply refused to open the door. Even so, Auntie Wang accumulated a substantial pile. Through the hallway cameras, I watched everything. One small incident caught my attention. Bai Ya, the national celebrity on the 20th floor, actually opened her door and voluntarily gave away food. She even sweetly thanked Auntie Wang for working so hard and asked her to keep Bai Ya's identity private. Auntie Wang was stunned to discover that a famous celebrity lived in the building, but she showed no restraint. She took Bai Ya's supplies too. Even worse, the hallway microphones picked up Wang Fu and his mother discussing Bai Ya afterward. A superstar. Someone ordinary people might never meet in a lifetime. But the apocalypse had leveled society. Wang Fu no longer had the same physical confidence after his injury, yet his greed had not disappeared. He and his mother started thinking about ways to trick Bai Ya into their apartment and exploit her. Pretty but naive, I muttered. She had probably been protected by agents and assistants her entire adult life. She had no understanding of how ugly people could become when law and food disappeared. Playing Saint in the apocalypse rarely ended well. I went back to my own routine. Games, movies, food from different countries, occasional private time with Li Ru. My life was almost embarrassingly comfortable. A full week had passed since the extreme cold apocalypse began. Most ordinary households only stored enough food for about a week, and in temperatures this low, food was not the only resource being consumed. Fuel was equally important. People had to burn something to stay warm. Supplies vanished much faster than in normal life. After another few days, the atmosphere in the neighborhood group changed. People had been trapped for nearly 2 weeks. The rescue they expected still had not arrived. Food was disappearing. Fear was replacing patience, and the supplies many residents had surrendered to Auntie Wang were gone. The group filled with profanity. Most of it targeted Auntie Wang, her relatives, and her ancestors. Unfortunately, somebody with her level of shamelessness could not be bullied into returning supplies by insults. Xu Ruyan was privately relieved. She had ignored Auntie Wang and kept her own food, but even her supplies were almost gone now. She had survived mainly on snack gift boxes from old admirers. Now the coffee table held only an empty package of cheap biscuits and a few crumbs. In the past, she would never have touched food that low quality. Now she had licked every crumb from the plastic. She nearly considered chewing the wrapper. Outside, the world was completely buried in snow. Electricity and water had failed. The snowfall continued. No rescue vehicles appeared. Every sign pointed toward one terrifying conclusion. The storm might never end. Su Ruyan's stomach growled again. I'm so hungry. She clutched the blanket. If this keeps going, I'm actually going to starve. Then a thought she hated surfaced. Do I really have to lower myself to Luo Tian? She hated the idea. For years, she had trained me to be the one who chased her. She was the goddess. I was supposed to come begging for attention. If she contacted me now, did that not destroy all the work she had done freezing me out? Then hunger won. I'm the goddess. A goddess shouldn't starve. If I act sweet to him a little, he'll give me plenty of food. I can restore the distance later. She opened the chat and recorded a voice message. Brother Luo Tian, it's been so long. I miss you. Why haven't you come looking for me? The sugary tone was almost impressive. Li Ru, sitting beside me with a tray of fresh fruit, glanced over. Who is that woman? Just a green tea manipulator. I did not care. I knew exactly why Xu Ruyan was suddenly contacting me. I had nothing else to do, so I decided to entertain myself. I've been busy these past few days. Busy with what? She immediately asked in another sweet voice message. Nothing important, just tasting food from different countries. I wanted to compare which cuisine was best, but I ate so much I can't fit anything else. I sent the message slowly. Xu Ruyan stared at it. International food? Too full to keep eating? She did not believe a word. Brother Luo Tian, stop teasing me. You're probably eating canned meat and instant noodles, right? I want some too. Even a plain cup of noodles had become a luxury to her. I smiled. Still doesn't believe me? I opened the camera. On my table sat caviar, lasagna, roast duck, and a platter of fresh fruit. I took a photo, then sent it. Xu Ruyan stared at the photo on her phone. Her eyes widened. Impossible. She shook her head hard. How could Luo Tian have that much food? She knew I had stocked up before the snow, but most of what she had seen me buy from the supermarket was packaged food and snacks. Where had the luxury dishes come from? Fake. It has to be an old photo he saved from the internet. She zoomed in. Then her breathing changed. Behind the table was a refrigerator. Every shelf inside was packed with food and drinks. A whole shelf was filled with expensive imported ham. On the kitchen, cabinets were bottles of premium cognac, wine, and liquor from famous brands, displayed almost like they were worthless. Another picture showed the huge fireplace in my living room, flames burning brightly. The enormous television behind it was playing a movie. Xu Ruyan sucked in a breath. What kind of divine life was I living? Food from around the world, heating, electricity, fresh fruit, entertainment. I need to get in there. Her jealousy finally overpowered pride. I have to live there. While she froze every day inside a house stripped of furniture for firewood, I had uninterrupted warmth. The small amount of wood she could burn gave only temporary relief. The moment the flames died, the cold returned. The comfort she considered an impossible luxury was something I had 24 hours a day. Just imagining the twisted envy on her face made me feel excellent. Jealous? Good. There was nothing she could do but stare through a screen. That was why I sent the photo. I added another message. Are you dieting? Haven't seen you for more than a week and you've gotten noticeably thinner. I admire your discipline. Unlike me, I keep eating abalone and seafood every day and barely exercise. Her cheeks had become thin and yellow from hunger. I pretended not to know why. For Xu Ruyan, that message was pure provocation. She finally lost patience and called me on video. Brother Luo Tian, she said sweetly, I'm hungry too. I'll give you one chance to invite me over for dinner. You better treasure it. Her tone became even more suggestive. And after dinner, we can do a little exercise together. I almost laughed. Now she wanted to come? Where was this opportunity before the apocalypse? Why had she only become generous after snow buried the roads and food disappeared? I briefly considered inviting her over, locking a security restraint on her, and making her suffer for everything she had done in my previous life. After all, I had chased her for years. Some small part of the old me might have found it satisfying to finally obtain the thing I once wanted. Then I rejected the idea. Too much risk, too much disgust. I had Li Ru beside me now. In appearance and temperament, Li Ru was far superior. Xu Ruyan without makeup looked tired and ordinary. I had no interest. No. Xu Ruyan froze. I'm offering myself and you're refusing? Luo Tian, are you serious? Then she immediately tried to reinterpret it. You're angry with me, aren't you? I ignored you too long. You must have been lonely. I'll pay more attention to you from now on, okay? This was apparently the first time she had experienced rejection. Her smooth performance began falling apart. Angry at you? I said. Why would I waste emotion on you? Then, I pulled Li Ru into frame. She was wearing a modest dress. When she fell lightly against my shoulder, she did not resist. Instead, she glanced into the camera with a faintly provocative look. I'm not lonely, I said. I have company. I angled the camera so Xu Ruyan could see Li Ru clearly. There, see? I already have a beautiful woman here. So take your drama somewhere else. Xu Ruyan's expression changed instantly. Luo Tian, who is she? How can you let another woman into your home? I don't want another woman there. Tell her to leave right now. She spoke as if she owned my apartment. That annoyed me. Who I let into my home has nothing to do with you. She stared at the screen. I had cursed at her. Me. The man she believed was her obedient simp. In the past, no matter how unreasonable she acted, I would smile, apologize, buy gifts, take her out to eat, and try to make her happy. I barely dared raise my voice. Now I did not care how she felt. To her, the change was almost incomprehensible. Her eyes narrowed. So that's it. That woman stole him from me. For someone like Xu Ruyan, losing a simp to another woman was a direct attack on her sense of superiority. It meant another woman had more charm, and in this case, the comparison was not favorable to her. Li Ru's appearance was better. Her figure was better. Even without makeup, she looked striking. Luo Tian, Xu Ruyan said, forcing tears into her eyes, don't let that woman fool you. The woman you truly love is me, isn't she? Physical attraction is temporary. A connection between souls lasts forever. She could summon tears on demand. For a professional manipulator, acting was a basic skill. I looked genuinely confused. Xu Ruyan, you don't seriously think I loved you, do you? Her face froze. I think you misunderstood. Buying you gifts and taking you to dinner wasn't something I only did for you. I was casting a wide net. You were one candidate among several. No, she shook her head. I don't believe you. You're deliberately saying this to hurt me. For years, she had believed I was permanently under her control. Now I was telling her she had merely been one option. The blow to her ego was severe. Believe whatever you want, I continued calmly. You don't think I know what people say about you in rich kid circles? Spend enough money and anyone can take you to a hotel for the night. You pretend to be innocent, but everyone knows the truth. I cut off the call before she could respond. The insult struck exactly where her confidence was weakest. For all her manipulation, Xu Ruyan genuinely considered herself a good girl. In her mind, men chose to spend money on her, so she had done nothing wrong. My words ripped through that self-image. Several 60-second voice messages immediately arrived. I did not bother opening them. I already knew they were not compliments. That was easy. I tossed the phone aside. Insulting someone who had tormented me for years felt far better than I expected. Then I looked at Li Ru. You played along well, what reward do you want? She leaned toward my ear and whispered something. Elsewhere, Xu Ruyan was almost vibrating with rage. Luo Tian, you damn simp, how dare you talk to me like that? She threw a vase across the room. After venting for a while, she tried to force herself to calm down. Then my words replayed in her mind. Cheap. Used. Fake innocence. Her anger exploded again. There were many insults a vain woman could tolerate. Being told that her carefully protected image was a lie was not one of them. Eventually, the freezing room forced her to stop smashing things. She wrapped herself in a blanket again, shivering. Then revenge entered her mind. She remembered the woman beside me, Li Ru, my married neighbor. Now there was an angle. If she posted proof in the neighborhood group, everyone would attack us for an affair. Scandal had always been irresistible to crowds. Xu Ruyan smiled coldly. Luo Tian, you didn't expect me to take screenshots, did you? She wrote a long accusation claiming that Li Ru and I were shamelessly having an affair. Then she attached a screenshot from the video call. Li Ru was leaning against me. Part of her leg was visible. She sent it to the building group. The reaction was immediate. Isn't that Li Ru? Yu Lin's wife on floor 23. She really got together with Luo Tian. I knew she was that kind of woman. Luo Tian is unbelievable. The residents jumped onto the scandal. Soon, Yu Lin was tagged repeatedly. Under pressure, he appeared and lied immediately. Luo Tian imprisoned my wife. He has lots of food. He promised to share some with our family, but once she went inside, he refused to let her leave. That pushed everything further out of control. Most people no longer cared what was true. They were hungry, cold, trapped, fighting with family members. Under that kind of pressure, attacking strangers online became an easy outlet. Condemning others gave them a brief sense of moral superiority. Luo Tian looked so ordinary. Who knew he was capable of something this disgusting? Kidnapping someone is illegal. When the snow ends, I'm calling the police. Poor Li Ru. Who knows what he's done to her? Other comments were simply vulgar. The group became a wall of abuse. Xu Ruyan sat behind her screen laughing. That's what you get for insulting me. You wanted to ruin my reputation? Now yours is ruined. As the accusations grew more absurd, some people claimed I had physically abducted Li Ru. Sitting comfortably inside my warm living room, Li Ru saw the messages too. She tried to defend me. She said she was fine. She was not being abused. She had food. The apartment was warm. That only made the crowd turn on her too. They called her filthy names. For someone unused to mass online harassment, it hit hard. Li Ru eventually started crying. Even during normal times, online mob attacks had driven people to self-harm. Now, with society collapsing and restraint disappearing, the cruelty was worse. Once Li Ru stopped replying, the crowd became even more confident. Some men made increasingly degrading comments because humiliating a beautiful married woman they could never have an ordinary life gave them a sick sense of satisfaction. Civilized standards were vanishing. They cursed for a long time. I did not respond. Eventually, they assumed I was afraid. That emboldened them. Deng Tu wasn't that impressive after all. If all of us unite, even he can't threaten the building. The crowd's courage grew in the safety of numbers. Inside my apartment, I held Li Ru's tear-streaked face between my hands. Really? A few insults and you're crying? If it hurts, stop reading. They don't know anything, she whispered angrily. And they're saying such horrible things. Her face looked like a crying kitten. What those people did not know was that without my intervention, Li Ru's original fate was suicide after her husband sold her. Butler, I said calmly, is everything ready? Ready, master. The information can be transmitted at any time. Good. Time to answer. I had not remained silent because I was intimidated. I had been working with Butler. If I attacked, I preferred overwhelming force. A flood of new files appeared in the neighborhood chat. Private photos, secret videos, evidence of affairs. Embarrassing messages. Several of the people who had cursed us most aggressively suddenly found their own hidden scandals exposed. The file names hardly mattered. Butler had extracted enough compromising evidence from poorly secured devices throughout the building to turn the entire chat upside down. The AI was powerful enough to breach poorly secured home networks, routers, and phones connected throughout the complex. And because the entire building sat under my surveillance coverage, I already knew who had been doing what in secret. Being trapped by the snow had apparently pushed some residents into bizarre behavior. Unfortunately for them, the loudest moral crusaders happened to have some of the messiest private lives. One exposed affair caused an immediate explosion inside a family. Another set of private photos revealed two male residents who had been secretly intimate despite publicly presenting very different lives. Another clip exposed partner swapping between households. The group chat transformed in seconds. Wait, that's you? You were screaming about morality 5 minutes ago. Damn, this building is insane. One husband saw evidence that his wife had been sleeping with a much younger man. Rage erupted inside their apartment. Other households descended into screaming arguments. Some residents who had stayed silent during the earlier harassment now became enthusiastic spectators. Ha ha ha. So that's why you people were acting like saints. You were hiding worse things yourselves. Unbelievable. The mob moved on to new targets instantly. That was the funny thing about crowds. They rarely cared about truth. They cared about entertainment. Eventually, the excitement faded. No matter how juicy the scandal, once people put down their phones, they still faced freezing rooms and empty kitchens. The snow did not care about gossip. Xu Ruyan, however, was furious. She had expected to watch me get publicly destroyed. Instead, the crowd had been distracted by bigger scandals. How did he get those videos? The thought frightened her, especially because she had previously considered approaching some of the men now exposed. Her revenge had failed. On the 18th floor, Deng Tu watched the chaos too. One of his men grinned at a leaked video. Brother Tu, Luo Tian's got some skill. He shut those people up fast. Deng Tu slapped him. So what? He's capable, fine. But he offended me. That means he doesn't have long to live. On the 20th floor, Bai Ye watched the group from beneath her blankets. Her eyes shone. This Luo Tian is kind of impressive. To a 20-something woman alone during an apocalypse, a man who remained completely calm under pressure naturally looked powerful. She had been isolated for over a week. Other residents at least had family. She had nobody nearby she trusted. Auntie Wang had already tricked her out of more than half her food. For the first time, a desperate thought entered her mind. I want someone I can rely on. Back in my living room, I put my phone down. You all love judging other people, right? Enjoy judging yourselves. I considered my decision to shelter Li Ru fundamentally different from the behavior of those other residents. Without me, she had been heading toward disaster. Luo Tian, you're amazing, she said, still emotional. A woman in a life-or-death crisis did not necessarily need the sweetest man. She needed someone who could protect her. Sometimes, Li Ru even wondered what her life would have been like if she had met me 10 years earlier. Small matter. I picked up another piece of food. The 5-star hotel chefs really were good. Fresh juice burst from the meat. These were some of the nourishing dishes I had specifically ordered when buying banquet food before the apocalypse. Worth it. Li Ru sat beside me and began eating too. The moment she tasted the food, her eyes brightened. She kept adding portions to my plate. Eat more. You need the nutrition. Judging from the way Li Ru kept piling restorative dishes onto my plate, she had apparently decided my nutrition required special attention. We finished the table quickly. I leaned back, feeling warm and satisfied. The recipes apparently used expensive herbal ingredients, including aged ginseng. Before the apocalypse, dishes like these were some of the hotel's most popular premium items. Cleaning was Li Ru's job, and even that was barely work. She only had to carry the dishes into the kitchen. An expensive, sterilizing dishwasher handled everything else. The water came from the tens of thousands of tons stored inside my space. Time to exercise. I touched my stomach. Life had become too comfortable. Every day was lobster, steak, abalone, and high-calorie meals. If I kept eating like this without training, I would eventually get fat. Food was unlimited. Health was not something I wanted to neglect. Heavy exercise immediately after eating was not ideal, but walking was fine. I pulled 2 premium treadmills from storage and placed them near the balcony. Li Ru came out of the kitchen. We're exercising? Yeah. If you don't move, you're going to turn into a little pig. Her eyes widened. What, have I gained weight? For many women, that question was more frightening than the apocalypse. She stepped onto an electronic scale. Her face changed. Tu Jin. I really gained weight. Without waiting for me, she changed into workout clothes and started the treadmill. I looked at her and laughed. You're panicking over nothing. You look fine. She refused to be comforted. After half an hour, both of us were lightly sweating. If the residents outside knew I was exercising for body maintenance while they were rationing crumbs, they would probably lose their minds. My phone buzzed. A new group message. Floor 17, apartment 1701. Sorry to bother everyone. My family has run out of food. It's only me and my young child. If anyone has extra supplies, I'm willing to buy them. I'll pay more than the normal price. Almost nobody answered. No one knew how long the disaster would last. Finally, the woman posted again. Please, I can go hungry, but my child can't. I remembered her. Xiaolan. Her husband worked overseas. She had been raising their young child alone. She was not a close friend, but she had always greeted me politely. Li Ru read the messages and hesitated. She looked at me several times without speaking. If you have something to say it. She swallowed. Xiaolan is raising a child alone. It must be difficult in this weather. She clearly wanted to help. Motherly sympathy had been triggered by the mention of the child. Before the apocalypse, Xiaolan had been one of the few neighbors Li Ru occasionally chatted with. You want to give her food. I picked up a bottle of water. I already taught you this. I gently raised her chin. Saints die first. In a world where every bite could become survival, morality was becoming expensive. Today you give her food. Tomorrow she may arrive with 10 people and decide your entire shelter belongs to them. Li Ru did not have memories of the darkest period because in the original timeline, she died before society fell that far. I did. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I won't do it again. She understood the principle of not exposing wealth. The child had simply weakened her judgment. Xiaolan continued begging in the group. I'll pay 1,000 times the normal price. Finally, someone replied. Since your situation is so difficult, I can sell you 2 bags of bread. I don't have much either. 6,000 yuan. Before the apocalypse, the bread would have cost a few yuan. After more than a week trapped by snow, its price had increased roughly 1,000-fold. Some residents were shocked. 6,000 for 2 bags of bread. That's robbery. You're exploiting a mother with a child. The seller, Zhou An, immediately defended himself. She offered 1,000 times the price. I didn't force her. Xiao Lan quickly intervened. Yes, it's voluntary. Please don't blame him. She had begged for so long and only one person had offered anything. Even at a ridiculous price, she was relieved. Money could be earned again. Food had to keep her child alive now. Then other sellers appeared. I have a few packs of noodles, 10,000. I have half a box of chocolate, 30,000. Buy mine. I'll give you a 5% discount. Suddenly, everyone had extra food. Apparently, many residents still believed the storm would end soon. If so, selling food at absurd prices was the deal of a lifetime. Some starving residents stared at the chat in disbelief. Funny, everyone said they were out of food. Now there are packs everywhere. I don't even have crumbs. Most could not afford the prices. Many residents had bought apartments with mortgages and had little savings. Then a wealthy resident named Lu Teng appeared. Stop selling to her. I'll buy everything. I'll add 5,000 yuan on top of whatever price you already agreed to. His family ran an export business and was extremely wealthy. The company was supposedly preparing for an American stock listing. The effect was immediate. A 2 yuan packet of instant noodles could suddenly sell for 7,000. 5 packs could equal months of ordinary wages. Brother Lu, I'm selling. Me too. I've got more food. Sorry, Xiaolan. I wanted to help you, but he's paying too much. The same people who had promised her food instantly reversed themselves. Xiaolan panicked. You already agreed to sell to me. Lu Teng, please. My child and I have nothing left. I can't compete with your price. Lu Teng replied casually. My family is out of food too. Don't blame me. Blame yourself for being poor. If anyone else is selling, message me. My offer stands. A few 100,000 yuan meant almost nothing to him. Even in an apocalypse, wealth still carried influence at least temporarily. Xiaolan kept begging. Nobody cared. Nothing was more painful than seeing hope appear and then vanish. Money's using up the last of its usefulness, I said. If cash really mattered, I could sell one tiny fraction of my food stock and become the richest man in the building. The sellers would regret it. Food preserved life. Cash could only be burned for heat. I was drinking tea when a friend request appeared. I wondered who would message me now. Xiaolan, Luo Tian. I really have nowhere else to go. Please help me. I know you stocked a lot before the snow. Could you sell me some? My child really needs food. In desperation, she had finally come to me. Plenty of residents had seen the supermarket trucks delivering supplies before the disaster. If anyone in this building was believed to have food, it was me. I turned Xiaolan down without hesitation. Sorry. I don't have much food to spare, and money doesn't mean anything to me anymore. There was a long silence on her end. She probably understood that I wasn't actually short on food. I simply had no intention of selling any to her. Just when I thought she had given up, several pictures suddenly appeared on my phone. I raised an eyebrow and opened them. Then I nearly spat out my water. I had to admit, I hadn't expected her to try that. Was she seriously trying to seduce me in exchange for food? I looked through the pictures, closed the chat, and shook my head. Xiaolan was decent looking, but nowhere near enough to tempt me. More importantly, I had no intention of turning my shelter into a charity station for every desperate person in the building. Li Ru noticed my expression and asked what had happened. When she learned that Xiaolan had tried to bargain with herself, she couldn't help teasing me about the strange rumor spreading through the building that I supposedly had a special weakness for married women. I rolled my eyes. Do I look like I run a rescue center? Li Ru laughed softly, but she understood what I meant. In this apocalypse, resources were life. If I started giving them away simply because someone cried, begged, or tried to tempt me, then sooner or later the whole building would line up outside my door. Meanwhile, the food auction in the residence group continued. Xiaolan was desperately trying to buy something, but Lu Teng, one of the wealthier residents, kept outbidding her. To people who still believed their bank balances might somehow matter again, hundreds of thousands of yuan still sounded enormous. To me, it was just numbers on a dead financial system. Eventually, one final seller appeared. He offered 3 packs of instant noodles and 5 compressed biscuits. Xiaolan immediately bid 100,000. Lu Teng raised it to 300,000. Then an unfamiliar account suddenly offered 1 million. The entire group went silent. A moment later, someone recognized the account. It was Bai Ya. The famous celebrity had been living in our building all along. Before anyone could recover, Bai Ya raised the bid again. 5 million. No one challenged her after that. She won the food. What happened next surprised me even more. After receiving the food, Bai Ya actually gave half of it to Xiaolan because she felt sorry for the woman and her child. I stared at the chat and couldn't help muttering, what an idiot. Kindness was admirable in normal times. In this world, kindness without caution was a death sentence. And sure enough, Bai Ya's good deed immediately produced consequences. When Xiaolan returned to her floor with the food, she ran into several of Deng Tu's men. The men had been prowling the corridors for supplies, and the moment they saw what she was carrying, their eyes lit up. They took the food from her. Then their attention shifted from the food to Xiaolan herself. Cornered and terrified, Xiaolan did the only thing she could think of to protect herself. She sold out the person who had just helped her. Bai Ya, she blurted out. The celebrity Bai Ya lives in this building. She's in 2001. She's much more valuable than me. The men froze. Then their expressions changed. Bai Ya? That Bai Ya? One of the most famous women in the country. Suddenly, Xiaolan was no longer interesting. They shoved her aside, kept the food, and rushed upstairs. Xiaolan collapsed against the wall, shaking violently. She had survived. But she had survived by betraying the woman who had just fed her. Inside apartment 2001, Bai Ya sat alone and carefully broke apart one of the compressed biscuits she had kept for herself. She had no idea what Xiaolan had done. Then someone pounded on her door. Bai Ya, we know you're in there. Her face went pale. More voices joined in. The men outside laughed and shouted threats, making it clear what would happen if they got inside. Baya backed away from the door. For the first time since the apocalypse began, true despair appeared in her eyes. She even considered ending her own life rather than letting those men take her. But another horrifying thought followed. In a world where law, order, and basic morality had collapsed, even death might not protect her dignity. Meanwhile, the other residents learned what was happening. Within minutes, someone created a ridiculous new chat group called the Baya Goddess Knights. Dozens of men joined. Everyone talked about protecting their goddess. Everyone talked about bravery. Everyone talked about justice. But when someone asked who would actually go upstairs and fight Deng Tu's men, the group suddenly became very quiet. Eventually, they started tagging me. Luo Tian, go save her. You've got weapons. You're the only one who can do it. I almost laughed. Why exactly was Baya my responsibility? I wasn't even one of her fans. I replied with a simple sentence, not interested. The group exploded. People called me heartless, cowardly, selfish. I didn't care. Inside the apartment, Baya's door was already beginning to deform under repeated blows. Desperate, she privately messaged me, Luo Tian, please help me. I'll repay you. I can give you money. I leaned back on the sofa. Why should I care about your gratitude? And what exactly am I supposed to do with money now? There was another long pause. Li Ru, sitting beside me, glanced toward the screen. Are you really going to let them get her? I smiled. Of course not. Baya was useful. She was beautiful, talented, famous, and could make life inside the shelter much more interesting. But if I rescued her too easily, she might still carry the pride of a celebrity who had spent years being admired by millions. People only truly appreciated salvation after they had stared into the abyss, so I waited until she was desperate enough. Then I sent her a message. I can save you, but from now on, you'll obey me. Her answer came almost instantly. Okay, good. Now we could talk. My plan was simple. Lure the tiger away from the mountain. Around that time, a resident named Lu Yuanyu decided this was his chance to become a hero. He wrapped himself in improvised protection, put a metal basin over his head like a helmet, grabbed a makeshift shield, and charged upstairs shouting that he had come to rescue Baya. Deng Tu's men stared at him. For some reason, one of them thought he was me. They immediately swarmed him. Poor Lu Yuanyu didn't even get the chance to explain before being beaten to the floor. The gang decided they would throw him from the 20th floor. That was when I posted a picture in the residents group. It appeared to show me standing on the second floor. I even added a message openly insulting Deng Tu and his men. The gang saw it and went berserk. He's downstairs. Get him. They abandoned Baya's door and charged down the stairs. Of course, the picture was fake. I had Butler generate it using the building's surveillance images. The moment the corridor outside Baya's apartment cleared, I video called her. Run upstairs. Now. She didn't hesitate. Barefoot and wearing thick cat-themed winter pajamas, she ran for the stairwell. Unfortunately, Deng Tu wasn't completely stupid. After racing down several floors and finding no trace of me, he stared at the picture again. Then realization struck. That picture is fake. AI. Go back. His men immediately reversed direction. By then, Baya was already climbing toward the 23rd floor. The distance between her and the pursuers kept shrinking. I watched through the cameras. Take off your coat, I told her. What? Throw it behind you. She trusted me and did it. The thick coat flew backward across the narrow staircase. The first man chasing her stepped on it, lost his footing, and crashed into the men behind him. Several bodies tumbled together in a chaotic pile. That bought her precious seconds. Baya reached the 23rd floor. My security door remained closed. She stared at it in panic. Then a small hatch opened. I dropped an intelligent security bracelet through. Wear it. Her expression froze. What is this? Wear it, or leave. She was clearly offended, but when she heard the gang rushing up the stairs, pride immediately became less important than survival. She put the bracelet on. A second later, the heavy alloy door opened. Baya practically threw herself inside. The door slammed shut behind her. Deng Tu's men arrived moments later. They cursed, threatened me, and demanded that I hand her over. I simply asked through the intercom, "Want another cold shower?" Silence. Apparently, they still remembered the high-pressure water cannon and crossbow incident. Within seconds, the gang retreated. Baya remained on the floor, breathing hard. Only now did she notice the warmth. The fireplace was burning, the air was comfortable. A roast duck sat on the table. Beside it was wine, fresh fruit, pastries. For someone who had spent days freezing and starving, my home looked less like an apartment and more like another world. I glanced at her. Go take a shower. She stared at me. What? You smell. Her face instantly flushed with anger. As a major celebrity, she was used to people complimenting her appearance. No one had ever greeted her rescue by telling her she smelled. But she had just agreed to obey me, so she clenched her teeth and went. Li Ru smiled and showed her to the bathroom. The moment Baya felt truly hot running water against her skin, she nearly cried. After days of cold, even a simple shower felt extravagant. She noticed several unusual household items and some clothing prepared for guests. Her expression became complicated, but she said nothing. When she finally came back out in clean clothes, her eyes moved around the room again. Then she saw the wall of surveillance feeds. More than 100 camera angles covered the building's corridors and public areas. This is illegal, she blurted out. Then she stopped herself. Illegal. Police response had collapsed. Emergency services were gone. People were murdering one another for instant noodles. The word illegal had almost become a joke. I looked at her calmly. I don't support freeloaders here. If you stay, you work. Baya looked toward Li Ru. Li Ru was already helping prepare dinner. That answered the question. The shelter was safe, warm, and filled with food, but I wasn't running a hotel. Everyone had a role. That evening, I took out several giant tomahawk lamb chops from my space, along with bread and other ingredients. Li Ru examined them and smiled. These are incredibly fresh. She suggested roasting the lamb and using the bread with a rich lamb soup. I agreed. She put on her apron and went to work. Bai Ya stood nearby, still processing what she had just seen. The meat had appeared in my hands out of nowhere. Luo Tian, how did you do that? I raised an eyebrow. Wanna know? She nodded. I crooked a finger. Come closer. Curious, she leaned in. Instead of answering, I briefly kissed her. Her eyes widened. My first kiss. Flustered, she immediately fled toward the kitchen. I'll go help Li Ru. Her ears were bright red. I laughed quietly and leaned back on the sofa while the smell of roasting lamb began to fill the shelter. While Li Ru and Bai Ya prepared dinner, I opened the residence group again. The atmosphere in the building had become increasingly unstable. Deng Tu and his remaining men were especially furious after seeing the photos I had posted of roast meat and other luxury food. They had been surviving on instant noodles, bread, preserved eggs, and whatever scraps they could find. Meanwhile, I was casually eating roasted lamb. Jealousy quickly turned into hatred. One of Deng Tu's men suddenly said, "Boss, his door might be impossible to break, but what about the walls?" Deng Tu froze. Then his eyes lit up. Exactly. The security door might be made of some ridiculous alloy, but surely I hadn't reinforced every wall in the apartment. They immediately decided to stop attacking the door and smash through the concrete wall instead. Of course, they were worried about my crossbow. So Deng Tu told his men to ask the residence group for a large steel plate to use as a shield, along with heavier demolition tools. The response was almost comical. Residents who hated me immediately volunteered equipment. Someone had a thick wooden board. Someone else had a steel plate in a storage room. Another offered a heavy sledgehammer. They were practically cheering Deng Tu on. Break into Luo Tian's place. Take the food. Save Bai Ya. The same people who had once feared Deng Tu were now willing to help him simply because they were jealous of what I had. Human nature really was entertaining. Soon, Deng Tu's men came upstairs wearing raincoats and rubber boots to protect themselves from my water cannon. Two of them carried a large steel sheet, while the others dragged heavy hammers behind them. They looked extremely confident. Through the surveillance system, I watched the entire operation. I almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea that during the renovation, I had ordered SHIELD security group to reinforce not only the door, but the walls, ceiling, and floor with military-grade alloy. Several hundred millimeters of reinforced metal surrounded my home. They could hammer until their arms fell off and still never get inside. Bai Ya, however, didn't know that. When she saw the men preparing to attack the wall, she became nervous. The door is strong, but the wall isn't. If they keep smashing it, they'll eventually break through. I took another sip of tea. The walls are reinforced too. She stared at me. All of them. All of them. What kind of person puts military-grade alloy inside every wall of an apartment? The kind who doesn't want to be murdered during the apocalypse. She had no answer to that. Outside, the first hammer fell. Concrete cracked. The men cheered. They kept swinging until the outer layer of the wall broke apart. Then the black alloy beneath it was revealed. Silence. One of the men refused to believe it. This has to be some cheap construction material. He swung the hammer with everything he had. Clang. The hammer bounced back so violently that it nearly flew from his hands. His palms went numb. It's actually steel. Deng Tu refused to accept reality. Try somewhere else. His men spread out. Left wall, right wall, higher, lower. Everywhere they broke away the concrete, they found the same seamless alloy beneath it. Eventually, their rage turned into despair. What kind of lunatic reinforces his entire apartment like a bunker? I laughed from inside. They weren't wrong. After exhausting themselves, several of Deng Tu's men disappeared downstairs. For a while, I wondered if they had finally given up. 2 hours later, they returned carrying an enormous steel column. Baya stared at the screen. What are they doing with that? I smiled. They're making a battering ram. If they couldn't smash the wall, they planned to ram the doorframe with several hundred kilograms of steel. It wasn't the worst idea in the world. Against an ordinary security door, it might have worked. Against mine, not a chance. More importantly, it gave me a perfect opportunity. Deng Tu ordered one group to hold the steel plate in front of them to block possible crossbow bolts. 6 or 7 men grabbed the heavy metal column and began swinging it toward the door. Boom! The impact echoed through the corridor. The door barely moved. Again. Boom! Still nothing. The men became more frantic. One more. They backed up and prepared for another charge. I looked toward the control system. Butler. Yes, master. Electrify the door. Maximum voltage. During the renovation, I had ordered a special defensive circuit installed inside the alloy entrance. Once activated, the outer metal surface could carry an enormous electrical charge. The men outside had just made one additional mistake. They were all gripping the same steel column. An excellent conductor. They charged. The column struck the door. A violent crack of electricity exploded through the corridor. The men holding the ram convulsed instantly, their bodies locked around the metal. Deng Tu and the others stared in horror. Only then did they understand. I had electrified the entire door. After several seconds, I reduced the current. I had no interest in creating an even bigger mess outside my entrance. When the power finally shut off, the metal column crashed to the floor. The men collapsed beside it. One of the survivors crawled over, trembling, and checked them. "Boss, they're dead." Deng Tu looked completely hollow. 7 men, gone in seconds. Through the intercom I spoke calmly. "Take the bodies away. Don't leave garbage outside my door." Deng Tu didn't answer. After a long silence, he ordered the survivors to carry their companions back downstairs. The remaining men looked terrified. They understood something horrifying. If they had been the ones holding the ram, they would be dead instead. Back on the 18th floor, the atmosphere among the gang completely collapsed. One man finally snapped. "This is your fault, Deng Tu." He screamed that Deng Tu had repeatedly promised them women, food, and revenge. Instead, all they had gotten was death. Their friends were gone. There was no roast meat, no safe victory, nothing. Deng Tu punched him. Then, staring at the bodies of their dead companions, he seemed to lose part of his sanity as well. "You want meat?" His eyes turned bloodshot. "Who said there's no meat here?" The room went quiet. 3 days passed. By then, the extreme cold apocalypse had lasted roughly half a month. I saw little movement from Deng Tu's apartment. I didn't need to guess what had happened. One morning, Bai sat at the Steinway piano near the large window and played canon. Outside was a gray world buried beneath endless snow. Inside was warmth, music, and the smell of breakfast. The contrast was absurd. When Bai finished, I applauded. "Not bad." Li Ru smiled as well. In a world filled with death and despair, music had become surprisingly valuable. It reminded us that we were still human. Afterward, Li Ru brought out breakfast toast with butter and jam, eggs, bacon, and Assam tea. Compared with the frozen crackers and stale bread other residents were surviving on, it might as well have been a royal banquet. Li Ru had also been improving her cooking by studying recipes and consulting Butler. She knew I didn't require her to contribute much, but she had her own pride. Bai had music, dancing, and entertainment. Li Ru wanted something she could contribute to. Cooking became that role. While we were finishing breakfast, Butler spoke. "Master, activity detected on the 18th floor." I immediately brought up the surveillance feed. Deng Tu's remaining men appeared on screen. They looked terrible. Their eyes were sunken and bloodshot. Their faces were gaunt. Their mouths were stained. Some even had strands of meat between their teeth. I narrowed my eyes, so my suspicion had been right. They had crossed the line. The group walked to apartment 1402. One man raised a heavy hammer. Boom. The ordinary security door dented immediately. 2 minutes later, it had been destroyed. A middle-aged resident named Xu Cheng was dragged into the corridor. He was terrified. Ironically, Xu Cheng had been one of the residents who had previously lent Deng Tu tools to attack my home. Now those same tools had been used to break into his. Deng Tu's men told him not to worry. They claimed they had come to thank him. Then they forced him to eat something. Starving after days of rationing, Xu Cheng initially believed they were giving him precious meat. After swallowing a few bites, he noticed the bloodstains around their mouths. Then he realized what they had fed him. His face went white. "You people are insane." He tried to run. One of Deng Tu's men gave him a head start. 10 seconds. Xu Cheng sprinted for the stairwell. The man counted only one number, 10. Then he threw an axe. Xu Cheng collapsed near the stairs. The gang laughed. Fresh food again. Li Ru's face turned pale when she watched the recording. Are they even human anymore? Bai Ya couldn't keep looking. She turned away from the screen. I crossed my arms. This had happened sooner than in my previous life. Back then, cannibalism and systematic murder didn't become common in some buildings until months into the disaster. This time, Deng Tu's gang had mentally collapsed in less than half a month. But the circumstances were different. The outside temperature had dropped to around minus 70 degrees Celsius. Water and electricity were gone. The city had practically stopped functioning. Most people felt as if the rest of the world had abandoned them. Under that kind of psychological pressure, one traumatic event could break someone's mind. The deaths of Deng Tu's men had apparently been that final push. Other residents on the 14th floor witnessed Xu Cheng's murder through their peepholes. A new private group was immediately created. People panicked. Someone tried calling the police. No answer. Hospitals, fire departments, city offices, almost every official system had effectively collapsed. The residents debated gathering together for protection. That idea died as soon as food distribution came up. Some families still had supplies. Others had almost nothing. No one wanted to share. So everyone returned to the same pathetic strategy. Hide. Lock the door. Pray Deng Tu's gang chose someone else. Soon, another resident named Guo Tian appeared in the group begging for help. They're breaking into my house. He had previously bragged in the public chat that he had winter cluthing, frozen meat, and other supplies. Now that bragging had painted a target on his door. No one volunteered to save him. Eventually, Guo Tian tagged me. Luo Tian. Brother Luo. Grandpa Luo. Please save me. I'll give you everything I have. I laughed. This was the same man who had mocked me and tried to lure Bai Ya away from my shelter. Now he was begging. No, wait to die. Other residents immediately changed sides and started flattering me. The hypocrisy was almost impressive. Not long afterward, Guo Tian disappeared from the chat. Then Deng Tu's men posted a photo of his body. They tried to blame his death on me. I didn't even bother responding. Instead, the gang announced that they would watch the lower floors from now on. If I ever left the apartment to collect snow for water, they would kill me. The plan might have worked against an ordinary survivor. Unfortunately for them, my spatial inventory contained thousands of tons of clean water. I could remain inside for years without ever needing to dig snow. Deng Tu then made another announcement. Anyone who reported my location outside the apartment would receive his protection. Many residents were tempted, so I decided to make the game more interesting. I tagged everyone, new bounty. Kill Deng Tu and bring proof, and I'll give you a whole roasted chicken. Kill one of his men, and I'll give you 2 giant chicken legs. Then I posted a picture of a golden, 4-pound roast chicken. The group went insane. People who had nearly starved to death stared at the image with red eyes. That amount of food could keep someone alive for days, maybe longer if rationed carefully. Deng Tu was furious, but I wasn't joking. His gang had become a genuine threat to the building. They were already killing residents for food. If left alone, the entire tower could become a slaughterhouse. This was my territory. I wasn't going to live in a building filled with corpses and madmen. Still, I had one problem. I didn't want to personally leave the safe house. I had guns and ammunition in my space, but my marksmanship wasn't good enough for me to trust my life to it. I needed someone capable, someone who could fight, someone who understood weapons. Then I remembered Yan Shu, the beautiful policewoman who had nearly punched my head off before the apocalypse. National-level combat champion. Excellent shooter. Experienced investigator. If I could bring her under my control, Deng Tu's gang would stop being a problem. The only issue was that I had no idea where she was. I walked to the window and looked outside. Then I froze. A woman was moving through the deep snow below. She carried a backpack on her chest and a little girl on her back. Even in the brutal cold, she kept moving forward. I narrowed my eyes. She looked familiar. Then I recognized her. Yan Shu. I almost laughed. Had I developed some kind of wish fulfillment superpower? I had only just been thinking about her. And now, she had walked into my building on her own. The child with her was named Cece. Yan Shu had been looking after her for relatives who were out of the country when the apocalypse began. Their food was almost gone. Cece's aunt, Yi Mengrong, lived in my building and had contacted them, claiming she still had 2 boxes of instant noodles and could share. So Yan Shu had packed everything they had left and made the dangerous journey through the snow. They entered through a second-floor corridor window because the main entrance was buried. Yan Shu was exhausted. Days of poor nutrition had cut her physical condition nearly in half. Even so, she remained far stronger than an ordinary person. I watched through the cameras. This really was perfect timing. The only question was how to make her come to me willingly, and how to make her accept one of Butler's security bracelets. As Yan Shu climbed through the building with Cece, she ran into several members of Deng Tu's gang. The men rushed toward them after hearing the child's voice. Then they saw Yan Shu's face. Their expressions changed instantly. Some of them had encountered her before the apocalypse. During one incident, Yan Shu had arrested their group while off duty and had beaten several of them so badly that 2 ended up in intensive care. That memory had apparently left deep psychological scars. Officer Yan? The men backed away. For a moment, they even wondered whether police rescue teams had arrived. Then they remembered the 5-meter deep snow outside and realized that was impossible. Yan Shu shifted into a fighting stance, ready for a brutal confrontation. Instead, one man shouted, "Run!" The entire group fled. Even Yan Shu looked confused. She eventually recognized them as Deng Tu's people. So these were the killers Yi Mengrong had warned her about. Yan Shu didn't pursue them. The old legal system had already collapsed, and protecting Cece mattered more than trying to arrest criminals in a frozen stairwell. She continued to apartment 1204. Yi Mengrong opened the door and embraced Cece happily, but Yan Shu immediately asked about food. That was when Yi Mengrong began avoiding her eyes. Yan Shu had spent years investigating criminals. She noticed the lie commented instantly. "How much food do you actually have?" Yi Mengrong broke down. There were no 2 boxes of instant noodles. There wasn't even one. She had finished the last packet the day before. She had lied because she was terrified of being alone while Deng Tu's gang roamed the corridors. Yan Shu's face hardened. She and Cece had risked their lives, traveling through the snow for nothing. Their own backpack contained only 2 packets of instant noodles, half a bag of chips, and 3 candies. 3 people couldn't survive long on that. Yan Shu was angry, but Cece immediately defended her aunt. "I'm not hungry. I don't have to eat today." That only made the situation more painful. Suddenly, Yan Shu became dizzy and collapsed against the sofa. She had pushed her body too hard. After half a month without enough protein, sugar, or calories, then carrying a child through deep snow, even her extraordinary conditioning had limits. She broke one candy into small pieces and slowly ate a fragment for energy. Yi Mengrong then told her about me. "There is someone in this building with a lot of food. His home is warm. He eats roast meat every day." She showed Yan Shu the bounty I had posted. A whole roast chicken for Deng Tu. 2 huge chicken legs for one of his men. Cece stared at the picture. "Big sister Yan. I'm hungry." Yan Shu stared at the roasted chicken too. With careful rationing, that much food could keep the 3 of them alive for several days. Then she noticed the account name. Luo Tian. Her expression immediately changed. Yi Mengrong asked, "You know him?" "Not well." Yan Shu's jaw tightened. "He's shameless." At that exact moment, I sneezed while Bai Yao was teaching me piano. Which idiot is talking about me? Back in apartment 1204, Yan Shu eventually made a decision. She would accept my bounty. Deng Tu and his men were already murderers. Eliminating them wouldn't trouble her conscience. More importantly, she needed food. Yi Mengrong told her to add me as a contact. Yan Shu reluctantly did. I saw an anime girl profile picture appear on my phone. No note, no explanation. I rejected it immediately. Yan Shu stared at the screen. Request rejected. Her eyes widened. For someone who had spent years ignoring rich heirs and admirers begging for her contact information, being rejected like this was apparently a new experience. Yi Mengrong suggested she try again with a note. Yan Shu sent, "I'm here to collect the chicken legs." I stared at it. Who the hell are you? After weeks of random residents begging me for steaks, chicken, and food, this looked exactly like another freeloader. I blocked the account. When Yan Shu saw that she had been blocked, she nearly exploded. She wanted to come upstairs and beat me immediately. Yi Mengrong managed to calm her down. Then Yan Shu received a message from Xia Lan. Xia Lan had noticed Yan Shu entering the building and asked whether official rescue had arrived. Yan Shu explained that it hadn't. Yi Mengrong suddenly suggested using Xia Lan as an intermediary. Yan Shu had helped Xia Lan find her child before the apocalypse, so Xia Lan readily agreed. Unfortunately, Xia Lan's motives were no longer clean. She had no food. She was starving. And when Yan Shu mentioned that she still had a few packets of instant noodles, Xia Lan immediately saw an opportunity. She told Yan Shu she would contact Bai Ya and me. Of course, that was a lie. Bai Ya had blocked her long ago. But Xia Lan didn't need to contact us. She only needed Yan Shu to believe she had. After some delay, Xia Lan replied, Bai Ya spoke with Luo Tian. Luo Tian says he can advance you 4 large chicken legs if you accept the job. Yan Shu and Yi Mengrong were shocked. 4 chicken legs? That was more generous than expected. Yan Shu even started wondering whether she had misjudged me. Then Xia Lan added another condition. Luo Tian wants 5 packets of instant noodles as collateral. Yan Shu frowned. It made little sense. Why would someone with roast meat to spare care about instant noodles? She concluded that the demand was probably symbolic, something meant to force her to commit to the job. She explained that she only had 3 packets left. After another theatrical delay, Xia Lan said I had agreed. Yan Shu carefully carried the 3 packets to apartment 1701 and left them outside, as instructed. The moment she left, Xia Lan opened the door and snatched them inside. She hugged the noodles and cried, "Baby, mommy found food." Then she whispered an apology to Yan Shu. In this world, good people don't survive. She had no intention of giving Yan Shu anything in return. Hours passed. No food arrived. Yan Shu finally realized something was wrong. She returned to Xia Lan's apartment and knocked. No response. Inside, Xia Lan covered her child's mouth and remained completely silent. She knew Yan Shu, as a police officer, wouldn't smash down the door of a woman with a child without evidence. She also hoped Yan Shu would blame me instead. That was exactly what happened. Yan Shu walked away furious, convinced I had manipulated the situation. I watched all of this through the cameras without hearing their private messages. Still, the pattern was obvious enough. Yan Shu had gone from Yi Mengrong's apartment to Xia Lan's. Xia Lan had refused to open the door. Now Yan Shu was climbing toward the 23rd floor. I smiled. So she really is coming to me. This was better than anything I had planned. From that point on, I watched Yan Shu even more closely. She was exactly the kind of person I needed. Strong, disciplined, experienced, and stubborn enough to survive situations that would break most people. But that stubbornness was also the problem. If she came into my shelter while still seeing me as an enemy, I wasn't going to take unnecessary chances. So I prepared one of Butler's intelligent security bracelets. The device could monitor the wearer's movements, detect aggression, and incapacitate them with an electrical discharge, if necessary. I had tested it before. Still, Yan Shu wasn't an ordinary person. She was a national-level combat champion. If she ever entered my home, I wanted every possible layer of security in place. Meanwhile, Yan Shu continued climbing toward the 23rd floor. When she finally reached my corridor, she immediately noticed the damage Deng Tu's gang had done to the walls. The outer concrete had been smashed away in several places, exposing the black alloy underneath. Her expression changed. So the entire place is reinforced. She walked to the front door and tapped it. The dull sound told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a normal security door. It was closer to a bank vault. Before she could examine it further, my voice came through the intercom. "Officer Yan, why are you sneaking around outside my house?" She instantly looked up. Cameras. Of course. She couldn't find them, which meant they were probably hidden. That only made her more suspicious. "Luo Tian," she said coldly, "I suspect you're illegally detaining someone. Open the door and cooperate with my investigation." I laughed. "Suspect? One sentence from you, and suddenly you can search private property? We haven't seen each other in a month. And this is how you greet me?" Then I deliberately teased her. "Or did you actually miss me?" Her fist slammed against the door. "Luo Tian, keep talking and I'll tear that mouth off your face." The force of the blow surprised even me. This woman really was a human weapon. Eventually, I stopped provoking her. "Fine. You want me to open the door?" The small hatch opened. I passed the bracelet through. "Put this on." Yan Shu stared at it. "What is it?" "Security. If you want inside, wear it." She hated the idea, but with no other way through the door, she finally complied. I waited for Butler to confirm that the bracelet was active. Then I unlocked the 3 security systems and slowly opened the door. I remained several meters away. "Congratulations, Officer Yan." "You're the third guest I've allowed into this home." She stepped inside. The first thing she noticed wasn't me. It was the temperature. Warm air wrapped around her body. After days of living in rooms barely warmer than the frozen corridor, entering a home kept above 20 degrees Celsius felt unreal. Then Butler spoke. "Warning, target is carrying a weapon." A three-dimensional scan appeared on the large display. A household fruit. Knife was highlighted at Yanshu's waist. Her face changed. She had been caught before she even made a move. Then, instead of surrendering the weapon, she suddenly drew it. "High threat detected," Butler announced. Yanshu moved. Despite her weakened condition, her speed was frightening. She threw the knife directly at me. Butler gave me the trajectory a fraction of a second before release. I could have dodged. Instead, I pulled a large shooting target from my spatial inventory and placed it in front of me. Thunk. The knife struck the center. I peeked around the target and gave her a thumbs up. "Nice throw." Then the bracelet discharged. Yanshu's body stiffened. A moment later, she collapsed unconscious. I didn't immediately approach. "Butler, is she really out?" "Confirmed. Target is currently unable to pose a threat." Only then did I relax. I closed the door again, restored all locks, and secured the heavy internal bar. Butler warned me that Yanshu's physical condition was exceptional. Even after the discharge, she might recover far sooner than an ordinary person. I nodded. That was exactly why I had been cautious. Li Ru and Bai Ya helped clean her up and remove the blood and grime from days spent in the frozen building. I had no intention of letting someone filthy sleep inside my shelter. Sometime later, Yanshu woke on the living room floor. Her first reaction was confusion. Her second was shock. The fireplace, the warm air, the carpet, the fresh fruit on the table, lychees, dragon fruit, pineapple, bananas, watermelon, grapes. Everything looked as fresh as if it had been picked that morning. Her investigative instincts immediately activated. This wasn't normal. Even the best refrigeration system couldn't keep such a variety of produce perfectly fresh indefinitely. Then she remembered the huge target I had produced from nowhere. That hadn't been a magic trick. There had been no place to hide it. She began connecting the clues. A disaster had already transformed the entire world. If something as impossible as the global freeze could happen, then perhaps supernatural abilities were no longer impossible either. She was close. Not perfectly correct, but close. Then I walked out in a silk robe. "Morning, Officer Yan." She looked at me coldly. "Release Xia Lan." I raised an eyebrow. "Why would I capture Xia Lan?" "Don't lie. She's in your A bedroom." Door opened. Li Ru and Bai Ya stepped out. Yanshu froze. Bai Ya smiled. "Officer Yan, did you just mention Xia Lan? That liar?" "Liar." Bai Ya told her the truth. She explained how Xia Lan had accepted food from her, then betrayed her location to Deng Tu's men in order to save herself. Yanshu's expression slowly changed. Then Bai Ya opened her phone. Her chat with Xia Lan had ended long ago. She had never contacted Xia Lan on Yanshu's behalf. Everything about the supposed deal had been fabricated. Yanshu lowered her head. She finally understood. She had been tricked. Worse, she had attacked me because of it. For a woman who prided herself on protecting innocent people and punishing criminals, the realization stung deeply. Luo Tian. Her voice softened. "I was wrong. I apologize." I laughed without humor. "That's it? If I hadn't been prepared, that knife would have gone into me. In this environment, one serious wound could be fatal. You almost killed me because you believed someone else's story, and now you think a simple apology settles it." Yanshu clenched her jaw. "Then I'll help you eliminate Deng Tu." I smiled. "You still don't understand. Deng Tu and his men are already dead men walking. And you?" I looked directly at her. "You're not leaving my control that easily either." Her eyes sharpened. "Luo Tian, do you understand what you're saying? When this disaster ends, you'll stand trial." I laughed. "You still think this ends?" Then I finally gave her part of the truth. "I knew this disaster was coming. That's why I renovated this apartment. That's why I stocked supplies. That's why I built a fortress. Before anyone else even understood what was happening. To prove I wasn't bluffing, I reached into empty air and produced a bottle of wine. Then, with another motion, I returned it to my spatial inventory." Yanshu stared. No hidden compartment, no trick. It simply appeared and disappeared. "You." I poured myself a glass. "Want to know how long the snow disaster will last?" She didn't answer, but her eyes never left me. I took a sip. Forever. That single word hit her harder than any threat. Forever. The temperature had already fallen to around minus 70 degrees in half a month. Countless people were starving or freezing. Official systems were collapsing. If the cold never ended, then human civilization as she knew was already finished. While Yanshu struggled with that reality, Deng Tu's men were searching the building for her. Deng Tu understood the danger. Yanshu was a police officer. If she joined forces with me, someone with resources, weapons, and an impregnable shelter, then his gang would have no future. He ordered his men to search every floor and kill her, while she was still weakened. But by then, Yanshu was already inside my fortress. One of Deng Tu's men came upstairs and tried a different tactic. He stood outside my door, shouting that I was holding a policewoman against her will. He kept yelling, apparently hoping Yanshu would hear him and turn against me. I could have enabled noise cancellation. Instead, I walked to the shooting port. The man kept shouting. I fired one crossbow bolt. The corridor became quiet. His companions, hiding around the corner, went pale. Even they hadn't expected me to kill him so decisively. Deng Tu's plan had failed. He realized that as long as Yan Shu stayed inside my home, there was nothing he could do except wait. So he changed priorities. Gather food, gather resources, prepare for the day she came outside. That led him to Auntie Wang. A week earlier, Auntie Wang had impersonated official authority and tricked residents into handing over food for centralized distribution. By now, everyone knew she had stolen it. But chaos elsewhere in the building had allowed her to escape punishment. Deng Tu remembered. His men smashed into her apartment. They found exactly what they hoped for. Boxes of noodles, sausages, candy, snacks, chocolate. The old woman had accumulated enough food to survive for months. Her son, Wang Fu, was sitting there eating a hot bowl of noodles while she clutched a large bag of chocolate. Deng Tu's men were furious. They had been reduced to eating whatever they could find while this family sat on stolen supplies. They began carrying everything away. Auntie Wang screamed about the law and claimed she had official backing. One of the men hit her with a club. She collapsed. Her own son didn't try to protect her. He immediately praised the attacker and said his mother deserved it. Even the gang laughed at how cowardly he was. They stripped the apartment of food and even carried away wooden furniture to burn. For heat. Only after they left did Wang Fu's wife, Yunana, emerge from the bathroom where she had hidden. Wang Fu immediately blamed her. She fired back that he had done nothing while his own mother was being beaten. Soon, the two were fighting while Auntie Wang lay motionless on the floor. When news spread that Auntie Wang had been robbed, the residents celebrated. They didn't receive any of the stolen food. They were simply happy that someone they hated was suffering. That was the kind of world this had become. The next morning, Yan Shu woke beside the warmth of the fireplace. For a moment, she forgot she was in the apocalypse. The living room remained comfortably heated all night. The curtains opened automatically. Butler greeted her. Then Li Ru came out and began preparing breakfast. Before long, the smell of hot food filled the apartment. Fish, seafood soup, special pork ribs, even lava cake for dessert. Yan Shu had gone nearly a full day without eating and hadn't had a proper hot meal in weeks. The smell alone made her dizzy. I came out with Bai Ya and sat at the table. Li Ru served us. Yan Shu stayed away, determined not to beg. But her stomach betrayed her. I heard it growl. I carried a small plate of tender fish over and crouched in front of her. One more chance. Kiss me voluntarily, and this is yours. She glared at me. Dream on. I shrugged. Then I dumped the fish into the trash. Her expression cracked. In the apocalypse, that small plate could have saved someone's life. To me, it was disposable. That difference in power was exactly what she was beginning to understand. Over the next few days, Deng Tu's men continued raiding apartments. They robbed a resident named Dong Yan, whose family had owned a supermarket and stocked more snacks than most. The rest of the building became even more terrified. Every time the gang attacked someone, they blamed me and the residents group. Come out, Luo Tian. Every day you hide, another family gets robbed. Some frightened residents joined the accusations. They didn't dare resist Deng Tu, so blaming me felt safer. I ignored them. It was a crude provocation. The more desperately Deng Tu tried to force me outside, the more obvious his fear became. By Yan Shu's fourth day inside my home, I finally offered her a deal. She initially refused to listen. Then I mentioned Cici and Yi Mengrong. I would provide them with enough food to survive. In return, Yan Shu would work for me. Deng Tu's gang needed to disappear. This time, she listened. I gave her professional-grade polar expedition gear from my spatial inventory. It was flexible enough for combat, yet capable of resisting extreme cold. I also laid out weapons. I had collected knives, batons, tactical tools, and other close combat equipment. Choose what you want. I showed her the gym as well. Train here. Eat whatever you need. Recover to your peak condition as quickly as possible. With proper protein, calories, and training, Yan Shu recovered astonishingly fast. Within days, she was lifting heavy weights again. Eventually, the day came. I stood by the door. Ready? Yan Shu checked her equipment and nodded. Ready. The locks disengaged. Freezing air poured inside. Li Ru and Bai Ya stepped back instinctively. Good luck, Officer Yan. Bai Ya practically had stars in her eyes. Yan Shu gave them a small smile. Then she stepped outside. The door closed behind her. For a brief moment, she stood in the frozen corridor and realized something uncomfortable. Part of her wanted to finish this mission as quickly as possible and come back. Warm showers, fresh meat, vegetables, fruit, electricity, a fireplace, a comfortable bed. Once a person had experienced that kind of life during the apocalypse, returning to starvation in frozen rooms felt almost impossible. I watched her through the camera feed. Let's see whether you're really worth all the effort. Deng Tu was right to be worried. Yan Shu wasn't merely strong in close combat. She also understood investigation, counter-surveillance, and ambush tactics. If she ever got access to my ranged weapons, Deng Tu's gang would barely have a chance to see her before dying. That was why he was desperate to find her. One of his men eventually dragged over a resident named Lu Daming, who claimed he had seen a beautiful woman heading toward the upper floors. Deng Tu immediately questioned him. Lu Daming admitted that the woman had gone all the way toward the top floor. Deng Tu's face darkened. Exactly what he feared. Yan Shu had gone to me. He then came up with a plan. Lu Daming was forced to stand outside my door and call for Yan Shu. Luo Tian, I'm Lu Daming from the 15th floor. The policewoman inside offended Brother Tu. Please send her out. His voice shook as Deng Tu's men waited around the corner with weapons. When I checked the surveillance replay, the setup was obvious. Deng Tu hoped to exploit Yan Shu's sense of justice. If she believed an innocent resident would die because of her, she might come outside. Lu Daming started pleading directly with her. Officer, please save me. You're a police officer. You can't let an innocent person die because of you. I glanced at Yan Shu. Feeling the heroic urge to rush out there and die, she stayed silent. Before Shilan's betrayal, she might have. Now she understood that blind righteousness in a collapsed society could be manipulated. Outside, Lu Daming kept shouting. He apparently assumed I was too cautious to hurt him. He was wrong. I walked to the shooting port, raised the crossbow, and fired. One bolt ended the noise. Deng Tu's men froze. They had expected me to hesitate because Lu Daming was a neighbor. I didn't. They dragged the body away and reported back to their boss. Deng Tu was shaken. He had finally understood that moral pressure wouldn't work on me, so he stopped trying to force Yan Shu out and focused on supplies. That was how Auntie Wang's stockpile was discovered and looted. By then, even Deng Tu's gang was tired of the terrible food they had been eating. Instant noodles and sausage suddenly sounded luxurious. Once they realized how much Auntie Wang had hoarded through fraud, they stripped the apartment nearly bare. Her son Wang Fu did nothing. Afterward, the residents celebrated her misfortune. The building had long since stopped behaving like a community. It was a collection of frightened, hungry people waiting for someone else's disaster to buy them one more day. Yan Shu spent the night in my warm living room. The next morning, she woke to fresh food, comfortable temperatures, and butler operating every system automatically. Li Ru prepared a lavish breakfast. Yan Shu tried to pretend she wasn't hungry. Her stomach exposed the lie. I offered her food in exchange for a kiss. She refused. So I threw the food away. Her expression nearly broke. I wanted her to understand one thing clearly. Inside this shelter, scarcity did not control me. I controlled the resources. By the fourth day, Yan Shu had recovered enough strength to work. I offered her a straightforward deal. I would make sure Cici and Yi Mengrong didn't starve. She would help me eliminate Deng Tu's gang and, from then on, serve as my combat specialist when I needed one. She accepted. I equipped her with polar expedition clothing and let her choose close combat weapons from my stores. I also gave her access to the gym. With proper nutrition and training, her strength returned quickly. I did not give her a firearm yet. Trust had to be earned. When the day finally came, she left my shelter and headed for the 18th floor. Through the camera mounted on her equipment, I watched everything in real time. Deng Tu's apartment was loud. Music, alcohol, shouting. His gang had looted several homes and was celebrating. That made Yan Shu's job easier. Using her lock-picking experience, she quietly opened the door. One man noticed her. Then everything happened quickly. The first attacker rushed her with a bottle. She stepped aside and dropped him with a single kick. Two more grabbed blades. Yan Shu met them head-on. Her movements were efficient and brutally precise. Within seconds, the first room was cleared. The noise from the bedroom was so loud that Deng Tu and the others initially didn't even realize a fight had started. Then one injured man crashed through the bedroom door. Deng Tu stared. Yan Shu appeared behind him. Officer Yan, panic spread. His remaining men attacked together. It changed nothing. She had fought armed criminals before the apocalypse. Against intoxicated street thugs, the result was one-sided. Within minutes, only Deng Tu remained conscious. I had Yan Shu start a video call. My face appeared on her phone. I leaned back on my sofa. Boss Deng, nice to finally meet you properly. His eyes filled with hatred. Luo Tian. This man had once been a wealthy and influential property developer. Now he sat in a wheelchair surrounded by the remains of the gang he had built. He laughed bitterly. I underestimated you. I never thought you'd manage to bring Officer Yan to your side. I didn't bother explaining the details. Any last request? I probably won't grant it. He laughed again. Perhaps people really did enjoy talking when they had absolute control of the situation. After a final exchange, I lost interest. End it. Yan Shu did. Deng Tu's reign in the building ended there. Then she heard movement in the other room. A bespectacled man in a blood-stained medical coat appeared and immediately dropped to his knees. He claimed to be Deng Tu's private doctor. He begged for his life. I'm a graduate of Qinshui's top medical school. Keep me alive and I can provide medical treatment. For a moment, I appeared interested. Then he made the mistake of telling me how useful he would be if I became seriously ill. I frowned. So you're cursing me? He panicked. That conversation did not save him. I had no intention of bringing an unknown man into my shelter simply because he was a doctor. If I ever needed a physician, I could find someone more trustworthy. Yan Shu then found the kitchen. What she saw confirmed every rumor about Deng Tu's gang. The room had been used to process human bodies for food. She had seen crime scenes before. Even so, her expression became grim. The doctor had apparently been responsible for the work. I watched through her camera and felt equally disgusted. But I was also impressed by Yan Shu. Deng Tu's armed gang had been wiped out without her losing control of the situation. She had proven her value. From now on, if I needed someone to go outside, she could handle it. I gave her 1 hour of free movement before returning. She immediately went to apartment 1204. She had been worried about Cici and Yi Mengrong the entire time. When she reached the door, she hesitated. 6 days had passed since she left them. Could they still be alive? Through the surveillance system, I told her the truth. They're alive. I saw your relative trade betting for food 2 days ago. Yan Shu's shoulders relaxed. She knocked. The door opened. Cici and Yi Mengrong threw themselves at her. For a moment, the three simply held one another. Even Baya became emotional while watching through the cameras. I pretended not to care, but I hadn't considered those two women enemies. They hadn't participated in my murder in the previous life. If necessary, I would have found a way to keep them from starving. Yan Shu then asked about the food inside Deng Tu's apartment. Can I give it to them? Take all of it. I didn't want it. Most of those supplies had been stolen from Auntie Wang and other residents. Besides, my spatial inventory held entire mountains of noodles, bread, canned food, snacks, and other supplies. A few boxes meant nothing to me. Yan Shu was visibly surprised. She and Yi Mengrong spent the next half hour moving the food downstairs. For Cece and her aunt, it was a fortune. Several boxes could keep them alive for months. Still, the supplies were mostly noodles, bread, and processed snacks. Yan Shu worried about vitamins. I understood what she was thinking. Fine, I'll help a little more. But nothing is free. She blushed, understanding the implication of my tone, but accepted. I took out a bottle of vitamin C tablets. Fresh produce was too valuable to hand out casually, but vitamins could prevent some of the worst nutritional problems. I told her to open the corridor window. Then I dropped the bottle from the 23rd floor. She caught it below. At that moment, an explosion erupted from Building 10. Black smoke poured from shattered windows. The residents' chat immediately filled with questions. I remembered something from my previous life. Building 10 had experienced a violent uprising. Back then, Yan Shu had helped suppress it. This time she was with me, so the riot would develop without her interference. That didn't particularly concern me. As long as no one came after my building, it was none of my problem. Before leaving 1204, Yan Shu told Yi Mengrong to take care of Cece. Then she went to apartment 1701. Xiaolan. Yan Shu hadn't forgotten the 3 packets of noodles she had been tricked into giving away. With the universal key I had provided, she entered. Xiaolan appeared and went pale. You're alive. Yan Shu stared at her. So you really hoped I would die? Xiaolan immediately knelt and begged. She pleaded on behalf of her child. Yan Shu's anger weakened slightly. Whatever Xiaolan had done, the child was innocent. Then Yan Shu noticed something strange. The child on the sofa wasn't moving. His face was unnaturally pale. She stepped closer. Xiaolan suddenly panicked and tried to stop her. Too late. Yan Shu touched the child's shoulder. The truth was horrifying. Xiaolan's mind broke. Before Yan Shu could fully process what had happened, the woman charged toward the window and threw herself out. Yan Shu left the apartment in silence. What had happened inside was one more reminder of how quickly desperation could destroy people. On her way back upstairs, she encountered Yu Lin. He was limping strangely and moving between floors with visible discomfort. Through the cameras, I recognized him immediately. He had been visiting another resident on the 14th floor repeatedly in exchange for food. The details were obvious enough. Bai Ya understood too and burst out laughing. Even Li Ru could only sigh at how differently people were surviving the apocalypse. Soon, Yan Shu returned to the 23rd floor. I let her inside. Go shower first. She had blood and dirt on her clothing from the operation. No one came into my home like that. Meanwhile, a resident named Zheng Wen eventually discovered the bodies in Deng Tu's apartment. At first, nobody believed him. Then he took pictures. The news spread across the building. Deng Tu was dead. His entire gang was gone. The residents celebrated. For the first time in days, they felt safe enough to collect snow without fearing the gang. Naturally, they began speculating about who had done it. Most refused to believe it was me. I never left my apartment. Someone suggested people from Building 10 had attacked Deng Tu. That theory gained traction because of the earlier explosion. Then another resident mentioned seeing a beautiful woman carrying boxes of food away from the 18th floor. Someone else remembered seeing that same woman enter my apartment. The residents put the pieces together badly. They concluded that an outside group had killed Deng Tu. Then Yan Shu had found the stolen supplies and moved them to my home. Within minutes, the story changed again. Now, people were accusing me of taking food that belonged to everyone. There was no evidence. It didn't matter. Jealousy supplied everything evidence couldn't. Make Luo Tian hand it over. That food belongs to the residents. He already has enough. I watched the chat with a cold smile. When Deng Tu had been smashing doors and killing people, these same residents hid silently inside their homes. Now that they believed I had resources they could take, suddenly everyone discovered courage. Predictable. The rumor spread so quickly that by the time anyone thought to ask for evidence, more than 20 residents had already convinced themselves I was guilty. In their minds, the logic was simple. Deng Tu was dead. Yan Shu had been seen carrying supplies. Yan Shu was staying with me. Therefore, I must have taken everything. A few people were still hesitant. One young man looked at the crowd gathered in the stairwell and said nervously, "Are we sure going after Luo Tian is a good idea? There are more than 20 of us." But he drove Deng Tu back several times by himself. He can't be harmless. Zheng Wen immediately stepped forward. "What are you afraid of? There are more than 20 of us. Is he going to fight all of us at once?" Even Deng Tu would have backed off if 20 armed people came at him together. That was all the crowd needed to hear. Fear disappeared beneath greed. That's right. He only has one person. He has food too. I bet he has a huge freezer. How else could he eat barbecue every day? And Bai Ya is inside. At the mention of food and women, the last scraps of caution vanished. Someone brought out machetes, baseball bats, and hammers that had been taken from Deng Tu's former territory. Zheng Wen raised a blade over his head. Then what are we waiting for? The group roared and rushed upstairs. They didn't notify the rest of the building. Not because they were worried about anyone's safety. They simply didn't want to split the spoils with more people. By the time they climbed to the 23rd floor, most of them were already exhausted. No elevator is brutal. My legs are dying. Wait. Look at the wall. Only then did they notice the damage left behind by Deng Tu's earlier attacks. Hammer marks covered the outer wall of my apartment. Inside, every damaged patch of concrete was a dark layer of alloy. One resident knocked against it and stared in disbelief. What the hell? The wall is reinforced? Another struck it with his hammer. The impact barely produced a meaningful sound. How thick is this stuff? Even a cutting machine might have trouble with it. Who renovates an apartment like this? Their excitement cooled. If even the walls were reinforced, the door was obviously worse. For a moment, no one knew what to do. Zhang Wen wasn't willing to give up so easily. His eyes moved rapidly before a vicious smile appeared. We don't have to break in. Everyone looked at him. We just need to make him come out. He proposed that they take turns screaming insults, pounding on the door, and harassing me until I couldn't tolerate it anymore. 10 people could shout while the others rested. If I lost my temper and opened the door, they would overwhelm me. And even if I refused to come out, Zhang Wen believed the women inside would eventually see me as a coward. The others immediately approved. From inside the shelter, I watched their entire discussion through the cameras. I took another sip of hot tea. I used to think women were the ones who changed their minds quickly. Bai Ya stood behind the sofa, massaging my shoulders. But these people are worse, I continued. A few days ago, they were flattering me. Now they're standing outside planning to kill me because they think I have something worth taking. Bai Ya stared at the monitor angrily. Master, they're disgusting. Deng Tu only died today and they're already trying to steal everything. I smiled faintly. If they've already decided to kill me, they shouldn't expect to walk away. Outside, the shouting started. Luo Tian, give back the food you stole. That belongs to all the residents. Hand over the supplies and compensate us with half your barbecue. Stop hiding behind a woman. Hammers crashed repeatedly against the security door. Some people started inventing claims on the spot. I had a whole box of instant noodles in there. My bread and biscuits were taken too. Whether any of those things had ever belonged to them no longer mattered. Everyone was trying to create a reason to demand a larger share. Inside, we heard absolutely nothing. The shelter had a high-grade noise reduction system built into it. I activated it from the control panel. The hammering disappeared. The yelling disappeared. Even the howl of the blizzard outside vanished. The room became so quiet I could hear Bai Ya breathing behind me. I laughed. High-tech shelters really are wonderful. But I had no intention of sitting there forever and letting them keep attacking my home. There was an old saying, welcome a friend with wine, but greet a wolf with a weapon. I asked Butler for a way to make several improvised incendiary devices from the supplies in storage. The system provided a basic plan. I did not need anything complicated. The only thing that mattered was that the attackers outside understood, permanently, what happened when they tried to break into my home. I prepared 3 bottles and handed one each to Li Ru and Bai Ya. Bai Ya's fingers trembled slightly. Before the apocalypse, she had been a national celebrity adored by millions. Now I was asking her to take part in something that could kill people. She was clearly shaken. I lit my own bottle and looked at her. Human desire is like a stone rolling downhill. Once it starts, it rarely stops on its own. Her eyes moved toward the security monitor. The people outside were still striking the door. They came here armed, I said. They came here because they wanted our food, our home, and our lives. Don't carry guilt for choices they made. I opened the small reinforced port near the top of the door. Outside, the mob immediately noticed. Luo Tian finally decided to come out. If you stay in there, we'll keep smashing the door forever. One of them was still shouting when the first bottle flew through the opening. Then the second. Then the third. I closed the port immediately. A moment later, fire surged through the corridor. The attackers' triumphant shouting turned into screams. Flames spread across the narrow passage, catching on heavy winter clothing. People who had been pounding on my door seconds earlier scattered in panic. Some tried to tear off burning coats. Others stumbled down the stairs. One man rolled violently across the floor in a desperate attempt to put himself out. The corridor became chaos. Zhang Wen collapsed near the wall, badly burned. Luo Tian, he screamed. You won't die well. Even if I become a ghost, I'll come back for you. I watched through the camera without expression. A threat from a dying man wasn't worth answering. More than 20 residents had come upstairs. Only one managed to reach a lower floor alive. Other residents found him and put out the flames, but his burns were too severe. With hospitals gone and medical care nearly non-existent, he died soon afterward. The rest never left the 23rd floor. Yu Lin had been watching through his peephole. When a badly burned figure staggered near his door, he recoiled so violently that he fell backward. Monster, he whispered. Luo Tian is a monster. Inside my shelter, I turned off the corridor camera. There was no reason to make Bai Ya and Li Ru keep staring at the aftermath. Not long later, Yan Shu emerged from the bathroom in a robe, her hair still damp. Did something happen? Bai Ya immediately went over to her. After hearing what had happened, Yan Shu looked toward me. She had assumed that after I brought her inside, I would use her to handle every dangerous situation outside. Instead, I had eliminated more than 20 armed attackers without leaving the shelter. She understood something new about me then. Even without her, I had never been helpless. The rest of the building eventually learned what had happened, and, as expected, the story mutated instantly. Deng Tu had supposedly been killed by people from Building 10. I had supposedly stolen Deng Tu's supplies. And now I had supposedly murdered more than 20 innocent neighbors who merely came to ask for their belongings back. The relatives of the dead flooded the group chat. At Luotian, you're too cruel. You killed my husband. Do you know how many families you've destroyed? You have to take responsibility. I glanced at the messages and laughed. Responsibility? I typed back. They came to my door, armed, and tried to break in. They chose what happened next. The chat exploded again. People accused me of stealing everyone's supplies. I replied, when Deng Tu took those supplies, why did none of you go demand them back from him? Silence. Because everyone knew the answer. Deng Tu would have killed them. That was the entire difference. They had been too afraid to confront Deng Tu. But they believed I would tolerate their behavior. They had miscalculated. Then I remembered another problem. There were more than 20 bodies outside my door. In temperatures near -70 degrees Celsius, decomposition wasn't an immediate concern, but I still wasn't going to leave them there forever. Yan Shu had already cleaned up and changed. I wasn't sending her back outside just to move corpses. So I posted another message. I have 2 jobs. The residents were still furious. Some started typing insults. Then I sent the next line. There are bodies on the 23rd floor. I need people to remove them. Take them downstairs or throw them outside. I don't care. Payment, 10 packs of instant noodles. The people who do the work can divide them however they want. The entire tone of the chat changed in seconds. I'll do it. I'm strong. Let me carry them. Don't fight me for it. Those noodles are mine. People who had been condemning me a minute earlier suddenly raced out of their apartments. Even some relatives of the dead joined the scramble. Through the camera, I watched several people physically argue over who had the right to carry which body. One woman shouted, "Move! That's my husband's body." Someone actually fought her for it because carrying an extra body meant a stronger claim. On the noodles, I leaned back against the sofa. What a circus. The apocalypse had already stripped away most social rules. Now 10 packets of instant noodles were enough to make grief, anger, dignity, and principle negotiable. The bodies were soon removed. The residents returned to my door and waited carefully outside. Luo, brother Luo, we're finished. Can we get the food now? I'm starving. I kept my word. 10 packets of instant noodles came through the delivery port. The workers immediately started fighting over them. I carried more. That one is mine. Get your hands off it. I watched the scene while drinking tea. Before the apocalypse, I had bought huge quantities of ordinary snacks without thinking much about them. Now, a few packs of noodles were enough to make grown adults nearly tear each other apart. Yan Shu watched too. Food is already this scarce after only half a month, she murmured. What happens later? I put an arm around her. Now you understand why I prepared. Her expression darkened slightly when she thought about Xia Lan. I won't make the same mistake twice. Then she hesitated. But, Luo Tian, was everything I saw in Xia Lan's apartment really what I thought it was? I looked at her. Not necessarily. What do you mean? A few days before you went there, Deng Tu's men visited Xia Lan's home. They stayed for a long time. Yan Shu went quiet. The implication was ugly. Perhaps Xia Lan had lied to her and manipulated her for food. But perhaps some of the horrifying things Yan Shu believed she had seen had another explanation. Either way, the matter was over. I had no intention of becoming responsible for everyone's tragedy. Once the corridor was cleared, I noticed dark burn marks still covered the floor and walls. So I sent out cleaning tools. Clean the corridor too. 1 extra pack of noodles per person. The response was instantaneous. Brother Luo, leave it to us. We'll make it spotless. People who had been calling me a murderer were suddenly scrubbing the corridor as if they worked for a luxury hotel. When the job was done, they took their noodles downstairs happily. Some even posted photos in the group chat to brag about being paid. Damn, you got 2 whole packs. I should have run upstairs faster. Can you give me half a noodle cake? I'm starving. I smiled. Resource scarcity had created a new kind of authority. Money no longer mattered. Food did. One resident still tried to provoke me. At Luo Tian, you're shameless. You stole Deng Tu's food and now you're paying people with what already belonged to us. I replied immediately. Are you stupid? I didn't take Deng Tu's supplies. Those are at Yimengrong's place. Then I added, I'm getting tired of barbecue anyway. Tonight we're eating seafood. The group chat paused. Seafood? Someone immediately mocked me. Yeah, right. You've probably finished your barbecue already. Fresh seafood doesn't even keep long. Stop lying. By coincidence, Li Ru had just finished dinner. Shrimp and corn porridge, salmon sushi, steamed hairy crab, grilled octopus, Boston lobster. One dish after another appeared on the dining table. Dinner's ready, Li Ru called. Bai Ya practically bounced toward the table. It smells amazing. The resident who had mocked me sent another message. At Luo Tian, if you really have seafood, I'll slap myself twice and post the video. If you don't, give me 2 packs of noodles. I laughed. So that was what he wanted. He hadn't managed to get paid for cleaning, so now he was trying to gamble his way into food. I took a photo of the table and posted it. Steamed hairy crab tonight, the group exploded. What? He really has seafood. That's a lobster. How is he living better now than before the apocalypse? People stared at the photos while eating dry biscuits and instant noodles. The contrast was cruel. One man begged, Brother Luo, can I have some? I typed, call me Dad. Dad, I replied, dream on. He nearly lost his mind. Then the begging spread. Dad, your son is starving. Brother Luo, just 1 crab leg. I'll work for you. One widow even wrote, you killed my husband, but if you give me a crab, I'll forgive you. I almost laughed out loud, as if I needed her forgiveness. Then another woman offered herself and members of her family in exchange for a seafood meal. I glanced at the message, shook my head, and tossed my phone aside. Desperation was rapidly eroding every boundary people once pretended was permanent, but I had no interest in turning dinner into another negotiation. We ate. Afterward, the three women waited a few hours and then went to the gym. Yan Shu's arrival had apparently triggered a new competitive instinct in Li Ru and Bai Ya. Yan Shu trained every day. Her physique reflected years of serious conditioning. Li Ru and Bai Ya didn't want to fall behind. When I entered the gym, all three were exercising. Yan Shu was bench pressing 100 kilograms with controlled movements. Bai Ya was doing yoga, displaying extraordinary flexibility from years of professional training. Li Ru was on the exercise bike, determined to shape her legs. I had also kept up my own workouts during the last half-month. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, I noticed something strange. My body had changed much faster than expected. Clear abdominal definition had appeared in barely more than 2 weeks. My shoulders were broader, my muscles were denser, and my overall physical condition felt dramatically better. Yan Shu, I asked, is this kind of progress normal? She set the barbell back in place. If nutrition is excellent and the training is consistent, rapid early progress is possible. She looked at my abdomen for a moment, then quickly looked away. And we're definitely not lacking nutrition in here. That explanation made sense. Still, I suspected there was more to it. My appetite, recovery, energy, and physical drive had all increased, but there was no downside I could identify, so I stopped worrying about it. Yan Shu then designed a proper training program for me. It targeted the whole body and was far more systematic than my improvised routine. She also began teaching me basic fighting fundamentals: footwork, balance, distance, timing, how to keep my attention on an opponent, how not to waste movement. My progress surprised even her. After several hours, I took a hot shower and returned to the living room in comfortable clothes. In a world outside where people were freezing and starving, hot showers had become a luxury beyond money. Bai Ya came out first and sat near me. Li Ru followed. Yan Shu came last, drying her long black hair. That was when I remembered something I had almost forgotten: the guns. I patted the sofa beside me. Yan Shu, come look at something. She sat down, curious. I reached into my spatial inventory and placed a black handgun on the table. Her eyes immediately sharpened. A gun? Li Ru and Bai Ya stared at it in shock. They knew I had an enormous amount of supplies in my storage space. They hadn't known those supplies included firearms. Yan Shu recognized the model almost instantly. Glock 19. She picked it up only after I told her it was unloaded. It's more compact than the Glock 17 and commonly used for concealed carry and law enforcement. She checked it with practiced familiarity. Then her expression changed. Luo Tian, where did you get this? I smiled. She had handled the bank robbery investigation before the apocalypse. It didn't take her long to connect the dots. The robbery case, she said. 3 handguns disappeared from the stash location. Correct. Her eyes widened. I took them before the police found the place. I have 3 pistols total and a little over 400 rounds. Li Ru and Bai Ya both stared at me. A fortress was already difficult enough to attack. A fortress with firearms was something else entirely. Yan Shu looked at me in disbelief. Why didn't you use them earlier? I knew how to point one at someone and pull the trigger at close range. That's not the same as knowing how to use a handgun properly in a real fight. Yan Shu studied me for a second. Fair enough. Then I'll teach you properly. How long? 3 days to become basically competent, assuming you're willing to practice. Becoming genuinely accurate under pressure is another matter. That was more than enough for me. Outside our warm apartment, another group of residents was meeting in secret. They were relatives of the people who had died outside my door. Their grief had hardened into hatred. We can't let him live like a king after killing our families, one young man said. But what can we do? Someone else replied. His door is impossible to break. Then Wang Hongming spoke. We find outside help. Everyone turned toward him. Who? Building 10. The room became quiet. Everyone had heard the rumors. Building 10 had been partially conquered by a man named Zhuo Wuquantao. He had gathered roughly 40 followers and built his power by robbing other residents. Food, women, medicine, anything valuable was taken. People who resisted disappeared. Some desperate men had even offered up members of their own families in exchange for protection. Wang Hongming said, "What does Zhu Wentao like most?" "Food." "And women," someone answered. Wang smiled coldly. "Luo Tian has both." He reminded them that I had posted photos of barbecue and seafood. And most importantly, Bai Ya was living in my home, a nationally famous celebrity. That was more than enough bait. The residents quickly convinced themselves that Building 10 was stronger than I was. After all, someone from Building 10 had supposedly killed Deng Tu. They had no idea Yan Shu had done it on my orders. The only remaining question was who would carry the message. No one volunteered. The women immediately refused, claiming it would be dangerous because Zhuo Wentao's men were notorious. The men began making excuses too. Eventually, the job fell to Wang Hongming and a younger resident. The two of them dug their way into the underground garage and moved toward Building 10. The route was dark and partially buried. By the time Wang reached the Building 10 exit, he turned around and discovered the younger man was gone. He ran. Wang cursed. For a moment, he considered returning too. Then he remembered being humiliated in the group chat. Anger overpowered caution. He climbed through a corridor window. The instant he entered, Building 10, several men carrying baseball bats surrounded him. Who the hell are you? Wang took several blows before he could explain. I'm not an intruder. I came with information for your boss. One of the men, Zhou Yun-kun, pointed a bat at his head. You think anyone can just ask to meet our boss? Wang quickly pulled out his phone. There's a man in Building 9 named Luo Tian. He has a huge amount of food. Zhou Yun-kun looked unimpressed. So, Wang opened the photos. The reaction was immediate. Hairy crab, lobster, roast chicken, barbecue. Food that looked almost unreal against the backdrop of -70-degree weather. Zhou Yun-kun stared at the screen. What the hell? The men around him crowded closer. They had been proud of stealing instant noodles, jerky, and canned luncheon meat. Compared with what I was eating, their stockpile suddenly looked pathetic. Then Wang Hongming added the final piece of bait. And Luo Tian has women in his apartment. Zhou Yun-kun laughed. Our boss already has plenty. Do you know Bai Ya? The laughter stopped. The celebrity? She's living with Luo Tian. Zhou Yun-kun grabbed Wang by the collar. Come with me. They took him to room 1001. A large fire basin heated the living room. Several men sat on sofas with snacks and canned meat piled on the table. Women stayed close to the gang members. Zhuo Wentao sat in the center. At first, he barely cared about Wang's report. How many fat sheep have we robbed already? Then Zhou Yunkin showed him the photos. Zhuo's attitude changed. Seafood? He scrolled through the group chat. Then he heard Bai Ye's name. That made the decision for him. Change of plans. His men looked up. We deal with Building 9 first. The room filled with excited voices. But Zhou Yun-kun raised a practical problem. Luo Tian's apartment isn't normal. The walls are reinforced with alloy. The door is extremely strong. And he has a firing port. He used incendiaries through it before. Zhuo Wentao frowned. A direct assault would be costly. Then he looked toward an older man in the room. Old Yu, we're counting on you. The old man was an experienced locksmith. Before the apocalypse, he had made a living, opening everything from ordinary apartment locks to advanced electronic systems. Zhuo's gang had already used him to enter multiple homes without smashing the doors. They assumed my lock would be no different. Their plan was simple. Go at 3 in the morning, move quietly. Let old Yu open the lock. Enter before anyone inside woke up. Wang Hongming smiled nervously. I've told you everything. I should go now. Zhou Yunkin waved dismissively. Fine, get lost. Wang turned toward the door, relief flooding through him. He never made it. A heavy blow struck the back of his head. He collapsed. Zhuo Wentao wiped the weapon calmly. Zhou Yunkin looked confused. Boss, why kill him? He wasn't dangerous. Zhuo sat back down. He came here because he wants to use us against Luo Tian. He narrowed his eyes. And what if he's part of a trap? What if he runs back and tells Building 9 exactly what we're planning? Zhou immediately understood. Zhuo Wentao had survived and built power because he rarely trusted anyone. If a loose end could become dangerous, he removed it. Tonight, Zhuo said, we move at 3. His men grinned. In their minds, the outcome was already decided. They were imagining seafood. They were imagining my shelter. They were imagining Bai Ya. None of them understood what kind of home they were about to attack. At 2:30 in the morning, Zhou Yunkin and the first assault team entered Building 9 under cover of darkness. At 2:30 a.m., Zhou Yunkin's 6-man team slipped out of Building 10. They used the underground garage to avoid the deep snow and reached Building 9 with little difficulty. The tunnel Wang Hongming had dug earlier was already being covered by fresh snow, but 6 men reopened it quickly. Only 6 had been chosen for the first strike. Too many people would make noise. Their goal was not to fight. It was to get the door open before anyone inside knew they were there. Zhou Yunkin led the way. They climbed slowly through the dark stairwell, deliberately controlling every footstep. Soon they reached the 23rd floor. Old Yu, you're up. The elderly locksmith crouched in front of my security door and opened his tool case. He had spent most of his life opening locks. Ordinary anti-theft doors were easy. Electronic locks didn't scare him either. 5 minutes passed. Sweat appeared on his back. What kind of lock was this? The internal structure didn't match anything he knew. Worse, it seemed to have multiple independent layers. Even if he somehow defeated the first locking mechanism, another one was waiting behind it. 10 minutes passed. Old Yu was close to losing his mind. Then click. The door opened. The men behind him brightened. Old Yu, that's why you're the expert. The old man froze. I didn't open it. Silence. If you didn't, Zhou Yunkin began. Then who did? The door moved farther inward. Bright light spilled into the black corridor. And there I was, still wearing sleep clothes. A black Glock pointed directly at Old Yu's forehead. Yan Shu stood beside me in her polar gear, fully alert. Old Yu's face went white. A gun. The others froze too. There were 6 of them, and only 2 of us. But numbers stopped, meaning the same thing when one side had a firearm. Zhou Yunkin reacted first. Don't panic, he shouted. It's probably fake. How would an ordinary guy get a real gun? A few of the men visibly steadied themselves. Then I fired. Old Yu collapsed. Whatever confidence remained vanished with him. It's real. What do we do? They turned toward Zhou Yunkin, only to discover that he was already running. Sorry, brothers, he muttered as he fled. You'll have to buy me time. I shifted my aim. A few more shots ended the remaining attackers before they could reach me. One man was left trembling near the doorway. He begged for his life. Tell me where you're from, I said. And who sent you? He swallowed. Promise, you'll let me go first. I looked at him for a second. Then the conversation ended. You don't have the leverage to negotiate with me. Zhou Yunkan had gotten away, but I wasn't worried. He couldn't have gone far. Yan Shu. She looked at me. Get the runner. She nodded and moved into the corridor. Her priority until then had been my safety. Now that the immediate threat was gone, she could pursue him. The timing was almost convenient. I had just started learning firearms from her. The attackers had given me an unscheduled, practical lesson. Yan Shu activated the light on her gear and moved quickly down the dark stairwell. At that hour, without working corridor lights, normal pursuit would have been difficult. For her, it wasn't. Butler, I said, bring up every camera. The screens filled with infrared feeds. If Zhou Yunkan had reinforcements waiting below, I would call Yan Shu back immediately. One runner wasn't worth risking her life. The cameras showed no ambush. Zhou Yunkan was already down near the 15th floor, moving as fast as he could in the darkness. He was terrified. Only now did he understand how incomplete Building 10's information had been. I had a gun. I had Yan Shu. The fortress was more advanced than they imagined. Everything about their plan had been wrong. Yan Shu reached the floor above him. Stop! The shout startled him. Zhou Yunkun's foot slipped. He lost balance on the stairs and crashed headfirst into the corner of a wall. By the time Yan Shu reached him, he was dead. She looked down at the body with mild disbelief. I was hoping to question him. I had seen it through the cameras. Throw the body outside and come back. The lead had disappeared, but I wasn't concerned. Whoever had sent them would eventually reveal themselves. When Yan Shu returned, Bai Ya and Li Ru were awake. They had heard the gunshots. What happened? Li Ru asked. Intruders, Yan Shu said. It's handled. Bai Ya frowned. But Deng Tu's people are dead. Who else would attack us? Building 10, I said. Yan Shu immediately understood why that was plausible. The rumors surrounding Building 10 had been growing for days. I asked Butler to review the day's surveillance history. One recording showed Wang Hongming and several residents gathering. Then Wang and another man left through the lower floors carrying shovels. That confirmed everything. The families of the people who died outside my door contacted Building 10, I said. Yan Shu's expression cooled. Want me to deal with them? Not yet. I smiled. They'll pay eventually. In the building group chat, other residents were discussing the gunshots. Did anyone hear that? Sounded like a gun. Maybe the police finally came? Don't be stupid. I heard someone running through the stairwell. The residents who had helped contact Building 10 said nothing. They were terrified. They understood exactly what had happened, and now they knew I had a firearm. What they didn't know was that the cameras had already recorded their involvement. As far as I was concerned, their countdown had begun. I looked at the time. 3:30. Go back to sleep. The women returned to their rooms. I did the same. Several hours later, Building 10 was a very different place. Zhuo Wentao sat on the sofa with a dark expression. Zhou Yunkan's team had been gone for 8 hours. They should have returned before dawn. No one had come back. No one had sent a message. The men around Zhuo didn't want to say the obvious. Zhuo said it for them. They're dead. The room fell silent. No one understood how a supposedly easy nighttime raid had become a complete loss. Old Yu had the lockpicking skill. They had superior numbers. Even if the target woke up, 6 against 1 should have given someone a chance to escape. Yet not one man returned. Zhuo sent Yu Feiyang to investigate. Because Building 10 still had contacts in Building 9, it didn't take long. Yu Feiyang came back pale. Boss, people in Building 9 heard gunshots last night. That single word changed the atmosphere. Gunshots. Zhuo's jaw tightened. Then Luo Tian has a gun. A few men refused to believe it. How would a normal resident get one? Maybe Building 9 is spreading fake information. Yu Feiyang pulled out screenshots and reports from multiple residents. Too many people had heard the same thing. The room went silent again. A fortress, incendiary weapons, and now a handgun. Someone finally said what most of them were thinking. Boss. Maybe we leave Luo Tian alone. Their current life was already better than most survivors. They had food. They had control of territory. They had women and supplies. Why risk everything against an armed man behind an almost indestructible door? Zhuo Wentao stared around the room. You're afraid? No one answered. His voice hardened. You helped me take half this building. You were fearless when the people we attacked couldn't fight back. Now that you're comfortable, you're scared of one man. His followers looked ashamed. We have more than 40 people. Yu Feiyang clenched his teeth. If you order it, we'll go. The others gradually recovered their confidence. Zhuo gave them the explanation they wanted to hear. He probably doesn't have much ammunition. This is China, not America. A civilian doesn't casually stockpile bullets. Perhaps, Zhuo reasoned, I had found a pistol by chance. Maybe one magazine. Maybe slightly more. If that was all, then 40 people could overwhelm me once the ammunition ran out. The argument was flawed. But it was comforting. And people under pressure often preferred comforting logic to accurate logic. Then we hit him with numbers, someone said. Once he runs dry, he's finished. None of them knew I had more than 400 rounds. Zhuo stood. Move out. More than 40 armed men left, Building 10. Their goal was no longer a quiet burglary. This time, they intended to force their way into my home. I woke later that morning after sleeping extremely well. Bai Ya entered to help with the morning routine. Meanwhile, Zhuo's men entered Building 9 through the underground route. 2 residents carrying buckets encountered them on the stairs and froze. The gang shoved them aside and continued upward. When they reached the 23rd floor, they stopped at a safe distance. The previous damage to my walls was obvious. Dark alloy showed beneath broken concrete. Hammer marks covered the surface. Yu Fei Yang swallowed. So the information was true. No one wanted to approach the door. Even 40 men could not batter their way through that structure. Zuo looked around. If we can't go through the side, we go from below. His men immediately understood. They forced open room 2201 directly underneath mine. The apartment happened to be empty. Break through the ceiling, Zuo ordered. Several men attacked it with hammers. A layer of ordinary finishing material fell away. Then their tools struck metal. Alloy. Again. The men stopped. You're kidding. The floor too? They had assumed my reinforced walls and door were extraordinary. They had not expected the entire apartment walls, floor, and ceiling to form one complete armored shell. Their frustration exploded. Some began smashing furniture in the empty apartment simply to vent their anger. Yu Feiyang looked at Zhuo. Boss, what now? Zhuo refused to retreat. If he returned to Building 10 after losing Zhou Yunkun, Old Yu, and the rest of the first team, his authority would suffer. He studied the exposed alloy. Then he smiled. Metal conducts heat. His followers leaned closer. We burn him out. The idea spread through the group. If they created a large enough fire directly beneath my apartment, they believed the metal shell would become an oven. Either I would open the door voluntarily or everyone inside would die from the heat. The gang celebrated the plan like it was a brilliant breakthrough. They climbed back upstairs. Yu Feiyang shouted from the corridor. Luo Tian, we're from Building 10. Consider us the people coming to collect your life. I was already sitting in the living room watching the cameras. Bai Ya and Li Ru sat nearby. Yan Shu stood behind the sofa in her cold weather gear. The gang's numbers didn't change my expression. I played with a strand of Bai Ya's blonde hair. The people coming to collect my life? My voice came through the external speaker. You look more like people who came here to die. Yu Feiyang erupted. Zuo stopped him and stepped forward. I'm Zuo Wentao, their leader. His posture was deliberately calm. I'll give you two choices, I interrupted immediately. I'll give you one. Get lost. The corridor went silent. Zuo's expression darkened. Humiliated in front of more than 40 followers, he abandoned any attempt at negotiation. Searched the apartments. His men split into groups. They forced open nearby homes and took anything that could burn. Furniture, wood, stored fuel, food and other supplies. The residents in those apartments could do nothing. Some begged them not to hurt their families. The raiders ignored them. Several gang members also assaulted residents and abused women while looting. The source of their violence was not necessity. It was the confidence that no law remained capable of punishing them. By the time they were finished, the upper floors of Building 9 had been devastated. Furniture was piled throughout room 2201 beneath me. Fuel was spread through the pile. Zuo's followers withdrew. Light it. Fire filled the apartment. Heat rolled into the hallway. The gang stood nearby and laughed. Now he's finished. Give it 20 minutes. They'll cook inside that metal box. Bai Ya watched the monitor nervously. Are we really okay? Yan Shu was uneasy too. If the shell transfers heat, I laughed. Relax. The alloy in my shelter was not ordinary construction steel. Shield security had used specialized military and aerospace materials. Heat resistance had been one of the conditions I paid for. I had specifically considered fire attacks when planning the shelter. The structure was also sealed against water intrusion and heavily insulated. A fire in the apartment below was not enough. 20 minutes passed. Nothing happened. The gang returned to the 23rd floor and stared at my silent door. Maybe they're already dead, Yu Feiyang muttered. Then my voice came through the speaker. That's it. The men froze. I can't even feel it. Maybe add more wood. Zuo's face changed. Yu Feiyang shouted that I had to be bluffing. He claimed I must have opened the windows or moved to the balcony. I laughed. You people are already dead as far as I'm concerned, so I don't mind telling you. I explained that the shelter used aerospace-grade heat-resistant alloy and insulation. Their improvised fire could not defeat it. The mood in the hallway collapsed. After everything they had done, after robbing apartments and setting a floor on fire, they had achieved nothing. Yu Feiyang angrily raised his bat as if he wanted to charge my door. Then he stopped halfway. He remembered the gun. No one mocked him. All 40 men had lost most of their confidence. Bai Ya smiled brightly as she watched their faces on the cameras. Yan Shu was more practical. They're going to retreat. She looked at me. If we let them go, they'll come back later. We should remove the threat completely. They're not leaving. I opened the building group chat. The residents were furious. My door is destroyed. They took all our food. They attacked my family. They took everything we had for heat. People from the upper floors had suffered the worst. Some were now exposed to the freezing corridor. Others had no food left at all. Rage had replaced fear. I saw an opportunity. Why spend ammunition on Zhuo's people when the building was already full of survivors who hated them? I posted, "Does anyone want the Building 10 gang dead?" Responses came immediately. Of course, I want to kill them myself. They ruined my family. I'm going to die without food anyway. I might as well take them with me. Then I added the incentive. 1 box of instant noodles for every Building 10 raider you kill. And 10 cans of meat for Zhuo Wentao. The chat went quiet. 1 box. For 1 enemy. To starving residents, that was an enormous reward. Chu Junkai, from room 2103, was the first to accept. His wife had been assaulted during the raid. His family had been robbed. He didn't even care much whether he survived. He only wanted revenge and enough food for his family if he died. I'll take the bounty. Others followed. Me too. They stole everything from us. If we stay home, we starve anyway. Residents from lower floors joined because they realized the gang would eventually come for them too. Axes appeared. Crowbars, kitchen knives, hammers, weapons scavenged from Deng Tu's former gang. Within minutes, dozens of Building 9 residents were moving upstairs. Zhuo Wentao finally decided to retreat. Let's go. They turned toward the stairwell. My voice came through the speaker. Leave? You think this is a place you can enter whenever you want and leave whenever you want? The phrase sounded familiar to them. Then, Chu Junkai appeared at the stairwell. He held a kitchen knife. Where's Mazi? His face was twisted with rage. I'll cut his head off myself. Mazi recognized him and laughed. He taunted Chu about what had happened to his wife and started walking toward him. Then he saw the people behind Chu. Dozens. All armed, all furious. Mazi stumbled backward. Boss, they're all coming. The staircase filled with Building 9 residents. Roughly 60 or 70 people. Zhu's group had a little more than 40, and now their retreat was blocked. Zhu looked toward my door. You organized this. Of course. His tone changed. For the first time, he tried to negotiate. Luo Tian, we admit we made a mistake. Let us go, and I'll give you 2/3 of our stored supplies. I laughed. Why make it complicated? When you're dead, all of it belongs to me anyway. Then I repeated the bounty through the speaker. 1 box of noodles per kill. 10 cans of meat for Zhuo Wentao. The residents charged. The two groups collided in the corridor and stairwell. Knives, clubs, hammers, and improvised weapons filled the narrow space. The fight was short and brutal. Building 10's men were more experienced at attacking helpless households. They were less impressive when the victims attacked back in greater numbers. Their morale broke halfway through. More than 30 of Zhuo's men died. 7 surrendered. 5 tried to escape by jumping and did not survive. Building 9 also paid heavily. Of the 60 or 70 residents who entered the fight, only around 40 were still standing afterward, and many were wounded. The survivors refused mercy to the captured raiders. Too many friends and relatives had died. Too many homes had been destroyed. Chu Jungsai personally found Mazi. When it was over, he dropped to his knees and cried, "Baby, I avenged you." His tears froze almost as soon as they fell. From my sofa, I watched the aftermath. Excellent. The battle had removed an external threat. It had weakened my own hostile neighbors. And the food I promised as rewards would ultimately come from Zhuo Wentao's own warehouse. There was almost no downside for me. I immediately put 2 boxes of instant noodles outside as an extra reward. Chu Junchai came to collect them. Everyone gets 1 pack now, I told him. Handle the distribution. Clean the corridor too. He bowed repeatedly. Thank you, Brother Luo. He understood that without my bounty, he would never have convinced so many people to fight. In his mind, I had helped him avenge his family. Then, just before leaving, he stopped. Brother Luo, can I ask you for something else? He unexpectedly knelt. If you help me, my life is yours. I raised an eyebrow. What do you need? Medicine. He explained that after what had happened to his wife, he was terrified of an unwanted pregnancy. He wanted emergency medication. The request was painfully practical in a world where hospitals and pharmacies were no longer available. I had plenty. Before the apocalypse, I had bought large quantities of medical supplies. I took out a box. Remember what you just promised. Chu Junkai held it tightly. From now on, if you need me, just say the word. He left with the medicine and noodles. I had just gained another potentially useful subordinate for something that meant almost nothing to my stockpile. Downstairs, the survivors divided the food and began clearing the corridor. Some vomited while moving bodies. Many had killed someone for the first time. The psychological shock would not disappear quickly. I turned to Yan Shu. Building 10 still has Zhuo's storage room. She immediately understood. You want me to collect it? Exactly. She adjusted her polar gear. I stopped her before she left and placed a Glock in her hand. Her expression changed. For her, that gesture meant more than the weapon itself. It meant trust. If there are still a lot of people over there, I said, don't take unnecessary risks. I gave her 2 additional magazines. Yan Shu looked at me for a moment, then leaned forward and kissed me briefly. When she pulled away, her face was red. Then she turned and left before I could tease her. Bai Ya covered her mouth, laughing. Officer Yan nearly lost her balance. Li Ru smiled knowingly. I leaned back against the sofa. Mission first. Yan Shu crossed the buried exterior route and entered Building 10 through a 3rd-floor window. Zhu Wentao had taken nearly all of his fighters to Building 9. That left the lower floors poorly defended. Yan Shu moved upward carefully. Doors throughout the building showed signs of forced entry. Zhuo's gang really had conquered much of the building. Soon she reached room 1001. Instead of wasting time breaking the door, she knocked. A man's voice answered. Boss, you back? The door opened. A half-dressed man appeared and stared at Yan Shu. Who are you? Something the boss brought back. His eyes moved over her with obvious intent. Yan Shu's expression went cold. A moment later, he was on the floor. She hadn't needed to waste a bullet. Then screams came from deeper inside the apartment. Women, don't hurt us. Yan Shu stepped through the doorway and finally saw what Zhuo Wentao had left behind. Inside room 1001, 8 or 9 women huddled together near the fire. Their clothes were disordered and their faces were pale with fear. They had been kept there by Zhuo Wentao's group. Yan Shu closed the door behind her. Stop screaming. She needed information first. How many people are still guarding this place? The women answered immediately. Aside from the man Yan Shu had just killed, 4 others remained nearby. Everyone else had gone with Zhuo to Building 9. They also explained that Zhuo kept the supplies in 2 lock-side rooms. Only Zhuo normally carried the keys. 4 people. Not a serious obstacle. Soon the sound of a key came from the door. 4 men entered. What's all the noise? They stopped. Their companion was dead. Yanshu stood in the living room. One of the men raised a bow. Who are you? Which building sent you? Yanshu immediately reached for the Glock. She had been trying to conserve ammunition, but a ranged weapon changed the risk calculation. 1 shot dropped the man before he could fire. The remaining 3 panicked. She has a gun. They tried to flee. Yanshu used the weapons already available to her and ended the fight quickly. Within moments, all 4 were down. Over the Bluetooth connection, she said, "Sorry, I used 1 round. I answered from the shelter. 1 bullet is nothing. If you're in danger, empty both magazines if you have to." Yanshu went quiet for half a second, then she turned toward the locked storage rooms. The doors didn't last long. Inside were boxes of instant noodles, bread, biscuits, snacks, bags of rice, dried noodles, frozen meat, vegetables that were already beginning to spoil. No wonder Zhu had been able to support so many people. "Master, I found the supplies," Yanshu said. "There's a lot. Transporting all of it will be difficult." She was right. Carrying everything manually through 10 floors, the garage, and then up to the 23rd floor would take far too long. Using Building 9 residents as porters would create another problem. People who were starving would inevitably steal. "Wait there," I said. Yanshu leaned against the doorway, wondering if I planned to come over personally. Instead, a low mechanical hum appeared outside the window. She looked up. A large cargo drone was approaching through the storm. I had found several industrial drones when I emptied the port before the apocalypse. Their carrying capacity made them perfect for this job. Butler could control them through the shelter's local systems. Yanshu opened the window. The drone lowered a cargo net. She began loading boxes. Back in my living room, I could monitor both her body camera and the drone feed. When the main supply rooms were nearly empty, Yanshu looked toward the women still huddled in the apartment. "Zhuo Wentao is dead," she said. "His men are dead too. You don't have to stay here anymore." The women stared at her. "Dead? All of them?" One woman hesitated. "Your master, is he Luo Tian?" Yanshu's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" The woman lowered her head. "Zhuo took us from other apartments. Some of our families were killed. Our food is gone. If we leave this room, where do we go?" Several others began crying. Before the apocalypse, they had been ordinary people. Now, they had nowhere left. Yanshu shook her head. "I can't make that decision for you." My voice came through her earpiece. "That's enough cargo. Don't overload the drone." Yanshu nodded. "There's a small amount of food left in the apartment. Do you want it?" "No." The women looked up. "Leave it for them." They were stunned. To me, those scraps meant nothing. To them, they could mean several more days of life. A few immediately asked whether I would take them in too. I refused. My shelter was not a charity center. Yanshu finished the mission and prepared to leave. That was when I noticed someone through the drone camera. A woman stood near a 12th floor window. Black-framed glasses, white doctor's coat, a refined, intelligent face. She was staring at the drone carrying Zhuo's stolen food. I recognized her almost immediately from what I remembered of the previous life. Anne Yuyan, a physician from Qinshui People's Hospital. Even in the apocalypse, she had continued treating residents. People trusted her so much that a saying had spread through Building 10. They would never open the door at night for a stranger. But if Dr. N knocked, they would open it without hesitation. That reputation had eventually placed her in danger. Men had tried to exploit her kindness. In the previous life, she had died rather than submit. Now she was still alive. She pushed her glasses upward and looked at the drone. "You're brave," she said. "Taking Zhuo Wentao's supplies so openly." My voice came through the drone speaker. "What? Are you going to report me?" And Yuyan shook her head. "Of course not. Zhuo killed people here and tried to control the upper floors. I don't like him." Then she frowned. "But you should leave quickly. If he comes back and sees this, you'll be in trouble." I found that amusing. "You know where he went?" "I heard they were going to Building 9. They were looking for someone named Luo Tian. Apparently he has a lot of supplies." She sighed. "Whoever he is, he's probably in serious trouble." I smiled. "I'm Luo Tian." And Yuyan froze. "And Zhuo Wentao isn't coming back." She stared at the drone as if she had misheard. Zhuo had dozens of men. I was supposedly one person. The numbers made no sense to her. "Look below, Building 9 if you don't believe me." She opened the window slightly despite the brutal cold and peered through the snow. Bodies were scattered below. Many were already being covered by fresh snowfall. And Yuyan covered her mouth. "You really defeated them?" "Yes." Her expression shifted from disbelief to relief. The upper floors of Building 10 had lived under Zhuo's threat for days. Now that threat was gone. "How did you do it?" Interested? Then I added casually, "I wouldn't mind having a doctor in my shelter. If you come over, food and water won't be a problem." And Yuyan laughed softly. "We haven't even met face to face and you're already recruiting me. Efficient, isn't it?" She shook her head. "If you ever need medical help, you can contact me." For now, she clearly had no intention of moving. That was fine. I asked for her contact information before sending the drone home. A doctor was valuable in any apocalypse. No matter how much food and equipment I had, illness and injury still existed. And unlike random residents, and Yuyan had a skill set I actually wanted inside the shelter. The drone eventually returned with most of Zhuo's stored food. Some of it would pay the bounty I had promised to Building 9. The rest was simply added to my reserves. Then I turned my attention to unfinished business. The attack from Building 10 had not happened by accident. Several Building 9 residents had deliberately invited them. Those people were now trying to disappear back into the crowd. I had no intention of forgetting. Chu Junkai organized the bounty distribution on the 22nd floor. Residents lined up. Lu Hanyuan, 1 confirmed kill. 1 box of noodles. Zhen Da, 2 boxes. Ding Jing and Tang Wenquan shared one, half a box each. People hugged their rewards like treasure. 1 box of instant noodles meant days of survival. For the first time since food became scarce, many residents felt secure again. Then someone asked, why did Building 10 attack us in the first place? Another person frowned. Yeah, why did they go straight for the 23rd floor? A third voice said, was there an insider? Several residents from the original revenge group went pale. They exchanged glances and immediately looked away. No one else knew. Or so they thought. I uploaded an audio recording from the corridor surveillance system. The voices were unmistakable. Contacting Building 10 will be Wang Hongming and Peng Ping's job. The building group erupted. People who had lost family members during Zuo's raid became furious. They recognized voices. They recognized names. The suspected conspirators tried to explain. It's a misunderstanding. We made a mistake. Give us another chance. No one cared. The enraged residents surrounded them. Minutes later, the collaborators were dead. Their bodies were thrown outside like the others. By then, everyone in Building 9 understood a reality that could no longer be denied. This was not a snow disaster anymore. Civil order had collapsed. The official system barely functioned. Armed groups were forming between buildings. People were killing for food. It was an apocalypse. More than a few residents bitterly remembered laughing at me when I bought huge amounts of supplies before the storm. Now they understood. Too late. Yan Shu returned from Building 10. She removed her outer cold weather layer and stood in front of me. Master, mission complete. You did well. I looked at her. Now I have another assignment for you. The next morning, I woke in a dark bedroom. The blackout curtains automatically opened. Gray-white light filled the room. Good morning, Master, Butler said. The time is 9:01 a.m. Outdoor temperature, minus 74.5 degrees Celsius. Indoor temperature, 24.7 degrees Celsius. Warning, severe blizzard conditions. Expected duration exceeds 5 hours. I looked toward the window. Snow was falling so heavily that visibility had almost disappeared. Yan Shu looked outside too. If this keeps up, the snow might cover the 4th floor. I wasn't worried. We're on the 23rd. Inside, the floor itself was warm. The shelter had multiple heating systems. The fireplace was only 1 layer. There was concealed floor heating, wall heating, and controlled circulation. Outside, the city was disappearing under white. Inside, it was comfortable enough to walk around in light clothing. Bai Ya was already awake. She greeted me brightly in the washroom and insisted on helping me wash up as part of her maid duties. I let her fuss over me for a moment before sending her off to eat. Breakfast was simple by our standards. 8 treasure porridge, steamed buns, fried dough sticks. After days of rich meals, I had wanted something more ordinary. Once breakfast was over, I stood by the huge window and watched the blizzard. The attack from Building 10 had exposed a weakness in my preparation. I had excellent defenses. I had handguns. But my ability to respond to a large, organized assault was still limited. If dozens of people attacked at once, a few pistols were not an ideal long-term answer. I needed more weapons and ammunition. The obvious place was the police system. Yan Shu had worked both criminal investigations and ordinary policing. She knew station layouts, equipment procedures, and storage areas far better than I did. The problem was travel. The police station was not close. Fresh snow was turning the city into a deep, soft white wasteland. Walking there would burn enormous amounts of energy and could easily become fatal. Fortunately, I had taken snowmobiles and tracked snow vehicles from the port. Equipment designed for polar terrain would still function where normal cars were useless. The harder question was how to get a vehicle from the 23rd floor to the outside without exposing my spatial ability unnecessarily. I considered going with Yan Shu, then dismissed the idea. She had years of professional training. I had improved rapidly, but I was still nowhere near as experienced in real emergencies. My spatial storage was extraordinary, but it was not an offensive combat ability. Until my own fighting skill improved further, there was no reason to leave the strongest shelter in the city just to prove something. Outside, the residents were struggling with a different problem. The blizzard was forcing cold air through every crack in ordinary apartments. In the group chat, people were bargaining over tape just to seal window frames. One resident mentioned seeing people leave during the storm. Others guessed they had gone to search the bodies outside. No one expected them to return. With visibility near zero, and snow deep enough to swallow a person, desperation had turned scavenging into suicide. In my bedroom, Yan Shu was recovering from the previous night's exertion. Bai Ya and Li Ru brought her hot porridge and teased her until even the normally composed police officer became embarrassed. Their laughter contrasted sharply with the storm outside. Meanwhile, in Building 10, An Yu Yan was having a much worse morning. Her home was getting colder. Food was running low. Water in a cup had begun to freeze. Then someone knocked urgently. Dr. An. She recognized the voice. Mrs. Fang from downstairs. My daughter collapsed from the cold. She won't wake up. Please come quickly. And Yu Yan hesitated only briefly. Going outside her apartment in conditions like this was dangerous. But she was a doctor. She couldn't simply listen to a child die. She grabbed her medical bag and followed Mrs. Fang downstairs. At the entrance to the lower floors, barricades made from refrigerators, appliances, and welded metal still blocked the path. Those barriers were what had allowed the upper residents to survive Zhuo Wentao's reign, and Yu Yin reached the child's apartment. The girl was suffering from severe cold exposure. The room itself was far too cold for treatment, but it was still better than the drafty bedroom where the child had been lying. And Yu Yan directed the parents through basic warming measures and used the limited medicine available. By coincidence, the building received its brief scheduled period of electricity. They heated water. Eventually, the child regained consciousness. The parents tried to give Yu Yan part of a frozen steam bun in gratitude. She refused. On her way back, 3 men watched her. They had been attracted to her long before the apocalypse. Now, with law and order collapsing, their restraint was collapsing too. They began talking among themselves. Zhuo Wentao had been an ordinary salesman before the disaster, yet once he gathered followers and weapons, he had done whatever he wanted. Why should they still obey old rules? Their conversation became uglier. They decided to target Yu Yan. She reached her own floor and noticed them following. Something about their expressions immediately felt wrong. She hurried through her apartment door and locked it. Seconds later, they started knocking. "Dr. Anne, we just want you to check something." She backed away. "I don't feel well today. I won't be seeing anyone." They remained outside for a while before finally leaving, and Yu Yan sat down, heart pounding. The encounter left her shaken. With no family nearby and no functioning police system, she had no one to rely on. Then she remembered me. She searched the contact information I had given her. A request appeared on my phone not long afterward. "I'm Yu Yan, the doctor from Building 10. We spoke earlier." I accepted. "Change your mind about joining me?" She replied, "Not yet." Then, after a pause, she asked, "If several people wanted to hurt you and they outnumbered you, how would you protect yourself?" I immediately understood. "You're in trouble." She reluctantly told me what had happened. I repeated my offer. "If you want, I can arrange for someone to bring you here." And Yu Yan still refused. "There are residents here who may need medical help." She wanted to believe the 3 men had simply lost control for a moment and would calm down. I told her she was being naive. Men who had already followed her home and tested her door were unlikely to suddenly rediscover morality. As if reality wanted to prove my point, and Yu Yan heard something at her lock, then hushed voices. The 3 men were back. This time, they had brought tools. They started trying to force entry, and Yu Yan's face went white. "Luo Tian, they're trying to break in." I looked at her message. "I told you." Then I gave her a simple idea. "Make them believe another man is already inside." She asked how. I sent her a voice message. And Yu Yan turned her phone volume all the way up and played it near the door. My voice came loudly through the speaker. "And Yu Yan, hurry up and come back here." The wording was deliberately suggestive enough to make the people outside assume they had interrupted something. The pounding stopped. The 3 men exchanged startled curses and fled, and Yu Yan stared at her phone, embarrassed and stunned. Then she called me. "Thank you. I owe you. I'll remember that." What she didn't know was that I still wanted her in my shelter. Not merely because she was attractive. A skilled doctor was an incredibly valuable member of an apocalypse team. I had food, a fortress, equipment, security. But no group was complete without medical expertise. I asked how the men had noticed her in the first place. She explained that she had gone downstairs to treat a neighbor's child. That caught my attention. In my previous life, I had heard that An Yuan died after being lured out under the pretext of treating someone. Had I already changed that fate? Possibly. But not certainly. I gave her one final warning. Be careful when someone asks you to treat a child. The call ended. Because the daily electricity window had started and An Yuan needed to boil water. She sat with a hard piece of bread and thought wistfully about instant noodles. Even something that had once been considered cheap fast food now sounded luxurious. Then someone knocked again. She stiffened. "Who is it?" A different voice answered. "Dr. Anne. Please help. My grandson passed out from the cold." It was Auntie Lin from the 13th floor. And Yu Yan hesitated. My warning immediately returned to her mind. But she knew Auntie Lin. She had treated the woman's grandson before. Auntie Lin could be petty and greedy, but would she really help someone hurt a doctor? And Yu Yan's professional instinct won again. "Wait. I'll come." This time, before leaving, she slipped a surgical tool into an outer pocket. Auntie Lin practically dragged her upstairs. They entered room 1303. "Where's your grandson?" "In the bedroom." I closed the doors to keep the warmth in. Something felt wrong. Auntie Lin had been frantic in the hallway. Now she seemed strangely calm. And Yu Yan stopped in the living room. "Bring the child out here. The living room is warmer." Auntie Lin paused. Then opened the main bedroom. A child really was lying inside, apparently unconscious. And Yu Yan exhaled. Maybe she had been overly suspicious. At that exact moment, elsewhere in the storm, Building 9 residents were digging snow near their corridor windows, grateful for the noodles they had recently earned. One of them thought he heard a drone. His neighbor laughed. With weather like this, a drone would crash immediately. The sound vanished beneath the wind. Back in room 1303, An Yu Yan took a step toward the child. Then the side bedroom door opened. 3 men came out, the same 3. And Yu Yan's eyes widened. Auntie Lin had lured her into a trap. The moment the 3 men came out of the side room, and Yu Yan understood. It was a trap. She tried to move away, but one of them grabbed her medical bag first. Auntie Lin disappeared into the main bedroom and locked the door behind her, and Yu Yan was left alone in the living room with the 3 men. "Dr. Anne, One of them said with a grin, "We've been waiting for you." They had not only lured her into the apartment, they also wanted her medicines. In the apocalypse, even common drugs were valuable enough to kill for. And Yu Yin backed toward the balcony. "What are you doing?" Their intentions were obvious. One man laughed at her, warning about the law. "Who exactly is coming to arrest us now?" They moved closer. And Yu Yin finally understood that she had been trying to apply the logic of civilization to people who no longer believed civilization existed. One of them grabbed at her. She pulled the surgical tool from her pocket and cut his hand. He screamed. The others rushed forward. And Yu Yin had nowhere left to retreat. In that instant, she remembered everything I had told her. She should have listened. She should never have trusted the invitation. She should have recognized that in the apocalypse, kindness without caution could become a death sentence. But regret did not change the room around her. Her face hardened. "I'd rather die." She turned and crashed through the balcony glass. The three men shouted in shock as Yu Yin disappeared into the blizzard. Cold winds swallowed her instantly. For a fraction of a second, she felt herself falling through white emptiness. So this was it. Then she hit a net, not the ground. A massive rescue net suspended between three drones. The machine stabilized under her weight and carried her away through the snow, and Yu Yan lost consciousness. Inside room 1303, Auntie Lin came running out after hearing the shattered glass. She screamed when she saw the hole in the balcony. "You idiots! What happened?" The three men insisted, and Yu Yan had jumped on her own. Auntie Lin barely cared about their excuses. Freezing wind and snow were pouring through the broken window. She immediately started screaming at them to repair it before she and her grandson froze. Meanwhile, 3 drones crossed the storm toward Building 9. I had sent them out after ending my earlier call with Yu Yan. Something about the situation had bothered me. My memories from the previous life were too specific to ignore, so I had asked Butler to keep surveillance on her area. That decision saved her life. The drones delivered Yu Yan to the shelter. Her body was dangerously cold. Bai Ya touched her and immediately pulled her hand back. "She's freezing." "Of course she is," I said. "She just traveled through a -70-degree blizzard." Li Ru and Bai Ya moved her close to the fireplace. Warm air gradually returned color to her face. She was unconscious from cold exposure and shock, but she was alive. Bai Ya gently dried melted snow from her hair and face. Poor Dr. Anne. The situation reminded Bai Ya of her own experience. Kindness had nearly killed her too. "Good thing I sent the drones," I said. The polar rescue models I had taken from the port were proving extremely useful. They were designed for emergency work in harsh conditions and could keep operating even in storms like this. Once Yu Yan had warmed slightly, I placed one of the shelter's security bracelets on her. Every new resident wore one. Bai Ya also gave her medicine to help with the effects of cold exposure. Eventually, Yu Yan's eyelashes moved. She opened her eyes. Warm. The fireplace burned beside her. The room was so comfortable that for several seconds, she thought she was hallucinating. "Am I in heaven?" I leaned back on the sofa. "Something like that, but probably not the version you're imagining." She recognized my voice. Her eyes widened. "You're Luo Tian." "That's me, but..." I jumped. "You're not dead." I crouched near her and checked her forehead. She had a fever, but the medicine was already starting to work. "I sent drones to watch your building after our call. They caught you." Once I explained what happened, and Yu Yan looked deeply embarrassed. "You warned me." "I did. I'm sorry." There was no point blaming her. From my perspective, the accident had solved a problem I had been thinking about anyway. I wanted a doctor. Now the doctor was here. Li Ru, Bai Ya, help her change into dry clothes. They took Yu Yan to the bathroom. She tried to protest. "I can just change. A cold shower would make this worse." Bai Ya laughed. "Who said anything about cold water?" The bathroom heater came on. Warm light filled the room. Then hot water flowed from the shower. And Yu Yan stared in disbelief. "You have electricity? And hot water?" Official power was only available for short scheduled periods. Municipal water service had long since failed. Yet my shelter had both continuously. She assumed I had started a generator especially for her. Li Ru corrected her. "The generator system is always available." And Yu Yan didn't believe it. Running power continuously would require an enormous fuel reserve. Bai Ya and Li Ru simply smiled. She would understand eventually. After a hot shower and dry clothes, and Yu Yan felt much better. Then she finally took a good look at Bai Ya. "Wait," she adjusted her glasses. "Bai Ya?" The celebrity smiled. "I used to be, now I'm just master's maid." And Yu Yan stared at her. A nationally famous star was casually standing in front of her in a maid outfit. That told her more about my situation than any explanation could. When she returned to the living room, she looked around properly for the first time. The huge fireplace, constant heat, electricity, clean water, advanced systems, a reinforced panoramic window, and me, wearing light silk clothing while a blizzard raged outside at temperatures that could kill ordinary people in minutes. "If you told me you lived like this," she muttered to herself, "I might actually have accepted the private doctor offer the first time." I pointed toward the sofa. "Sit." She did, still slightly nervous. This was the first time we had actually met face to face. "Feeling better?" "Much better. Thank you." Then I asked what had happened. As she described Auntie Lin's betrayal and the 3 men waiting in the side room, her voice became increasingly bitter. She could hardly process how quickly people she had known for years had become capable of such things. "When the disaster ends, they should all go to prison," she said. I smiled. You may be waiting a long time. And Yu Yan looked at me. What do you mean? This isn't a temporary snow disaster. I looked out at the storm. It could last years, maybe decades. In practical terms, civilization as we knew it is already in an apocalypse. She stared at me. Decades? It sounded absurd. Like something from a movie. So I asked her to think about the evidence. Zhuo Wentao's gang had taken over half a building. Dozens of people had already died between buildings 9 and 10. No police had appeared. No emergency rescue had reached them. No functioning legal system remained. If only 2 residential buildings looked like this, what did the rest of the city look like? What did the rest of the world look like? And Yu Yan slowly stopped arguing. She simply didn't want to believe it. Most people didn't. Those who had accepted the collapse fastest were often the same people already committing robbery and murder. Then most people will eventually freeze or starve, she whispered. Probably. But you don't need to worry about food here. I demonstrated my spatial inventory. An object appeared in my hand from nowhere, then disappeared. Then another item appeared, and Yu Yan stared at me as if reality had broken. That's impossible. She pinched her own leg to make sure she wasn't dreaming. I laughed. My storage space contains more than enough supplies for everyone here. Her expression changed again. For the first time since waking, she understood why I wasn't worried about the future. Thank you, she said quietly. You saved me, gave me medicine, and let me stay here. Bai Ya and Li Ro entered the living room and stood nearby, and Yu Yan noticed the dynamic immediately. This shelter had rules. I was the person who controlled it. I stood. Dr. Anne, since you're staying, there is one thing you need to understand. She looked up. Inside this shelter, my decisions are final. Her expression became wary. Every decision, safety depends on one chain of command. She was obviously uncomfortable. I did not pretend otherwise. The bracelet on her wrist was part of the shelter's security system. When she questioned what it did, I demonstrated only enough for her to understand that the AI could immobilize a wearer, who became a threat. And Yu Yan went weak for a moment and Li Ru caught her. I folded my arms. I don't run a charity shelter. I saved you because having a skilled doctor here benefits us. You'll be protected. You'll eat well. You'll have heat, water, medicine, and security. In return, you follow the shelter's rules. The arrangement was not equal, and I didn't describe it as equal. And Yu Yan was visibly conflicted. But after what had happened outside, she also understood what the alternative looked like. For now, there was nothing more to discuss. Around the same time, another power was consolidating itself in Building 13. Before the apocalypse, the group had been professional debt collectors. They had entered the community chasing borrowers who refused to pay. Then the blizzard trapped them inside. Their leader, known as Boss Ming, had started with more than 30 hardened men. After absorbing additional residents and forcing others into service, the group now numbered close to 100. Building 13 had become their territory. A subordinate hurried into their headquarters. Boss. One of the men disappeared while digging snow. Boss Ming barely reacted, then collected debt from his family. Money itself was becoming worthless, but he still hated the idea of anyone escaping what they owed him. Then he asked about another name. Luo Tian. Shen Kai, one of his most obedient lieutenants, answered carefully. Still searching. Before the apocalypse, I had borrowed around 1 million yuan through several lending apps. Apparently, many of those apps ultimately belonged to the same company. Boss Ming remembered. Other debtors in the community had owed him far less. I was the one person who had taken a large amount and then disappeared from his reach. Find him, Boss Ming said. Nearby, he also received an update about several injured followers. His group had recently fought construction workers from another building. The wounded needed proper medical treatment. One man said, I heard Building 10 has a doctor. And Yu Yan. She worked at Qinshui People's Hospital. Boss Ming immediately decided he wanted her brought back. Shen Kai hesitated. The storm is severe, and Building 10 has Zhuo Wentao. Boss Ming looked at him with contempt. I have nearly 100 people. Why would I be afraid of Zhuo Wentao? Shen Kai immediately changed his tone. Of course, boss. I'll bring the doctor back. Near noon, our shelter smelled of food again. Li Ru asked what I wanted. Something Chinese. After too much steak, barbecue, and foreign cuisine, I wanted lighter domestic dishes. She prepared a large meal. Squirrel-shaped sweet and sour fish, Bailuoqian shrimp, beggar's chicken, soup, fresh vegetables. Yan Shu came out after resting and was surprised to see An Yu Yan. The surprise became mutual. Dr. An, Officer Yan, they had met before, and Yu Yan had once treated Yan Shu after she was injured on duty. That made the adjustment easier. Then An Yu Yan saw lunch. Her eyes widened. Is this how you eat every day? Yan Shu answered, not exactly, and Yu Yan relaxed. Of course, no one could eat meals like this every day during an apocalypse. Then Yan Shu continued. We were eating barbecue and seafood before. We got tired of it, and Yu Yan stared at her. Outside, people were killing each other for crumbs. Inside, we were changing cuisines because we were bored. Baya smiled. Dr. An, you'll eat well here. After the first bite, An Yu Yan stopped trying to argue with reality. The food was excellent. Meanwhile, Shen Kai's group was crossing the blizzard. Nearly 80 men dug through the snow and entered, Building 10 through the underground garage. They expected resistance from Zhuo Wentao. Instead, the lower floors were nearly deserted. On the 10th floor, they found a frozen corpse. Then they reached the welded barricade blocking the upper levels. They broke through it. A resident named Fang Shan came out after hearing the noise. Shen Kai's men grabbed her. Where is Zhuo Wentao? Dead, she said immediately. That answer surprised them. Then Fang Shan mentioned the name of the man involved. Luo Tian. Shen Kai's expression changed. That was the same Luo Tian Boss Ming had been searching for, the debtor. And apparently I was famous enough that my name had spread into Building 10. Interesting. But Shen Kai still had an assignment. Where does Dr. N live? Fang Shan tried to deny knowing. A threat changed her answer. They searched N Yu Yan's apartment. Empty. Then they dragged more residents out for questioning. Auntie Lin told them the doctor had jumped from the 13th floor. Shen Kai's face turned green. Boss Ming had ordered him to bring back a doctor. A dead doctor was not useful. The 3 men responsible for trapping N Yu Yan were found and forced outside to search for her body. They dug through the snow. They found the medical bag. They did not find N Yu Yan because she was sitting in my shelter eating lunch. After spending too long in the storm, the searchers were already showing signs of dangerous cold exposure. One of Shen Kai's men offered another idea. Boss Ming is also looking for Luo Tian. Shen Kai's eyes lit up. They had failed to find the doctor. But if they brought me back, perhaps Boss Ming would forgive the failure. Building 9, he ordered. The group moved out. Back in my shelter, and Yu Yan finished eating and rubbed her stomach. Thank you. I'm completely full. Good. I pointed toward the dishes. Then help clean up. She stared at me. There was a dishwasher. She immediately looked toward it. By hand, I added, and Yu Yan's shoulders dropped. Fine. It took her far longer than it would have taken Li Ru. She had spent years ordering takeout and living at the hospital. Domestic work was not her specialty. Then Butler interrupted. Master, large number of outsiders detected inside the building. I looked up. How many? The monitors showed a dense group moving upward, and Yu Yan became nervous. More people? Yan Shu, Bai Ya, and Li Ru were much calmer. They had seen this pattern before. I opened the camera feeds. The men were heading directly for me. By the time they reached the top floor, one of them stared at the damaged wall. Why are there so many marks here? Shen Kai barely looked. We're here for Luo Tian. Then his men shouted at my door. Luo Tian, open up. Stop pretending you're not home. My voice came through the speaker. Whose dogs are barking outside my door now? The gang erupted. Shen Kai shouted, you borrowed 1 million yuan from Boss Ming before the disaster. Debt has to be repaid. That finally explained who they were. Debt collectors. I had taken loans from multiple apps while raising money before the apocalypse. Apparently several of those services were connected to the same organization. I laughed. You came through a -70-degree blizzard to collect a loan? Their dedication was almost admirable. But repayment? Impossible. I borrowed it with skill. Why would I pay it back? Shen Kai's face darkened. Break the door. 2 men stepped forward with heavy hammers. They swung. The tools rebounded violently from the reinforced security door and nearly injured their hands. Shen Kai cursed them and sent stronger men forward. That was when I decided to stop watching. Butler, energize the door. Understood. The next hammer strike connected. Electrical protection surged through the conductive contact. The 2 attackers convulsed and collapsed. The men behind them stared in horror. Are they dancing? Idiot. They've been electrocuted. Everyone backed away. The 2 men on the floor did not get up. Shen Kai's expression became ugly. They had lost people before even damaging the door. Luo Tian, you're dead. I smiled. I was about to say the same thing. I opened the firing port. Instead of wasting handgun ammunition, I brought out one of the heavy hunting crossbows from storage. A bolt shot through the packed group. Because so many men were crowded together, the projectile caused multiple casualties before the survivors even understood what had happened. Screams erupted. That broke them. The gang had expected a debtor hiding behind a residential door. Instead, they had found an electrified fortress and a defender with ranged weapons. Run! Get out! No debt is worth dying for. The corridor became a stampede. Men fell over each other trying to reach the stairs. By the time they finally stopped several floors below, everyone was gasping. Shen Kai was pale. He knew what awaited him back in Building 13. He had failed to bring back N Yu Yan. Now he had also lost men trying to capture me. He blamed the subordinate who had suggested coming to Building 9, but that did not change the result. Eventually, Shen Kai returned to Boss Ming and reported everything. Boss Ming listened in silence, then picked up a liquor bottle and smashed it over Shen Kai's head. If you do something this stupid again, don't come back alive. Shen Kai stood there bleeding and did not dare wipe his face. Another subordinate arrived with the investigation they should have done before the attack. The report was much worse than expected. My apartment was effectively an armored bunker. I had firearms, I had crossbows, I had abundant food. I had already used bounties to destroy Zhuo Wentao's entire group. The more Shen Kai heard, the colder his back felt. He realized how close he had come to dying. Someone asked Boss Ming, do we give up on Luo Tian? Boss Ming laughed. Give up? He wanted my shelter. He wanted my supplies. In his mind, those things were more valuable than the old debt itself. But we can't get inside, one man said. Not today. Boss Ming's eyes narrowed. A patient hunter waits. If Luo Tian shows one weakness, we'll use it. For the moment, they stopped attacking. Back in Building 9, the residents were already gossiping about the newest group that had fled. By now, attacks on my home had become almost routine entertainment. I posted one message, 1 pack of instant noodles. Remove the 2 bodies outside my door. Someone reached the 23rd floor almost immediately. Brother Luo, done. I tossed out the noodles and sent him away. And Yu Yan was still surprised by how casually the building now operated around my rewards. Then she returned to the subject of my pre-apocalypse debt. You really borrowed that much money? Yes. What if the apocalypse hadn't happened? Baya hugged my arm. I could have paid it for master. I laughed. If the apocalypse hadn't happened, you wouldn't even know me. Before the disaster, Baya had been a national star. I had been an ordinary man. Our worlds never would have crossed. Baya shook her head. Then I would have found you anyway. Li Ru and Yan Shu gave her skeptical looks. And Yu Yan stared at all of them and wondered how a superstar had become this attached to me. I walked toward the panoramic window. The blizzard was still dense. Visibility remained terrible. The latest attack reinforced what I had already decided. I needed more firepower. My shelter could withstand almost anything ordinary survivors could do. My offensive capability was the weaker side. The police armory should contain more than 100 firearms and a large ammunition reserve. Yan Shu could reach it. But one person could not carry everything back. Even with a vehicle, repeated trips would be difficult and dangerous. A drone convoy was one option. But another thought had been growing stronger. I could not stay behind these walls forever. My physical condition had improved. My training was progressing. And if I personally went, my spatial storage could solve the transport problem instantly. I narrowed my eyes. Then I'll go myself.